Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Nika Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku possessed Deathgod Quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The story was barely covered, only appearing for a matter of seconds as a simple text scroll along the bottom of the morning news program. Quirkless teen found dead late last night in Hosu City. Police have deemed their death a suicide. No name or age was attached to the brief announcement. They had simply written off the young teen's tragic end because of their lack of a quirk. Without a quirk they were not worth mourning. Without a quirk they were worthless. Useless. Izuku Midoriya knew that fact better than anyone. From the age of 4 he was told time and time again without a quirk he wasn't worth the air he breathed. He didn't deserve to have a best friend with an amazing heroic quirk like Kaken, who soon after learning Izuku was quirkless turned on him, deeming him no more than a worthless Deku. He didn't deserve attentive teachers to help him learn, he wasn't worth the time that could be spent assisting the kids that actually had bright futures ahead of them. He didn't deserve a loving father, who thought it was better to advance his career far away from the disappointment that was his son. All Izuku had for years was his mother. Even if hearing her apologize instead of supporting his dream killed him a little inside, at least she was still there. As the years went by her unconditional support slowly began to waver. At first she only was picking up an extra shift every so often. Then she began staying out of the apartment for longer periods of time. A few days here, a week or two there, but she always came home after a while. Izuku got very good at rationing the food she left behind after he made the mistake of assuming she'd only be gone for a day or two when he was 10. What little food was left in the apartment had run out 5 days after her last visit. It had taken her another 4 to return. After living off of food out of the dumpster behind the nearby grocery store for 4 days, Izuku began planning every meal and kept track of everything in the pantry. He did not want to feel hungry enough to resort to that ever again. Because of his limited food supply, Izuku was very small for a 13-year-old. He was often mistaken for an elementary student instead of someone who just started their second year of middle school. It was embarrassing to say the least. Everyone just assumed his small size was due to his inferior genetics, being quirkless and all, instead of a sign of obvious neglect. Being as small as he was paired with his quirklessness made him the perfect target for bullies. Those bullies must have had heard about the suicide in Hosu City because when Izuku arrived to school that morning a single red spider lily was waiting for him at his desk. Shock froze him in place as he stared down at the small flower. He knew none of his classmates liked him, but he didn't realize they disliked him so much they thought he should just kill himself. Who was he kidding? Of course they thought he should just kill himself. He was just the quirkless Deku after all. Izuku was started out of his dark thoughts by a loud outburst of laughter. He didn't bother looking around at all his classmates as they snickered at the hilarious joke that was his life. Their eyes made his skin tingle and burn, but he knew better than to make eye contact with anyone, it only spurred them on. He simply shoved the flower into his bag and made himself as small as possible before his main tormentor arrived. Katsuki Bakugu was once Izuku's best friend, Kaken. Kaken had always been a temperamental child, but when his quirk arrived his aggression and anger reached new heights. The very explosions the boy created seemed to fuel his equally explosive personality, most of which was targeted towards Izuku himself. As if summoned by Izuku's thoughts, Kaken threw open the door of the classroom, causing a loud bang to echo around the room. Their teacher didn't react to the loud disturbance much like how he didn't react to the students' laughter. Why would he? Kaken had a powerful quirk and would one day use it to be an amazing hero unlike him. Izuku instantly felt his red eyes lock onto him. They burned 10 times worse than all the others combined. Before Kaken could get to him the bell signaling the start of homeroom rang. Izuku sighed in relief. At least now he wouldn't have to sit through a full day of classes with fresh burns. The morning seemed to set the mood for the rest of Izuku's day. His history teacher decided to single him out during the class's lesson and even laughed along with the other students at his expense. One of Kaken's followers decided he didn't deserve to eat his lunch that day and pushed it off his desk seconds after the bell had rung, causing it to spill all over. Of course Izuku was blamed for the mess and had to spend the rest of his break cleaning the classroom floor. And to top it all, of Kaken cornered him on the way home to get in a little quirk practice before the weekend started. "Oi! Nerd, where do you think you're going?" Kaken yelled as Izuku tried to rush out of the school gate. I am going home, Kaken," Izuku shuddered out as he kept his gaze locked onto a crack in the sidewalk. He hoped his compliance could placate Kaken well enough to get out of being hurt too badly today. His mom had been home when he left this morning and it would be hard to sneak by her injured. Izuku didn't want to give her any more of a reason to resent him. Izuku could hear Kaken scoff at his reply. "Well, obviously you are. Where else would you be going, huh? It's not like anyone would want to spend time with a quirkless Deku like you. Kaken's friends all started to laugh at his retort. Their laughter only seemed to egg Kaken on as he quickly closed the distance between them and shoved Izuku into the wall surrounding the schoolyard. A small explosion went off next to his head, causing Izuku to flinch away involuntarily to avoid being burnt. He knew better than to flinch. Any reaction only served to provoke his attackers. Laughter sounded again as Kaken's friends noticed his startled face. He really needed to work on schooling his reactions. Hey, since Deku doesn't have anything better to do, he can help us with target practice. What do you think, Katsuki? Tsubasa called out. Izuku's eyes flicked over at the question, quickly seeing the wide smirk on the winged boy's face. The smirk grew darker when Tsubasa noticed Izuku's attention was on him. What do you think you're looking at, Deku? I'm sorry. Izuku quickly averted his gaze. Why did he do that? He knew he wasn't getting out of this unharmed now. His eyes fell onto a small alleyway about 20 yards away that he knew lead out onto a side street he could use to escape if he could only get around the group of boys surrounding him. A fist to his stomach pulled Izuku's attention back to Kaken as he doubled over in pain and fell to the ground. Ha! Look at the pathetic loser, he's crying already. One of the boys jeered. A kick to his side sent Izuku rolling to his left just past the boy standing on the outskirts of the group. Seeing his chance, Izuku jumped to his feet, ignoring the stab of pain his ribs sent shooting through his body. He sprinted towards the alley as quickly as he could. He may be small, but years of trying to outrun bullies defiantly made him quick. Shouts of anger followed him as he tore around the corner and leapt over a fallen trash can. A crash sounded behind him, followed by numerous curses. Clearly one of his pursuers didn't react to the obstacle as well as Izuku did and took several of his buddies down with him. If his heartbeat wasn't pounding in his ears, Izuku might have laughed at the mental picture his mind produced of the scene he left behind. Beaten down and bruised, Izuku pushed through the pain to get home. He has had to suffer thought a lot worse than a few bruises and sore ribs over the years. At least all the bullying was giving him a good pain tolerance. He would need it when he became a hero. Izuku ran several more blocks before decided he had put enough distance between himself and Kaken to stop running. His lungs burned and that kick definitely did something to his ribs. A few minutes later he was standing in front of his apartment door. Izuku didn't notice any visible injuries on his reflection in the glass door to the building's lobby, so getting past his mom shouldn't be too hard if he was just careful not to move too stiffly while hiding the pain his ribs were causing him. He opened the door, calling out that he was home. The apartment was eerily quiet. Had his mom left already? She only got back last night. She normally stayed at least a few days before leaving again. Ignoring the heaviness that always seemed to fill the small apartment, Izuku moved towards the kitchen. Hopeful she got more groceries before she left, his supply was getting lower than he felt comfortable with. He still had enough for a few days, but who knows how long she'll be gone for this time. Thoughts of food quickly left his mind when noticed a white envelope sitting in the middle of the kitchen table. Any payments come directly out of his mom's account and she always opted for the electronic statements, so it couldn't be a bill and no one ever sent them mail. Izuku picked up the envelope, eyeing it suspiciously as he turned it over in his hands. It was blank and felt heavier than it should have been. Opening it slowly, Izuku pulled out a single sheet of paper. As the letter fell open, a small stack of 10,000 yen bills hit the table in front of him. Izuku's eyes widened. That had to be at least 200,000 yen. Why was that much money just sitting in his kitchen? He focused back on the letter, hoping it would explain the large sum of bills he was now in possession of. Izuku, I have realized something recently. I have spent over a decade of my life on you. A decade I will never get back. A decade I should have spent with my husband living a comfortable, happy life, but instead I was here, alone, taking care of you. I am tired of being lonely and have decided it's time for me to be with my husband again. You're 13 now and should be more than capable enough to live on your own. Inside is 200,000 yen for food. I will continue to pay the expenses on the apartment since I am your mother and will send additional money every few months for food and anything else you may require. Do not cause any trouble for me or I may have to rethink the generous allowance I'm providing. Goodbye. Izuku was unsure how long he stood there staring down at the letter. She was gone, leaving only a small note and some money behind. Realistically, nothing really was going to change. His mother was hardly home anyways. At least now he had money he could budge out, so he would have a steady supply of food. She did say she would continue to pay for the apartment, so it wasn't like he was homeless. Numbly he set the letter down. His body ran on autopilot as he gathered up the stack of bills. He couldn't just leave that kind of money sitting out in the open. Grabbing a book of the shelf in the living room, he shoved the bills between a few random pages. It may not be the best hiding spot, but it would work for now. Turning back towards the kitchen, he noticed his school bag he dropped by the door. Sometime during the fight with Kaken, the zipper ripped open revealing the blood-red petals of the spider lily. Izuku was unable to look away as the reality of the situation settled in. Something inside of himself broke, shattering like glass. He sometimes considered ending it all but had always resisted, not wanting to leave his mother behind, but now she had gone and left him. His last tether to life had just snapped violently. Tearing his eyes away, Izuku walked down the hall to the bathroom, slowly feeling himself drift farther and farther from reality. He watched as his arm reached out to open the medicine cabinet. Pushing aside a box of cold medicine, he revealed an older bottle of sleeping medication his mother was prescribed. He stared at the handful of pills he poured out, his mind blissfully blank as he studied the small capsules. Without realizing it, he had swallowed down the handful and was left holding the now empty pill bottle. Dropping it to the floor, he turned and made his way to his bedroom, slowly discarding pieces of his school uniform as he went. Izuku grabbed a purple hoodie off the back for his desk chair and pulled it on as he climbed into bed. The white ceiling above his bed phased in and out of focus as Izuku slowly felt himself fall farther away. Time stretched as his body became lead, crushing him into the bed. With one last breath, Izuku's world faded to black. Well, this was not what Izuku had been expecting. Yeah, most of the talk of what happens after death are just stories or theories, but coming face to face with what Izuku believed could only be a shadow demon in an black void of nothingness was out there, to say the least. Said shadow demon seemed enormous even with absolutely nothing around to use as reference. It had no defining features except for a pair of inky black wings and two spots on its face that were so dark they seemed like windows into an endless abyss. Unsure of what was happening, Izuku opted to just stare at the creature. He was dead after all, and there didn't seem to be anything else here to look at, so an impromptu staring contest with a demon it is. In the back of his mind, Izuku realized this should have been absolutely terrifying, but after the day he just had, he couldn't find the energy to care. Hello Izuku Midoriya, I've been looking forward to meeting you for a while now. The voice sounded layered, like hundreds spoke at once as it echoed around the void, coming from nowhere and every at once. It was warm, smooth and comforting. It was cold, cruel and chilling. Everything about it contradicted, yet every aspect of the sound harmonized perfectly. What are you? Izuku asked. He knew that probably wasn't the smartest thing to ask a creepy demon, but something about the shadow creature put him at ease. Izuku could remember the last time he felt this safe. He felt more at home in this empty space than he ever did in his apartment. I am you. Or more precisely, I am the embodiment of your quirk. My quirk? But I'm quirkless. Izuku shouted. That couldn't be true. If this really was his quirk, that meant the years of bullying and neglect he had to suffer through was for nothing. He had always hoped he'd get a quirk, maybe then everything would go back to the way it was before his diagnosis. His mom wouldn't look at him with pity whenever she was around. Kaken wouldn't hurt him and they could go back to being friends. After years of waiting, he realized he was waiting for something that would never happen, but if what the creature said was true, he had a quirk the whole time. You were never quirkless. I just required a very specific trigger to activate. That trigger being your death. Are you telling me I spent my whole life being less than dirt for not having a quirk, only to get one when it no longer matters? Izuku questioned. What's the point of a quirk like that? No longer matters? No, you see, your quirk didn't matter until you died. I didn't matter until you died because I can bring you back. Any injury, any cause, any reason I can reverse in the blink of an eye, like it never happened in the first place. You mean I'm immortal? I can't die. Izuku whispered. But, I'm all alone, everyone left me. I don't want to be alone forever. Oh Izuku, you aren't alone. I'll always be with you. I'll never leave you. I'll protect you. I may not be able to stop someone from hurting or killing you, but I will make sure they never do so twice. The shadows on the creature's face twisted, revealing what looked like a dark smile. Another shadow moved towards Izuku like an elongated limp to pat his head lovingly. What do you mean they won't do so twice? You aren't going to hurt them, are you? Izuku didn't want anyone to get hurt because of him, no matter what they might do to him. Not physically, no. It's a part of your quirk. We can visit the mind of anyone who causes your death. We get free reign over their psyche to cause them to see anything we want them to. We can cause them to learn a valuable lesson. Not to touch you. We can do this all in the time it takes for me to revive you. All instantly. An instant? Wait, how long have I been here? Where are we anyways? Izuku looked around, trying to figure out where he might be. We are inside your mind, in a little corner of it just for me. You came here the second your heart stopped. Time doesn't affect us here. We could talk for eternity and you'd still be revived mere moments after your death when you decided to return to your body. Speaking of which, I think it's time you returned. All at once Izuku felt himself start to fall. Farther and farther he went until the first beat of his heart sent a shock through him. Feeling returned to him like ripples in water after a stone was dropped into it, with his heart at the epicenter. His lungs expanded as they were filled again with oxygen. The pain in his side from his broken rib had disappeared as if he was never kicked just hours before. Izuku's eyes slowly opened, revealing the white ceiling of his bedroom. Everything looked exactly as it had this morning. Notebooks filled with detailed notes on countless heroes rested on the shelves next to the small desk under the window. Hero posters lined the walls and action figures sat on the small nightstand beside the bed. Nothing around him hinted at the earth-shattering revelation he had just received. The room he was in belonged to the curriculous Deku, who had just tried to take his life, not the immortal boy who now felt lost in his own home. He had to get out of here. Jumping to his closet, Izuku grabbed on a random pair of black leggings he didn't even remember owning and pulled on an old pair of black boots he got a few years ago. He bolted out of the room, not even bothering to grab his phone or keys. He just needed out of this apartment now. It was dark and quiet on the streets as he wandered aimlessly. It must have been really late because no one else was out. Izuku tugged up the hood of his hoodie as a cold breeze turned his ears red. He should probably go back to the apartment before he got sick. He doubted his newfound quirk would stop him from catching a cold. It won't. Izuku jumped as the voice echoed in his head. What the hell? Could his quirk read his mind? Well, I am living in your head. Izuku rolled his eyes. Great, he had a sarcastic mind-reading shadow demon living in his mind. Just what a suicidal teen needed. Izuku huffed as he kicked a can out of his way. His day had taken quite a turn. A muffled yell from around the corner drew Izuku away from his thoughts. He peeked around the wall, making sure to keep low, hoping to stay out of sight of whatever was causing the noise. Two people occupied the narrow alleyway Izuku stumbled upon. The smaller of the two was a young woman who was cornered by a larger man gesturing towards her bag with a knife. Tears streamed down the woman's face as she gave it up with trembling hands. The man rifled through the bag before tossing it to the side, unhappy with its contents. I know you have more cash than that beach. Just give me the money and maybe I'll let you live. The man hollered as he shoved the woman into the dirty wall behind her. Please, I already told you I don't have any more money. I promise. Please just let me go, please, please. Oh God. The woman sobbed as the knife was pressed up to her throat. The man grew angrier the longer the woman spoke. Before Izuku realized what he was doing, he had grabbed the man's arm, pulling him away from the lady. Leave her alone. Izuku cried out, drawing attention to himself. The woman wasted no time. As soon as the knife left her throat, she was gone. When the man realized his target had escaped, he turned his anger towards Izuku. You little brat. She owed me money and you let her get away. He gave Izuku no warning as he jabbed the knife into his side. It slipped between his ribs, puncturing his right lung in an instant. Izuku felt warm blood flood into his lung as the knife was torn out of him. The man stared down at him as he bleed out with cold blue eyes. The last thing Izuku saw before his vision went black was the man running his blood-stained hand through his light brown hair. Look what you made me do, now there's blood on my new shoes. Hoshino tasked as he watched the light fade from the small boy's eyes. He turned to leave the alley in search of the woman. He had sold her high-quality drags and he wanted his god-damn money. When Hoshino raised his eyes up to the mouth of the alley, he froze. Standing before him was the very boy that should be laying dead in a pool of blood behind him. Vacantly the child stared at Hoshino with glazed-over eyes. The boy's light-colored hoodie was stained dark near his stab wound and blood dripped from his right hand. Hoshino stumbled back away from the dead boy as he opened his mouth to speak. Blood fell from his mouth, staining his lips red as it dripped down his chin. You dare touch us? Hoshino fell to his knees, covering his ears, hoping to muffle the otherworldly voice coming from the child in front of him. Tears began to fall from his eyes as his body felt like it was being crushed by an unseen force. Black shadowed wings sprouted from the boy's back, giving him an eldritch-like appearance. You dare try and kill a god? Fire burned through his veins as Hoshino clawed at his ears, begging for the noise to stop. His bones grated against one another every time he moved. His skin stretched over his contracting muscles. He was going to die. You lie. You cheat. You kill. You are nothing more than a selfish mortal who is willing to use everyone around you for your own personal gain. You profit off of others' pain and suffering. So tell me, mortal, why should I let you live? Will you change? I will. I will, I promise. Hoshino begged. His voice cracked under the pressure in the air around him. Please, I'll do anything, I promise. Whatever you want, just don't kill me, I don't want to die. The shadows in the alley flared around him, twisting and dancing as if commanded by the entity before him. The boy tilted his head to the side as if he was trying to understand some complex puzzle in front of him. You don't want to die? Did you think we wanted to die? What about that woman, did she want to die? What makes you so special that your wants should matter to me? The fire in Hoshino's blood turned to ice as the god's eyes narrowed. The child stepped closer, gliding effortlessly over the dirty pavement. Hoshino could no longer breathe, the air around him had done what he longed to do and fled from the angry deity. We will give you one chance. Change. Or we will find you and you will not like what becomes of you mortal if you squander our gift. As suddenly as he appeared the god had left. Air returned to the alley, the shadow stilled, and Hoshino was no longer able to feel every part of himself in agonizing pain. Hoshino stumbled as he ran out of the alley rushing to get away before the avenging god changed his mind. He never once turned to look at the body he left behind. Did you really have to make him think I was a god? Izuku mumbled as he pushed himself up. His hoodie was soaked in blood and now had a nice new hole in the side. DMN, he really liked that hoodie. Of course, I deserve to have a bit of fun after being stuck watching silently in you head for the last 13 years, don't I? Izuku rolled his eyes as he stood up. He noticed the lady's bag lying a few feet away, forgotten by both parties after Izuku had jumped in. He had saved that woman's life. That man was clearly capable of murder. If Izuku hadn't stopped him, the man could have easily killed her. Izuku had just saved someone's life. A wide grin spread across his face. He had just proven everyone wrong. He wasn't a worthless Deku. He was a hero. Shoyuta wished he could go back in time and slap his younger self for deciding to teach while being a pro hero. Both jobs on their own required more time put in than your average full-time gig, without factoring in the fact he was an underground hero who patrolled at night. He missed sleep. From his perch atop a rundown apartment building, Shoyuta surveyed the nearby streets. He may be running on 2 hours of sleep and about 3 pots of coffee, but he had a job to do. For about a month now, a prolific drag trafficker who ran a good portion of this neighborhood had been strangely silent. Shoyuta spent weeks gathering evidence against him until he dropped off the grid. He had almost lost hope of catching the criminal until one of Shuta's contacts informed him that there were whispers the trafficker was meeting with one of his dealers tonight. A flash of movement at the base of a nearby building caught Shuta's eye. Leaping from his higher vantage point, Shoyuta landed gracefully directly above his suspect. Below him stood Rokuro Miki, one of the trafficker's known dealers. Miki had been brought in earlier that year for drag possession with the intent to sell, but had ran while out on bail. If all goes well tonight, Shoyuta would be bringing in both a dealer and the area's supplier. A few minutes passed before another man turned onto the street. He wore a dark jacket with the hood pulled low over his face. Every few seconds the man peeked over his shoulder, checking for pursuers. His hands were clenched white-knuckled at his side. Whatever had caused the trafficker to go off the grid was clearly still bothering him. "Where have you been, man? My clients have been up in arms for weeks because I haven't had any supply." Miki dropped his cigarette in favor of questioning his supplier. The man shushed Miki quickly before frantically scanning the area. "Not here. Come on, follow me." The man slipped down a nearby alley, urging Miki to hurry. "What's got you all jumpy? You're acting like your shadow has teeth or something?" Miki joked. "You aren't being tailed, are you? I've already got a warrant out. I don't need the police finding me now. Let's just get this over with. I have places to be." The man snapped, avoiding the questions thrown at him. He quickly pulled out 2 large packets from his jacket's pockets, handing them over to Miki. This should be enough to satisfy the addicts for a while. At the sight of the drags, Shoyuta jumped into action. He gave neither man a chance to react before they were both tied up in his capture weapon. The supplier almost seemed relieved when Shoyuta stepped into view, like he was expecting something far worse than a pro hero. That relief was quickly replaced by sheer terror as the man spotted something behind Shoyuta at the mouth of the alley. Shoyuta spun on his heels, falling into a defensive stance, ready to fight whatever the supplier found more frightening than him, only to find nothing. Glancing back, Shoyuta was met with a nearly hysterical man. "Dude, what the hell?" Miki eyed the man with confusion. "Please, you have to protect me. He's going to kill me. He found me, oh God, arrest me. Please take me to jail." "He can't get me in jail, can he? Oh God." The man's frantic pleading soon devolved into incoherent sobbing as the man gasped for breath. Unsure of what even set the man off, Shoyuta sent out a call for police to come collect the criminals. Taking one last look towards the mouth of the alley, Shoyuta settled in to wait for transport to the station. It was nearing 4 in the morning by the time the man was ready for questioning. Shoyuta stared at the now identified Katashi Hoshino through the interrogation room's one-way mirror. Hoshino had began to calm down soon after he was placed into the room. He had spent the entire trip to the station insisting someone was coming to kill him and rambling about an anger god. Whether it was a ploy in order to plead insanity or a real mental break would be debunked as soon as Detective Tsukachi arrived. "You finally caught the supplier eraser?" Shoyuta turned to see the man himself coming down the hall carrying 2 cups containing of what he expected to be some of the shittiest coffee he would ever taste. Police stations always had awful coffee, but at this point, though, he really couldn't afford to be picky. Shoyuta just grunted in reply as he turned back towards Hoshino. I heard he was causing quite the scene on the way over here. Tsukachi handed one of the cups over while he studied the man. Ready to get started? Shoyuta watched Tsukachi enter the interrogation room and sit down across from Hoshino. The detective sat a file down on the table and began to shuffle through its contents. It is currently 3:47 a.m. on July 10, 21XX. This is the questioning of Katashi Hoshino brought in on charges of drag possession and trafficking, Tsukachi stated for the recording. Before the detective could even get to his first question, Hoshino interrupted. If I plead guilty, I'll go to jail, right? Hoshino asked, his gaze jumped rapidly between Tsukachi and the door. He was tense, like he was expecting someone to burst in and attack him. Why are you so desperate to go to jail? Ever since you were caught, you have been acting like someone is out to get you. Did you anger someone powerful? Tsukachi asked, wanting to get to the bottom of the man's issues. He found me. I thought I was safe after a month of laying low, but he found me. Hoshino trailed off with a faraway look in his eyes. Who found you? The dead boy. Hoshino shouted. He wasn't happy I killed him. He said he'd make me regret it if I didn't change. The detective tapped a finger on his right hand against the tabletop in front of him. After years of working together, Shoyuta and Tsukachi developed a nonverbal way of communicating when a suspect was lying or telling the truth. A tap with his right hand indicated a true statement, or at least a statement the suspect believed was true. Hoshino was clearly insane. No one was in the mouth of that alleyway. Shoyuta just hoped the murder was all in the man's head as well. When did you kill the boy? Tsukachi carried on. On the surface, the man's statement seemed to have had no effect on the detective, but Shoyuta could hear a slight strain in his voice. Even hardened police officers struggled with cases involving children. Tsukachi was no exception. Neither was Shoyuta, as he clenched his teeth in order to keep silent. It was last month, the night of the 6th, near the West End. The brat jumped in to save somewhere. The beach owed me money and the kid let her get away, so I stabbed him. Tsukachi's finger tapped again and Shoyuta felt his blood boil as his anger grew. I made sure the little brat was dead before I went to leave, but when I turned around the boy was just standing there. Whatever I stabbed wasn't human. Hoshino trailed off again. His face grew paler the farther along his story got. By the end he nearly looked dead himself. Describe him. He was small, 10 maybe, with freckles. He was wearing a purple sweatshirt with some cartoon of a cat or something on it. The hood was up so I couldn't really see his hair. His eyes weren't right after I killed him, like the color left them, and he had these huge black wings. Tsukachi tapped once again. The man was insane. The guilt of killing a child must have broken his mind. Shoyuta pushed off of the wall and left the room. He'd listen to the rest of the interrogation later. He had a child to find. Officers jumped out of his way as he stalked down the hall towards Tsukachi's office. He would mind if Shoyuta borrowed his computer to search through records of the 6th. When Tsukachi got to his office almost 2 hours later, Shoyuta had yet to find any mention of a boy matching Hoshino's description being hospitalized, reported missing, or found dead on or around the 6th of June. He wanted to believe Hoshino was imagining the whole thing, because the alternative that absolutely no one noticed a small boy's death was heartbreaking. Shoyuta spent the next night looking for any sign of the young boy. A search of the alleyway Hoshino claimed the murder took place in was useless. After a month, all evidence was lost to the elements. His best bet on learning anything was to finding a witness. Getting someone in this part of town to talk was nearly impossible without a hefty bribe or having an in. Luckily, Shoyuta had spent years protecting the citizens of the more run-down and ignored parts of the city. With a few well-placed questions, he might just be able to find a lead. After asking around 3 homeless shelters and 2 bars, Shoyuta began hearing rumors of a new vigilante setting up shop in the neighborhood. Every story of the vigilante shared 3 main points. 1, they were small, very small, possibly a child. 2, they were quick, they got in and stopped the situation before anyone really knew they were there to begin with. And 3, they never stuck around after the situation was handled. It was like they simply vanished from the scene. The locals had taken to calling them ghost because of their vanishing act. Shoyuta hoped he was wrong, but his instincts were telling him the boy he was looking for and ghost were one and the same. Both were described as small and they clearly shared a heroic sense of justice. The only thing was, some of the first stories of ghosts take place days after the boy was supposedly stabbed bad enough to be thought dead. The next 3 nights passed in much the same manner as the first. Shoyuta would spend a few hours of his patrol collecting any information he could of the vigilante ghost. On the 12th, he heard a first-hand account from a young man who had been saved from being mugged by them. The man was able to provide Shuta's first detailed description of the new vigilante that didn't seem exaggerated by multiple retellings. Even seeing Ghost up close, the man wasn't able to provide much about his physical appearance other than his height due to the fact they wore a black face mask and kept his hood up. He believed Ghost was about 4.5 feet tall, putting him around the same height as the boy Shoyuta had started this whole investigation to find. Since that night Shoyuta had received no new information about the boy or Ghost, just retellings of the same stories from different people. He decided to give up on information gathering for the night and went back out to watch the streets until his patrol was over. His nights did seem quieter since Ghost's arrival. He had been running into less petty criminals than normal. A loud jeer followed by a round of boisterous laughter drew Shuta's attention. Well, he apparently just jinxed himself. Following the voices, he found a group of 4 clearly intoxicated men in their 20s crowding a teenage girl. The girl's terrified gaze flicked from one man to the next like a frightened animal as they slowly closed in around her. "Come on, doll, don't you wanna have a bit of fun? We can show you a good time," the largest of the group slurred, reaching to touch the girl's arm. She jerked back to avoid his hand only to run into another's arms. "I'll look at the cute little mouse. We only bite a little, promise," the brunette teased as he locked his arms around the girl's waist. Shoyuta snuck up behind the largest, sticking to the shadows in order to hide his approach. 4 against 1 wasn't the worst odds he had faced, and they were drunk enough to be swaying where they stood, so Shoyuta was liking his chances. The girl being held would hopefully not cause too much of a problem later on. Seeing his opportunity when the large man stumbled trying to get closer to the girl, Shoyuta attacked. A quick jab to the temple had the man down for the count. The other 3 didn't even seem to realize their buddy was now unconscious behind them. They all seemed to only have eyes for the distressed teen. That definitely made his job easier. The smallest of the group was the next closest to Shoyuta. His size seemed to have worked against him in his night of drinking, as he was clearly the drunkest out of the bunch. Shoyuta didn't have to do anything to the man as he tripped over his own feet, causing his face to connect to the side of a dumpster. The other 2 turned towards the loud noise and spotted Shoyuta standing over their unconscious friends. Startled, the brunette let go of the girl as the other spun to face Shoyuta head-on. His arms appeared to be able to move as if boneless as whipped around. "Who the hell are you?" the man with physical mutation quirk shouted. Shoyuta didn't even dignify that with a response. He simply jumped towards the man, sending a powerful roundhouse kick to his face. Unable to dodge the attack, the man fell hard. Unlike the other 2, one hit apparently was not enough to knock him out. The brunette tried to cover him as he went to stand up but didn't seem to have much experience fighting. His punch flew wide, causing him to stumble into the wall. Shoyuta quickly gestured to the girl to run while the 2 remaining men were preoccupied trying to get back to their feet. The girl only hesitated for a second before running towards a safer part of town. With the girl now out of the way, Shoyuta jumped into the attack, no longer worrying about her safety. 2 well-placed punches later, Shoyuta had 4 unconscious drunks spread out around him. He pulled out his phone and began to call Tsukachi to send over a few cars when the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Shoyuta whipped around only to find a 5th man reaching towards him. Before Shoyuta had time to react, the man dropped to the ground. Standing behind the now down man was a small figure. Their face was covered by a black medical mask. An oversized purple sweatshirt hid their hair from view with its hood. Black leggings and boots covered the figure's lower half. Shoyuta found himself standing face to face with the elusive Ghost. Ghost didn't react to Shuta's stare, choosing to scan the surrounding area for more threats instead. Only after he deemed the area safe did Ghost turn his attention to Shoyuta. The silence was broken when Ghost let out an excited gasp. "Oh my god! You're Eraserhead!" Ghost cried out. His voice was high and bubbly with excitement as he bounced up and down on his toes. "You know who I am?" Shoyuta was surprised hardly anyone recognized him in or out of his hero costume. "Of course. You're one of my favorite heroes. Your quirk enables you to erase other quirks, making almost every fight you have quirkless. Well, unless you're fighting someone with a mutation quirk, you can't erase something physical like that." Ghost exited rambling continued. Shoyuta just stared at the young boy. He knew so much about his quirk. It was kind of impressive how much Ghost discovered about him from the small amount of information available. "And I couldn't let that man touch you. He clearly had a touch-based quirk by the way he was holding his hands, probably a 5-finger activation requirement based on the way he was keeping his fingers, and you had your back turned. Without looking at him you couldn't erase his quirk." Shuta's eyebrows raised at what he had just managed to hear. The kid had figured all that out about that man's quirk after just seeing how he was holding his hands? "Hey kid, what about the others? Do you know what their quirks are?" Shoyuta asked, curious as to how much the boy could pick up on. "Oh well, that one has a physical mutation quirk that." For about 5 minutes Ghost went on about the quirks of the unconscious men until an alarm caused him to jump in place. Ghost quickly reached into his pocket and pulled out an old phone. His eyes lit up as he looked at the screen. It's midnight. It's the 15th now. Ghost said excitedly. It's my birthday. I wonder if M.O. His smile dimmed as he cut off his own sentence mid-word. What had caused the kid to become so sad all of a sudden, and what was he doing out at midnight on his birthday? A groan from behind him caused Shoyuta to turn away from Ghost. The large man appeared to be waking up. The sight of the nearly conscious man reminded Shoyuta his call to the station was interrupted when the fifth man appeared. Ghost had said the man had a touch-based quirk. What would have happened to him if Ghost wasn't there to stop him? When he turned back towards the boy to ask, he was gone. By the time the intoxicated men had been collected and Shoyuta gave an officer his testimony of the fight, his patrol was over. He should head home and get some sleep before he had to go in to teach, but he couldn't get his thoughts off of Ghost. He knew the kid he was looking for was young, but to see it for himself really made the point hit home, and hearing him talk made it 10 times worse. The boy was so bright and cheerful but was hiding a deep sadness. The pain was clear as day in his eyes when he looked at his phone. Whatever caused the boy to shut down like that wasn't good. Hisashi was going to start worrying if he stayed out any longer. Oh God, he was going to have to tell him he met the boy. Over the past few days Hisashi had gotten almost as invested into the case as Shoyuta. He had always had a soft spot for children, and when Shoyuta told him about the missing, possible dead, child, he had insisted on being told about any new leads. Maybe he'd get lucky and Hisashi would still be asleep when he got home. He wasn't. As soon as Shoyuta stepped into their apartment, Hisashi was on him. Looks like he's not getting any sleep before work. His class better behave today or he'd be dealing with far fewer of them tomorrow. Any new leads about the little listener? Hisashi jumped up from where he was dozing on the couch as soon as he heard the front door close. He must have gotten up early to wait for Shoyuta to get home. He almost felt bad about making him wait so long. Yeah, Shoyuta started before he realized he was going to have to tell his husband about being saved from a drunk man by a 10-year-old. Great. Is he okay? Hisashi's eyes widened. He had a tendency to worry, and Shuta's reluctancy at telling him what he had learned was probably causing his brain to jump to conclusions. They didn't find him dead, did they? No, he's alive. I actually met him about an hour ago, Shoyuta quickly interjected, not wanting to see his husband have a breakdown over a very much alive kid's death. You did? How is he? Is he okay? Where is he now? What's his name? Hisashi fired out rapidly, not able to decide what he needed to know first. It took Shoyuta over 40 minutes to tell Hisashi about his night. Almost 10 of those Shoyuta spent glaring at the blonde as he laughed hysterically over Shoyuta getting saved like a damsel in distress by an adorable little hero. The light-hearted feeling soon disappeared when Shoyuta brought up his concerns about the boy. Zashi, no one admitted him to a hospital after he was stabbed. No parent would just miss the fact their kid came home one night covered in blood with a hole in his side. Even if they were medical professionals and could help him at home, why didn't they file a police report? And to top it all off, what kind of parents would let their 10-year-old run around alone at night like that anyways? Stories of him say Ghost was active less than a week after Hoshino said he ran into him in that alley. No 10-year-old should be able to stop muggings with a stab wound. Hell, no 10-year-old should be doing that, injured or not. What the hell are the kid's parents doing? Shoyuta ranted, letting all his thoughts out. He's used to pain, Hisashi stated. His face was pale as he met Shuta's eye. He must be used to being in pain if he was able to keep going like that. What if they are abusing him? Shoyuta would be lying if he said he hadn't considered that a possibility when he first learned of the boy. Hell, even tonight his suspicions seemed to be correct when the boy's own birthday made him sad. What child didn't enjoy celebrating their birthday? One who had no one to celebrate with. I didn't get a name. I didn't even get a look at the kid's face. Without running into him again, there's not much was can do to figure out who he is and if he's okay at home. Their conversation fell silent as they realized they knew of an abused child who they could do absolutely nothing for. All they could do was hope the kid was okay. It definitely didn't help that said child decided it would be a good idea to run around in the dead of night to fight criminals. Izuku couldn't believe it. He had just met Eraserhead. A few days ago he thought he saw him catching some drag dealers, but Izuku got nervous at the thought of meeting the hero and hid before he could be spotted. Izuku didn't even realize who he had saved tonight until he recognized the man's capture weapon. Sure, he ran away as soon as his back was turned, but he still got to meet one of his favorite heroes. He was a bit intimidating in person, but he seemed to actually care about Izuku's analysis of the men's quirks. It had been years since anyone had even pretended to be interested in Izuku's hobby. It made him feel all warm and fuzzy inside, like talking to death did. They both seemed to have the same deadpan sarcasm thing going on. After a month of knowing he had a quirk, Izuku had more or less come to terms with the fact he was practically tortured for years for nothing. It wasn't like anything really changed anyways. Both he and Death decided it was best if no one learned he had a quirk. Izuku could only imagine what would happen if anyone learned he was essentially immortal. He'd be kidnapped and experimented on faster than he could snap his fingers. It was tough at first to act like he was still quirkless when other students hurled insults, slurs, and punches at him. Being a vigilante actually helped. Being able to take out his pent-up anger on criminals helped him keep his mouth shut at school. He had slowly started to go out more and more frequently as time went on to help keep his cool. Soon after he had gotten killed by the man in the alley, he had gone out and bought a few replacement hoodies and a box of disposable masks with some of the money his mom had left him. He figured if he was stabbed once already, the likelihood of it happening again were high, and he didn't want to have to go out and get a replacement hoodie every time that happened. He had been lucky so far and hadn't needed any of the spares. The face masks were pretty much a given. Technically he was still legally quirkless, so he wasn't actually doing anything illegal. Most of the current laws about vigilantism were worded in a way only someone using a quirk could be tried for breaking them, but it was safer to keep his face covered just in case. Him being diagnosed quirkless also helped protect his quirk from being discovered. No one would go looking for a quirk in someone everyone knew didn't have one. Who knew being quirkless could be so beneficial? Izuku's thoughts wandered as he crawled into bed. He didn't mean to stay out so late on a school night, but one tired day was worth meeting Eraserhead. Just as Izuku drifted to sleep, he realized he had never asked for an autograph. Over the next 2 months, Shoyuta had been running into Ghost more frequently. At first he'd only catch a glimpse of the vigilante out of the corner of his eyes. The kid seemed to like watching him fight. After a few weeks, Ghost grew more bold. He would join in a fight here or there, and sometimes he'd even stay to comment on a specific move he saw Shoyuta perform. Every time Shoyuta saw the boy, he had to restrain himself from asking the kid who he was, why he was fighting, or if he was okay at home. He knew if he pressured Ghost too soon he'd be scared off and Shoyuta would lose his chance at helping him. If that ever happened, Hisashi would probably murder him for losing his chance at closure over the kid. His husband's worry only seemed to grow every time Shoyuta mentioned running into him. It probably didn't help that Ghost seemed to be hiding injuries all the time. He was scarily good at masking his pain. More and more signs of abuse kept showing up, making it that much harder for Shoyuta to keep his mouth shut. Ghost had become such a common topic of discussion at home, an outsider would have mistaken him for Shoyuta and Hisashi's child. Shoyuta would often come home and brag about how fast Ghost had taken down a thug, or would rant about how the boy had been favoring his ankle that night. Hisashi was just as bad. He had taken to calling Ghost baby, and always followed up Shuta's rants with how he'd kill whoever was hurting their baby. Shoyuta knew they shouldn't be getting so attached to a child they didn't even know that name of, but they couldn't help it. They were both teachers for a reason. Even if Shoyuta didn't show it, he really cared about his students and wanted to make sure they made it through their time as heroes alive. If that meant a bit of tough love, then so be it, but Ghost was different. He was a hurt child who seemed to have no one looking out for his well-being. Shoyuta would be dead before he gave up helping this kid. "Deku! Get your butt back here!" Kaken yelled as Izuku sprinted down the stairs of the school building. Kaken and 3 other students were quickly closing the distance between them thanks to the twisted ankle they gave him earlier that day. Classes ended hours ago, but Izuku had been held back to serve detention for starting a fight in the hall. He hadn't started anything. Kaken and a few of his friends cornered him during lunch because he had apparently gave one of them a funny look during math. He didn't even glance in the boys' direction, but they didn't care. They just wanted a convenient excuses to beat him up. The so-called fight resulted in Izuku's twisted ankle along with multiple new bruises before a teacher came by and separated them. Even though the only injuries the others sported were bloodied knuckles, Izuku was given all the blame. The boys were sent off to the nurses to get ice packs for their hands, while Izuku was sent to the office to learn his punishment. He was given detention that day after school and a 2-day suspension. Izuku should have been upset by the blatant discrimination, but the suspension meant he would be able to spend more time out patrolling. Ever since he met Eraserhead 3 months ago, they had been meeting up 2 or 3 times a week at night. At first Izuku stayed in the shadows watching from a distance, hoping to learn something from the hero, but lately Eraserhead had taken to inviting him to join in on his patrol route. Before he could meet up with Eraserhead, Izuku would have to get away from Kaken's gang. They must have heard about his detention and decided to surprise him in order to continue their fun from before. They had been waiting for Izuku just around the corner from the detention room. Lucky for him, they weren't being particularly quiet. After months of being a vigilante, he had gotten very good at picking up on the smallest noises in order to find fights. The problem was the only way to the stairs was around that corner. Hoping to catch them off guard, Izuku had snuck to the corner before sprinting by the group. Their shock had given him a much-needed lead he had just lost. Izuku's body hit the ground hard as he was tackled from behind by a tall boy named Arima. His hands burned from where he tried to catch his fall as he struggled to push himself off the floor, but Arima was too big to dislodge off his back. You think you're so clever, don't you, Deku, trying to run like that? Well, there's no teachers here to save you now. We're going to have a blast. Izuku could hear the smirk Kaken must have been sporting in his voice. An explosion punctuated his last sentence as he grabbed Izuku's left wrist. Izuku couldn't hold in the pain scream as he felt his skin bubble as it burned. The smell of burnt flesh filled the hallway, causing one of the boys to GG before he turned to run to the bathroom. Arima must have climbed of him to get away from Kaken's explosion because no one was holding him down when Kaken used his grip to throw Izuku onto his back. This will teach you your place, Deku, Kaken continued. Izuku watched, unable to move as Kaken's hand came towards him again. His fingers dug into the meat of Izuku's shoulder as Kaken glared down at him. You're nothing more than a pebble in my way. A second explosion rang through the empty halls, followed closely by another tortured scream. The edges of Izuku's vision blackened as he struggled to stay conscious through the pain. By the time Izuku had managed to get to his feet, Kaken and the others were long gone, leaving him to make the long and painful trip home in peace. When the bullying first started to get physical, Izuku had invested some of his meager allowance into a first aid kit. Included in it had been high-quality burn cream, the kind with numbing effects. He had gotten many replacement bottles over the years thanks to Kaken. Izuku had to use the remainder of the latest bottle on his shoulder and wrist that night. A little over 4 months had passed since Izuku's mother had left him with nothing but a note. Almost half of the money she left was gone. Between replacing first aid supplies, getting gear for his new nightly hobby and stocking up on food, the money wasn't lasting him as long as he hoped it would. She said she'd send more, but not when. Izuku would have to ration what remained until more arrived to be safe. He knew he should probably just call it a night, but he had planned on patrolling with Eraserhead. It would take a lot more than a few burns and a twisted ankle to keep him from that. It took Izuku a lot longer to get ready to leave that night, so by the time he reached their normal meeting place, Eraserhead was already waiting. Hey kid, I was starting to wonder if you were going to show up tonight. Normally you get here before I do. Eraserhead seemed to have a habit of working questions into conversations without outright asking them. Izuku never felt like he was being interrogated by the man, but it was clear Eraserhead was hoping he'd answer. Sorry, I got held up at school today. My schedule got a bit thrown off, he said sheepishly. Izuku kept his face down as he rubbed the back of his neck. When he was younger, his mother could always tell he was lying by the look in his eye. He wasn't lying exactly, more like withholding a few facts, but Izuku didn't want to take the risk Eraserhead would be able to tell like his mother could. If the hero found out he was hurt, he might make Izuku go home instead of coming on his patrol. If you say so. Well, are you ready to go then? Eraserhead asked. He didn't seem to believe Izuku's story but moved on anyways. Izuku liked that about the man. Yeah. Let's go. Izuku cheered. Where are we going tonight? I've been hearing rumors that relations between a few of the local gangs are getting tense. I figured we could watch the border between them just in case any fights break out. Eraserhead explained as they started off. Izuku had gotten much better at parkour over the months, but he still had trouble keeping up with Eraserhead. The hero never hesitated before jumping roof to roof, no matter how high up they were. By the time Eraserhead stopped on a rooftop mile or so away, Izuku was panting with stitches up his sides and a throbbing ankle. Eraserhead watched with a small smirk on his face as Izuku struggled to catch his breath with his hands on his knees. You need to work on your cardio, kid. Hey, I'll have you know I run every day. Your legs are just along, you giant. Izuku huffed out. He might have been running from bullies, but it counted. The adrenaline just helped raise his heart rate faster. Eraserhead chuckled as he situated himself in the shadows close enough to the edge to see the road below. Izuku followed once he got his breathing under control and sat down next to the hero. About an hour passed in comfortable silence before anything of interest happened. Izuku had began to doze off as the stress of the day caught up to him when Eraserhead tapped his arm. When he looked down, Izuku spotted a group of 6 young men facing off. They seemed to be there for some time before Eraserhead decided to wake him. Come on kid, it looks like a fight's about to start, Eraserhead whispered as he launched himself onto a nearby fire escape. By the time Izuku got to the ground, the hero had taken down half of the gang members. The remaining 3 seemed to set aside their rivalry to focus on the bigger threat, Eraserhead. Izuku snuck up behind one of the men and attempted to use a move the hero had taught him earlier that week. Spinning quickly to gain momentum, Izuku whipped his leg into the man's side, right where his kidney was. Izuku wasn't expecting the quick response that followed. The man spun around and lunged at Izuku. He tried to dodge the man's attack, but the gang member's reach was too large and he managed to get a hold of Izuku's wrist, the same wrist Kaken had burned earlier that day. A strangled scream escaped Izuku's lips as the man squeezed down in order to keep him from getting away. Shuda's heart stopped when he heard his kid scream. He had seen Ghost take hits during fights like it was nothing. Hell, he had watched the kid fall off a fire escape once without so much as a surprised gasp. What had they done to him to cause him that much pain? Whoever caused his kid to scream like that was dead. With blind fury, Shoyuta twisted, ignoring the two men still focused on him as he sprinted towards Ghost. The man holding the kid's wrist barely had time to look in his direction before being tackled to the ground. 5 punches to the face might have been a bit overkill considering he was unconscious after the first, but Shoyuta didn't care, he hurt his kid. The remaining 2 gang members turned to run, not wanting to face Shuda's rage after witnessing what just occurred. Normally Shoyuta would pursue them, but at the moment he was just happy he didn't have to fight any longer than necessary. He had a kid to check on. Ghost hadn't moved from where the man had grabbed him. Tears were running down the kid's face as he cradled his left wrist to his chest. Shoyuta couldn't see any visible injuries thanks to the oversized hoodie the kid always wore, but he could see the tremors running through his body. "Ghost!" Shoyuta called out as he clambered off of the bloody thug. "What did he do?" "I am fine," Ghost stuttered out, trying to hold in sobs. "Kid, you're not fine. Let me see your wrist, it's clearly hurt." Shoyuta reached out, waiting for the vigilante to give it over. "Really, it's fine. He just grabbed onto a burn I got earlier," Ghost sniffed as he looked down. "You were hurt already? Why didn't you say anything?" Shoyuta tried not to sound angry. He didn't want the kid to be afraid to tell him what was wrong. He was just upset with himself for not picking up on it earlier. Shoyuta noticed he was favoring his ankle on the trip over, but nothing hinted at the pain in his wrist. "Burns hurt like a beach," he should have noticed. I wanted to go out with you tonight, I didn't want you to send me home." As much as it warmed his heart to hear Ghost wanted to spend time with him, all Shoyuta could think about was that the kid didn't want to go home. He was hurt and he didn't want to go home. Did he not feel safe enough to go home? Was the person who burned him there? "I won't make you go home if you don't want to, but you shouldn't be fighting injured like that," Shoyuta said softly. "How'd you get the burn anyways?" If anyone had burned his kid on purpose, he'd have another bloody, unconscious person on his hands. "Oh, I burned it cooking dinner." Ghost was still looking down at his feet as he spoke. It only took Shoyuta a few conversations with the kid to realize it was a tell. Whenever he lied, Ghost wouldn't maintain eye contact. "Why were you cooking? I know you're pretty mature for your age, but 10-year-olds really shouldn't be cooking by themselves, kid." Shoyuta knew the story was a lie, but he hoped that by going along with it he could get the kid to trust him more in the future. 10? I'm 14. And I cook for myself plenty without getting hurt." Ghost's head shot up as replied indignantly. 14? Shoyuta thought his guess of 10 was being generous. The kid could easily pass for that or younger, but 14? Ghost looked like a strong breeze could carry him away. What the hell? Were his parents feeding him at all? Is that why he had to cook for himself so often? Shoyuta pushed his thoughts aside. He could rant about this to Hizashi later. Right now he needed to get a look at that burn. "Either way, let me take a look at it. We don't know where that a-hole has been, we don't want it getting infected," Shoyuta joked, trying to put the kid at ease. "Fine." Reluctantly, Ghost put his wrist into Shuda's outstretched hand. Shoyuta froze when he pulled the sleeve of the kid's hoodie down. His blood ran cold when he realized what he was looking at. Ghost's skin was red and blistered in the perfect shape of a handprint. His wrist was so small the handprint completely wrapped around, forming some sort of twisted, effed-up bracelet that covered nearly half of his forearm. Someone had grabbed his kid and gave him second-degree burns using their quirk. Shoyuta had to force himself to look away. His eyes burned as his quirk activated in anger. Someone was going to die tonight. Eraserhead? What's wrong? The sound of Ghost's frightened voice drove away Shuda's anger, leaving him with nothing but a cold and empty hole in his chest. "Kid, you don't get burns like this cooking," Shoyuta said slowly. I don't want to talk about it," Ghost whispered. Tears had begun to fall down his face again, but he made no move to pull away. "Okay, just let me ask one question, please. Are you safe at home?" Shoyuta couldn't just sit around anymore. He suspected something was wrong for months now and did nothing, and now his kid was paying the price. "At home?" Ghost parroted back as he looked into the distance. Several seconds passed before he turned back to Shoyuta. "No one's hurting me at home." Shoyuta had spent the remainder of his night sitting on a rooftop with Ghost. The kid had pretty much gone non-responsive after answering his question, but didn't seem like he wanted to be alone. When they parted ways, Shoyuta was sure to give Ghost his cell phone number, instructing him to call if he ever needed help. The sunrise had long since passed by the time Shoyuta arrived home. He didn't even bother taking off his shoes before face planting into the couch. He'd have to put them back on to leave for UA in a few minutes anyways. "Rough night?" Hizashi asked as he walked over to run his fingers through Shuda's hair. working out the tangles that had accumulated over his patrol. Shoyuta looked up at his husband knowing they were both going into work angry today. Midnight and Ectoplasm shared a look as Eraserhead and Present Mike entered the room. Anger practically radiated off of the pair. Mike didn't even acknowledge the other teachers as he made his way over to his desk. He simply threw down his bag before turning to leave the room once again. Eraserhead headed over to the coffee maker he practically owned, glaring at the wall as he waited for it to finish heating up. "Did you and Mike get into a fight or something?" Vlad King asking, not seeming to notice the hostile vibes Eraserhead was currently giving off. Eraserhead turned slowly to stare down the teacher. Without breaking eye contact, he poured a cup of coffee before downing the scalding liquid in seconds. After he refilled his cup, he turned to leave. The only thing the other teachers heard was Eraserhead mumbling to himself about where he was going to hide the body as he slammed the door behind him. By lunch the news had spread to all the staff. Everyone avoided Eraserhead like the plague, not wanting to join whoever he was already planning on disposing of. Most had their money on it being Present Mike, whether it be because of a fight or some other convoluted rumor. When Mike finally entered the teacher's lounge after the bell, all eyes turned to Midnight. Out of all the teachers, she was the least likely to be killed for asking the question they all wanted answered. As he began to dig around in his bag, Midnight decided to speak up. "Hisashi, is everything alright? You and Shoyuta seem a bit tense today." Tense was a bit of an understatement, but given Eraserhead's reaction to Vlad's question this morning, it was best to err on the side of caution. Mike turned to face Midnight with 2 bentos in his hands. "Someone hurt our baby," Mike responded, completely stone-faced, before he stormed out of the room, mirroring Eraserhead's performance from that morning. Several seconds pasted in complete silence before all hell broke loose as the teachers collectively started shouting out questions. Izuku didn't know how long he had been laying on this random fire escape for. At first he wanted to just look at the stars while he pondered his thoughts, but he soon realized the light from the city drowned out any starlight he was looking for. He spent at least an hour after realizing that in tears. He now felt pretty pathetic, crying over the lack of stars, but he had been so close to breaking down all day. It had just been his tipping point. Since last night Izuku's mind had been in turmoil. "Are you safe at home?" Eraserhead's question was so straightforward yet so complicated. It repeated over and over again in his head as Izuku tried to process what the hero could have possibly meant by it. Well, that wasn't really true. Izuku knew he was asking if he was being abused, but was he? Izuku wasn't dumb, he knew there was more than one kind of abuse. Physical was only the most discussed kind. Emotion and psychological abuse were just as damaging, but could he consider the neglect he had been put through as abuse? Could a parent abuse their child if they were never around? Even when he managed to tear his mind away from the whole "is this abuse" conundrum, he still had to the original question itself to deal with. Was his home safe? His apartment was one of the only places he wasn't being beaten on the regular. That didn't mean he felt safe there though. For as long as he could remember, that apartment felt oppressive and constricting. Even now that his mother was gone for good, Izuku was overly jumpy within its walls. There were only 2 times Izuku could think of when he felt truly safe. The first was when he was in death space in his mind. Considering he had to die to get there, it wasn't a very viable, safe place for him. The second he had only realized when he had began down this rabbit hole in the first place. He felt honest to God safe around Eraserhead himself, and boy did that open a whole other can of worms. Eraserhead seemed to genuinely care about Izuku. He let a vigilante tag along during his patrols when by all means he should be arresting him. The man went out of his way to show him how to execute moves Izuku showed interest in learning. He helped patch up any injuries he noticed when they were together. He appeared angry on Izuku's behalf when he realized someone had hurt him. All things considered, yesterday's question probably shouldn't have surprised him as much as it did, but Izuku didn't have the best track record when it came to trusting adults. His father left days after learning he was quirkless. His teachers considered him nothing more than a waste of resources. His mother got sick of pretending to care and left as well. The only adult that had been a constant in his life was All Might, and he never even met the guy. Could he trust Eraserhead? A shiver racked Izuku's body, drawing him out of his thoughts. The nights were starting to get colder as fall drew nearer. He should probably invest in getting some warmer clothes to patrol in for winter, but for right now Izuku guessed he'd just head home. He had ended up near the rooftop he and Eraserhead had spent most of last night on before he decided to rest on the fire escape. His thoughts had directed him back towards where he was asked the question as he pondered it, so he had quite a trek ahead of him to get home. After a few minutes of walking, Izuku got the feeling he was being followed. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end and his skin itched with the feeling of multiple eyes on his back. Izuku was very familiar with the feeling of being prey and knew when his only hope was to run, so between one step and the next he was off. The sound of feet pounding against concrete chased him as Izuku struggled to go faster. His ankle gave out as he tried to take a corner too sharply. The strain he had put on it yesterday trying to outrun Kaken's gang and then by following Eraserhead had finally caught up to him. Before he was able to get back to his feet, his pursuers rounded the corner. All Izuku saw as he turned to face them was an object moving very quickly towards his head before his world went black. The first thing Izuku became aware of was the feeling of blood pounding in his head. He felt like he had been hit by a bus. What the hell happened? The more he tried to remember, the more fuzzy his thoughts became until he was left feeling like he was drifting underwater. Every thought made him feel like he was tumbling more and more out of control. With his mind truly shot, Izuku turned his attention to his body only to find it made out of lead. Even his fingers felt far too heavy to move. The only part of him that seemed to work was his ears, which was a shame because every sound, no matter how small, only served to make the pounding in his head louder. Looky here, the little hero brat is finally waking up. For a while there I thought we managed to kill him. Hero? Who said that? Izuku wished he could figure out how to get his eyes open. He wanted to see the hero. Which hero was it? What if it was Eraserhead? He liked Eraserhead, he was the best. DMN, how hard did you hit the kid? He's mumbling about his dad. Dad? He had a dad? Was he nice? What if his dad was the hero? That'd be so cool. He wanted to see, but it's all black. Why was it black? Oh right, his eyes. Open please. I don't care how messed up the brat is. It won't matter for long anyways. He's just a way to get back at that FING hero for getting my brother arrested. Oh boy, that guy looks angry. His brother was arrested? What did he do? Oh, angry guy is looking over here, that's not good. Hey, his eyes were working again. Hey kid, how would you like to call your dad? It could be a little surprise for him. That'd be nice. This man doesn't look as angry guy is, maybe he's nice. Nice like Eraserhead. Oh, they should call him. Oh, don't you worry brat, we'll call your dad right now. Shoyuta wished he was asleep. Even though he didn't go out patrolling last night, he hadn't managed to get any rest. Every time he closed his eyes he saw Ghost's tear-stained face staring back at him. He shouldn't have let the kid go home yesterday. Sure, he said he was safe there, but something wasn't right about his home life. Now Shoyuta was stuck teaching students with less than half of his kids' potential on no sleep. He didn't even see why he was here. There was probably only 5 students even paying attention to his lecture right now. Shoyuta knew better than anyone how boring hero laws could be, but that didn't mean they weren't important to. No. 20 minutes into his lecture, Shuta's phone started to buzz. He almost ignored it, expecting it to be Zashi sending him some cat video he found during his free PRD, until he remembered he had given Ghost his number. Shoyuta snuck a glance down, not wanting to confirm his students' beliefs that they could use their phone during class. His quick look only revealed an unknown number on his screen. He didn't know why he had expected the kid to have contact information saved when he had never got a number in return. 2 more buzzes went off before Shoyuta decided it was best to answer in case Ghost really did need him. The kid could be hurt. He was not going to let his kid down again. Shoyuta thought he was ready for the worst, but nothing could have prepared him for the image that filled his screen when the video call connected. Dad? Ghost slurred out. His mask had been removed, revealing a face spotted with freckles and blood. More blood was running down the side of his face, coming from a cut somewhere underneath his curly green hair, dripping off his chin onto his arm, which was tied down to the chair he sat on. Kid? What happened? Where are you? Shoyuta shot up, ignoring the surprised reactions of his students. Every nerve in his body was demanding Shoyuta run to his kid now, but without a location to go to he was frozen in place. Don't know, Enri guy want to call you, my EAD, Ertz, wanna go, Ghost voice became harder to understand as his words began to blend together. Whatever caused the cut to the kid's head clearly gave him a nasty concussion as well. Togata, go get Mike. Now! Shoyuta shouted out as muted the call, not wanting to startle Ghost. He barely noticed as the blonde boy ran from the room, not even bothering with the door but phasing right through the wall. Shuta's panic turned to cold-blooded rage when the camera flipped, revealing the face of one of the gang members who ran away 2 nights ago. The man's face was twisted into cruel smirk as he took in Shuta's anger. What the F did you do to my kid? Shoyuta grounded out. Well, we found that little brat wandering around all by himself last night, so we decided he should come play with us for a bit. It's only fair, right? You got my brother locked up 2 nights ago, so we get your kid in return. You really should have taught him not to go out alone at night. Have to give the brat props though, he sure ran like hell when he realized we were behind him. The man started to laugh, causing the phone to shake and distort his face. If you so much as touch him again, I will kill you myself. There won't be a piece of you left big enough to bury when I'm done. Shoyuta barely recognized his own voice as he growled out the threat. His nails dug into the wood of the podium in front of him as resisted the urge to crush his phone in a poor mockery of what he wanted to do to the man's face. His reaction only seemed to humor that man as his laughs grew louder. Several seconds passed before the man got his laughter under control. The camera now steadily showing his face. "Oh, I won't touch him," the man's smirk grew as he pulled out a gun aiming it off screen. "I'll just leave him here for you to find." Crazed eyes were the last thing Shoyuta saw as the sound of gunfire spilled from his phone speakers and the call went dead. Hisashi jumped as one of Sho's students came through the wall. The blonde boy panted doubled over in front of the Gen Ed English class he had just been teaching, trying to catch his breath. The boy's eyes frantically met his with panic clear on his face. "Mike-sensei. Aizawa-sensei told me to get you, something's wrong." He got a call from a little boy calling him dad. He sounded like he was really hurt. Togata finally got out between gulps of air. Hisashi's face went white as he realized what the hero student just said. Ghost was hurt. Sho told him about giving Ghost his number, but he never expected him to call so soon. His baby was hurt. Without giving his class any explanation, Hisashi booked it out the door, sprinting towards Sho's classroom. Why was UA so goddamn big? Students stared as they watched one of their teachers race down the hall, being followed by a severely out-of-breath first year. "Sho! What happened to my baby?" Hisashi yelled out as he slammed open the classroom door. The 19 remaining students all turned to look at Hisashi with varying looks of terror on their faces. Several of them were in tears and some looked like they were on the verge of passing out. The only person who didn't react to Hisashi's arrival was the man being questioned. Sho was in a nearly catatonic state, staring down at the blank screen of his phone. "Sho? What's going on?" Hisashi pleaded, begging his husband for answers, but he didn't even look away from the screen. Hisashi turned towards the hero students. "Someone tell me what's going on right now," he demanded. Several seconds passed in silence until one girl towards the back of the room spoke up. Did they just shoot him?" Tears streamed down the girl's face. Hisashi felt like throwing up. Did she just suggest someone shot Ghost? What was going on? From the beginning. What happened? Hisashi said between breaths. His breathing was slowly picking up pace as his anxiety began to spiral out of control. Now was not the time to panic. Answers first, panic later. "Sensei just got a call. It was a video call, I think. We couldn't see the screen though." A little boy called him dad and it was very hard to understand what he was saying. His words were all slurred together. A boy hesitantly started. He looked like he was trying very hard to appear unbothered by what had just occurred, but he was falling horribly as his hands shook under his desk. Someone else started speaking after the boy stopped, and Sensei seemed to know him. He looked very angry. The man said something about his brother being arrested the other night and him taking his kid as payback. A girl in the second row carried on when the first boy stopped. She nervously glanced towards Sho before continuing. "Sensei threatened to kill him if he touched the boy again." The man laughed, and the girl had to stop as a sob shook her body. Her hands shot up to cover her face. The dramatic reaction wasn't helping Hisashi calm down in the slightest. Ghost had been kidnapped in retaliation over the arrests him and Shoyuta made the night Ghost was burned. Oh God. Ghost was already hurt when they took him, but not hurt in a way that would cause slurred speech. Did they drag his baby? Hisashi frantically looked around the room, hoping to make eye contact with someone who would finish telling him what the hell happened. There was a gunshot, then the call just ended. A boy bursted out, unable to take the pressure in the room any longer. He almost immediately looked away from Hisashi, unable to maintain eye contact with his distressed teacher. "It was my fault." Hisashi's eyes shot towards Sho. The man was still staring at his phone. The whisper was so quiet he could almost believed he imagined it. Slowly Sho raised his head and stared into Hisashi's eyes. "It's all my fault, I let them get away." Sho's face was entirely blank. The only thing that gave away his emotions were the unshed tears in his eyes. "What's going on? I could hear you yelling from 3 rooms down." Snipe asked. The hero stood in the doorway in confusion as he looked around the room. "Watch Eraserhead's class," Hisashi said as he grabbed Sho's hand, pulling him towards the door. "Get someone to check on mine as well," he added on as an afterthought as he pushed by the man to leave the room. Hisashi's mind was a mess, but he had to stay together. Sho needed him to stay together. They couldn't both panic right now. He just needed to breathe and find Nezu. If anyone would know what to do, it'd be the principal. Sho didn't say another word as the maid there was towards Nezu's office. As they approached the door, it swung open, granting them entry. Sitting at his desk was Nezu, typing frantically on his computer. "I heard what happened through the cameras and I'm working on tracing the call now," the Chimera said, not bothering to look away from his computer screen. "Aizawa, perhaps you should call your detective friend for some police assistance once I find your boy." The suggestion finally roused Sho out of his catatonic state. Hisashi watched as he quickly brought up Tsukachi's contact information. By the time Sho's call ended nearly 10 minutes later, Nedzu had figured out the location of Ghost's phone and the two heroes were off to meet with Tsukachi and several other officers at a warehouse across town. Shoyuta glared at the warehouse in front of him. Tsukachi had barely convinced him storming the place wasn't the best course of action and they should wait for his officers to set up a perimeter first. If they took any longer he was going to say F it and just go in alone. If it wasn't for Zashi next to him his patience would have run out minutes after they arrived. The call from Ghost's phone ended nearly 2 hours ago. Who knows what his kid has had to endure during that time? If his kid was even alive. No, Ghost was alive. Shoyuta was going to go in there, beat the living sheet out of that man and then keep his kid right where he could see him until he was 40. He didn't care what he had to do to make that happen. Shoyuta nearly punched Zashi when he grabbed his hand, startling him out of his thoughts. He could tell his husband was barely keeping it together but was pushing through for him. Shoyuta didn't know what he would do without the man. Zashi hadn't even met Ghost yet but cared about him as much if not more than Shoyuta did himself. If it wasn't for him, he would probably still be sitting on his butt in his classroom. Tsukachi is coming back, Zashi whispered out, nodding toward the approaching detective. We're all ready. Sansa and I will be following you two in to provide backup if needed, Tsukachi explained. And Eraser? Try not to kill anyone. The paperwork would be a beach and I'd make you do it. Shoyuta was almost angry enough to do it anyways, paperwork beat med, but he knew there would be bigger consequences than that if that man died today. Restraint wasn't Chaozu's strong suit right now but he'd manage. His first priority was getting Ghost out anyways. The two heroes shared a look as they silently approached the warehouse door. Typically Shoyuta would be against entering through the main door of a building but the lack of windows and side entrances left them with no other options. After a silent countdown Zashi pushed open the door revealing an empty room. Not a single thing occupied the main room of the warehouse. The building clearly hadn't been in use in several years and the previous inhabitants had taken everything with them when they left. The dust covering the floor had been recently disturbed however. Several trails of footprints lead to and from an office space near the back of the building. Dim light shone out from underneath the room's door. As they approached the door, Shuta's stomach flipped with anxiety. Dread filled him as he reached out and opened the door hoping the gunshot was meant to merely scare him. No, Zashi gasped out, dropping to his knees. In the middle of the room in a pool of blood far too large was Ghost's small body tied to a chair. His head was covered in blood and was facing the ground, lolled against his shoulder. Shoyuta couldn't breathe. He couldn't be dead. Ghost? Please wake up, please. No, no, and no. Shuta's ears rang as he screamed out. He slipped through the blood as he rushed to get to Ghost. His hands shook as he reached out towards the kid's neck, praying he was somehow still alive. A sob ripped out of him when he felt the faint beating of his heart. Oh, thank God. Zashi, get a car ready, now. Shoyuta shouted out as he worked at getting the ropes around Ghost's wrist off. A groan caught his attention as he finished untying the last knot. Azuri AD. Ghost's voice was faint. The kid could barely lift his head and his eyes couldn't seem to focus. Hey kid. It's all right, I'm right here, Shoyuta whispered as he tried to push his blood-soaked hair out of his face. Everything ersts, wanna go to eep, peas. Ghost's eyes slowly began to drift closed once again as Shoyuta rushed to get him out of the building and to a patrol car. Screw the hospital, he was going to take the kid right to Recovery Girl. Sorry kid, you have to stay awake. Please, just for a little bit. Just keep talking to me, okay? Shoyuta climbed into the back of the car. Zashi had pulled up to the front of the building as Shoyuta had been untying Ghost. He kept Ghost tucked close to his chest, hoping to keep the ride from jostling him too much. Think you can tell me your name? Mine, Shoyuta. Izu, Ghost mumbled out. His words were almost lost under the sounds of the police sirens Zashi and Tsukachi had blaring as they tore through traffic towards UA. Izu? What about a last name? Shoyuta asked, hoping he would be able to get something out of the kid to help find out more about him. MHM, Aunt, Ikit, OT, INE, EY, F'd me. Ghost was getting harder to understand. Shoyuta gently tapped on the kid's cheek, hoping to keep him awake. They were so close to getting to the school now. What was that? I couldn't quite catch what you said, the sirens are a bit too loud. Shoyuta knew he wasn't going to get much understandable information now, but even mumbling was fine as long as the kid kept awake. Ad MHM ired, eth aid I uld, leap ow, Anna eep ad. Come on kid, we're almost there. Shoyuta tried one last time but Ghost was out once again. When they arrived to UA it was nearly time for classes to be released for the day. Shoyuta hoped they could make it to Recovery Girl's office without running into too many students. Seeing two teachers and a police detective running through the halls with a blood-covered, unconscious child would raise a lot of questions. Shoyuta just hoped Recovery Girl would be able to do enough to save his kid. Izuku was once again standing in death's void within his mind, wondering what the hell just happened. The last coherent thought he had was being chased and falling, and next thing he knew he was here. Sure, there was brief flashes of random conversations that would pop into his mind every now and then, but nothing about them made sense. How'd he even die? That idiot decided to shoot what he believed to be a pro-hero's child in the head while showing his face to said hero. A pro-hero's child? Neither of his parents would ever be mistaken for heroes, that's for sure. Where did the guy even get that idea from? Oh, I don't know, maybe the fact Eraserhead had you out on patrol with him. Or maybe it was the homicidal rage he went into when he heard you get hurt. Either or, really. Okay, the sarcasm isn't appreciated right now. He might not be suffering from a concussion at the moment, but that didn't mean his concussed thoughts were easy to decipher. As Izuku slowly picked his way through what he could remember happening, his face grew red. He didn't really call Eraserhead Dad, did he? Yes, you did. Izuku stared at Death, contemplating if killing his quirk was possible. Sassy jackass. Death just laughed at him, not fazed by the death glare Izuku was trying to send him. Huffing, Izuku turned away from the creature. What was he going to do now? He had just been killed while Eraserhead was on a video call watching. The hero had seen him hurt and bleeding and would probably be on his way to find him now. How was he going to explain his miraculous lack of injuries when he arrived? And for that matter, what was he going to do when he woke up in front of those two gang members? It's not like he could run away, he was currently tied to a chair. Well, I could just heal the gunshot. The camera wasn't on you when the gun went off, so you could just say you weren't hit. You can do that? Izuku cried out, forgetting he didn't really have to speak out loud as he spun to face Death once again. The shock of that little bit of information sent Izuku's mind in a spiral of theories about his quirk. Could he selectively heal injuries other than the terminal ones? Did he have to die to heal, or could he heal himself whenever? Could he just wake up with the fatal injuries still there and stay in a cycle of dying and reviving until he decided to stop? DMN, you think fast. Yes, we can selectively heal injuries. No, you can't heal without dying. Why would you even want to do that last one? You a MSCST or something? Izuku sputtered out half-formed denials as he frantically waved his arms around in front of him. Embarrassment caused his face to turn red once again. Izuku slowly sank down and buried his face into his knees as he gave up denying Death's accusation, realizing it was a joke. You're a JRK, Izuku mumbled out as Death chuckled at his expense. With the known injuries problem taken care of, that still left him to deal with his kidnappers when he woke up. Only one of them had technically killed him, so he wouldn't be able to scare both of them away. Sure, seeing a kid wake up after taking a bullet to the head would be scary in its own way, but what if he decides to stick around to figure out how Izuku didn't die? You could always just play dead till he left. It's not like his buddy's going to stick around once I'm done with him. Maybe you'll get lucky and he'll be smarter than his friend and not hang around at a murder scene the pros are already looking for. Izuku didn't want to leave his plan up to fate, but he couldn't think of anything better. He almost felt sorry for the guy who was about to meet death, but he did just try murdering a child, so karma beach. Izuku did not sign up for this. He agreed to help Dachi kidnap the underground hero's kid, expecting they were just going to rough the kid up a bit. Maybe get a ransom. For him. He did not sign up to become an accomplice to a child murder. Dachi had just shot the kid while on the phone with his father. A father who was now going to hunt them down and make what he did to that man the other night look like child's play. What the actual F did you just do? You do realize as soon as that hero finds us we're dead, right? Izuku shouted at Dachi, not noticing the man was now pale and shaking. This is not what I agreed to. My life is over. Before Izuku had a chance to continue, Dachi let out an inhuman scream. The gun and the kid's phone fell from his hands as he clutched at his head. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Dachi screamed out as he started to run towards the door of the unused office they had set up in. He pushed Izuku over in his rush to get away. If that BSTRD thinks he's just going to leave him here to deal with the fallout of his decisions, he has another thing coming. Izuku ran out of the room after him, but Dachi was running like he expected the hero to come straight through the kid's phone to get him. After several minutes he had lost sight of him, and Izuku was now stranded a mile away from the warehouse without the getaway car he had left behind. He sure as hell wasn't going back for it now. Even if he couldn't catch Dachi, he was going to get a head start outrunning that hero. God, this concussion was a beach. Izuku wished he had just kept his mouth shut during the call so Death could have healed his head, but no, Izuku lacked a brain-to-mouth filter and just spouted off whatever random thought was in his mind. The men shouting earlier didn't help the awful headache he had either. Death's "hope fate doesn't screw you over again" plan seemed to work. Both men ran out almost as soon as Izuku came back, so that was a plus. Only problem was he was severely concussed, tied to a chair God knows where. His phone was laying on the ground about 10 feet away. Looks like calling for help was out at the moment. His motor control was still shot, so the likelihood of him getting himself and the chair over there was slim to none. What was he going to do now? Just take a nap. Eraserhead is most defiantly on his way here now. Not like he'd just leave his kid kidnapped. Death was not going to let him live that down, was he? A nap did sound really nice though. Wasn't there a rule about sleeping with a concussion? Oh well, it's not like it'll kill him. Ghost? Please wake up, please. No, no, and no. Who was shouting? Izuku really wished they'd stop. His head hurt so much and he really just wanted to go back to sleep. The voice sounded very familiar though. Oh thank God. Zashi, get a car ready, now. Zashi? Did he know a Zashi? They were yelling a lot closer to his ears now. That's not very nice. Izuku tried to see who it was but could only make out long dark hair and a gray scarf. That seemed really familiar. Eraserhead? Hey kid. It's alright, I'm right here. Oh, it was Eraserhead. What was he doing here? He looked scared. Why was he scared? Oh, they were moving now. That does not feel very good. Everything hurt. He really just wanted to go back to sleep. Sorry kid, you have to stay awake. Please, just for a little bit. Just keep talking to me, okay? Think you can tell me your name? Mine's Shoyuta. Shoyuta? That wasn't right, was it? He was called something else. What did he ask again? Oh, his name, Izuku. His name's Izuku. Aizu? What about a last name? Izuku didn't like his last name. Everyone who used it was so mean to him. He liked Aizu better. Eraserhead should keep calling him that. It was much better than his last name. It wasn't really his anyways. The people with that name left him, so he didn't want it anymore. What was that? I couldn't quite catch what you said. The sirens are a bit too loud. Sirens? Why were there sirens? They just made his head hurt more. They should stop them. Eraserhead should make them stop. Eraserhead? That's not right, is it? Shoyuta? No, not that? What was he called? Dad? Izuku was really tired. He could figure it out later. Death did say he could take a nap. He's just going to go to sleep now and figure out if it's Dad later. The concussion was my biggest concern. It was very severe and he didn't have nearly enough energy left over from the ordeal for me to heal it entirely. He will most likely still experience many of the symptoms once he wakes up. I can't do anything about the torn ligaments in his ankle until he gets some rest. The poor boy had so many older, half-healed injuries on top of his new ones. I'm not even sure where to start with them. Second-degree burns on his wrist and shoulder, countless bruises all over his body, and malnutrition to name a few. I'm surprised the kid was awake at all during the call or the trip here. What about all that blood? Where did it all come from? I'm not entirely sure. He did have a decent-sized cut on his head, but nothing that would cause that amount of blood loss. His body wasn't even showing signs of blood loss in the first place. Izuku didn't know who these people were talking about, but whoever it was didn't sound like they were doing too well. They probably felt worse than he did. Izuku tried to roll onto his side, hoping to block out some of the noise. This didn't seem like a conversation he was meant to be overhearing, but his arms got tangled up in multiple cords and tubes. Kid? Can you hear me? Why yeah. I'm sorry. Izuku struggled to get out. His throat felt like sandpaper, but he had to let them know he wasn't trying to eavesdrop. When he looked up, he was met with the sight of Eraserhead out of his hero costume standing next to a blonde man who looked very familiar. Both men seemed to be cycling through numerous emotions at once, but relief seemed to be the most dominating at the moment. Hey, you have no reason to feel sorry. It wasn't your fault, the blonde man said as he came closer to where Izuku had managed to get himself tangled up. Why, you're present, Mike, Izuku whispered out as the hero reached down to help him with the cords. Wow. Sho was right, you are very observant. Not many people recognize me out of costume. You managed almost immediately and with a concussion to boot. Present, Mike exclaimed. He almost sounded proud, but that couldn't be right. Why would the pro hero be proud of him? Sho? Izuku asked, hoping to get away from the fact a pro hero gave him a compliment. He did not have the mental capacity to deal with that at the moment. He means me, kid. Eraserhead stepped forward. You really had us worried. We're glad you're safe. Izuku wasn't expecting the hug that followed. It had been years since someone had given him a hug, and now his was getting one from two pro heroes. They seemed to latch onto him nearly as strongly as Izuku was to them. Tears poured down his face and soaked into Eraserhead's shirt. I am sorry. Izuku let out between sobs. His hands grabbed onto the man's shirt with a death grip like he was afraid he'd disappear. Shoo, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay, Present Mike whispered into his hair, and for the first time in a long time Izuku believed it. When Hisashi realized Ghost had cried himself to sleep, he allowed the tears he had been holding in for hours fall. This poor boy. He had just been kidnapped by thugs with a grudge who had done God knows what to him. There was so much blood around him in that warehouse, it's a wonder he didn't bleed to death. Hizashi shivered when he remembered the scene they had walked into an hour ago. The image of Ghost tied to that chair would haunt his nightmares for weeks. He could only imagine how bad it'd be for Sho. When he met his husband's eye over the boy's head, he knew he wouldn't be the only one kept awake by the image in the coming nights. Both men were still holding the small child between them when Shuzenji spoke up. "Boys, I hate to break up this reunion, but we need to discuss some things. For starters, can you explain who exactly this is and what happened to him?" Shuzenji stood at the end of the hospital bed, the three of them now occupied with her hands on her hips as she demanded answers. "This is the vigilante ghost," Sho started as he pulled the child in question closer to him. "I first heard of him when a drag supplier admitted to stabbing him 3 months ago. The man thought he had killed him. The little hero saved Sho from a drunk man a few days later," Hizashi added quickly before his husband could gloss over that little detail. "His contribution earned him one of Sho's infamous glares." "The boy saved you while suffering from a stab wound?" Shuzenji interjected in shock. "No, he was stabbed a month before we learned of him, however stories did say he was active a few days after the incident. We've noticed he is very good at hiding and working through pain," Sho answered sullenly. Hizashi shuffled in closer to the two at the reminder of Ghost probable abuse. "That's troubling. It does explain how he was able to wake up so quickly though. I hadn't even given him any pain medication yet. I didn't want to risk giving him anything until I got a look at his medical history in case of any allergies. Getting his history might be a little difficult. We don't know his legal name yet," Hizashi said. They had been hoping Ghost would confide in Sho for months now with no luck. "I asked him on the ride over here. I only managed to make out Izu." His words were slurred because of the concussion. "I didn't get anything for a last name," Sho added as he looked down at the newly dubbed Izu. "We'll just have to wait for him to wake up again then." Shuzenji didn't look too happy at that, but there wasn't much they could do. "And what about my second question? What happened to him?" Sho stiffed next to him at the question. Hizashi hated that he blamed himself for what had happened to Izu. As far as Hizashi was concerned, no one was to blame except for the monsters that took his baby. A few gang members Sho and Izu ran into the other night wanted payback for the arrest of one of their own. They must have found Izu out alone and kidnapped him. "We aren't sure what happened between then and when they decided to call Sho to brag," Hizashi answered for his husband. "If I had just caught the two of them that night, they would have never been able to hurt him." The self-hatred was evident in Sho's voice. Before Hizashi had a chance to deny Sho's statement, Shuzenji brought down her cane on the man's outstretched leg. "Shoyuta Aizawa, you had better stop that talk right this instant. You and I both know you are not responsible for the actions of others. Did you tell them to kidnap the boy?" "No, but Sho was cut off by a second whack with the cane. "No, you did not. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You may not have caught them before, but you will now, won't you?" Shuzenji all but commanded as she threatened to hit Sho again if he dared to disagree. "I will." Sho's face grew dark with pure determination. Hizashi would have pitted the men if he wasn't ready to hunt them down himself. Sho shifted his gaze over to him. "If I go meet up with Tsukachi to help with the investigation, will you stay here?" Sho asked, fully knowing the answer already. Of course, Hizashi knew neither one of them would be willing to leave the boy completely alone anytime soon. The idea of losing him for good was still too fresh in their minds. Several hours had passed since Sho had left to meet up with Tsukachi. Hizashi had been drifting in and out of sleep ever since. He hadn't been able to get out of the bed yet. As soon as Sho got up, Izu had latched on to the next available source of heat and Hizashi didn't have the heart to peel him off. It wasn't like he particularly wanted to anyways. Hizashi stared at the ceiling in the now dark room. Sho had been texting him updates every few hours. So far they had almost nothing to go off of. The gun found at the crime scene had been dusted for prints, but surprisingly no matches were found. That wasn't so bad considering they did know one of the kidnappers was the brother of one of the men arrested 2 nights ago. Problem was knowing his identity did nothing if they couldn't find where he was hiding. The second problem they had run into was finding out more about Izu. Without a last name, tracking down the boy's parents was going to be nearly impossible. No missing persons report had been filed in the last 24 hours that matched up with Izu's description, which lightly put made Hizashi furious. What kind of parent didn't notice or didn't care that their kid had been missing? If Hizashi ever met them, there would be hell to pay. A soft groan from beside him interrupted Hizashi's thoughts. Izu had started to wake up once again. In a panic, Hizashi threw a pillow at Shuzenji's office door, hoping to get her attention. He may be a pro-hero, but if Izu woke up in pain and started crying again, there was no way Hizashi wouldn't be joining him. He had reached his limit for pushing away his emotions for the day. "Ow," Izu let out quietly, not yet realizing Hizashi was currently acting as his pillow. Why did they have to go for the head? Before he had a chance to respond, the office door opened, revealing Shuzenji. The heroine took one look down at the pillow laying on the floor before leveling Hizashi with a look that screamed, "Why?" Hizashi quickly raised his hands in surrender, alerting Aizu to his presence. Aizu was waking up. Hizashi explained, not wanting to get hit like Sho did. "I am so sorry, Present Mike. I didn't mean to fall asleep on you," Aizu exclaimed as he tried to push himself up and off the bed. He didn't get very far before a wave of dizziness hit him, causing him to nearly fall to the ground. Hizashi grabbed the small boy before he could and pulled him back to his side. Aizu's head fell against his shoulder as he struggled to regain his equilibrium. "Are you okay?" Hizashi asked worryingly. Aizu had gotten very pale during his sudden movements and started to tremble slightly against his side. Several moments passed before Hizashi received a shaky thumbs up in response, several more before Aizu lifted his head again. The boy scanned the now well-lit room before his eyes fell to Shuzenji. "Recovery girl? Hello, young man. It's nice to see you awake again," Shuzenji said as she approached the bed. "Do you think you could answer some questions for me?" "What kind of questions?" Aizu answered warily. The boy had begun to unconsciously shift as far behind Hizashi as he could get without getting up. "Nothing too difficult. Firstly, what's your name? I can have your medical file sent over once I know who I'm treating," Shuzenji asked carefully as she noticed his fear. "Why do you need that?" Aizu practically whispered. His complexion had turned a ghostly white. "With your basic medical history, I will know what you can and can't have in terms of medication and also know about any prior health condition that could cause problems during your treatment." The clarification only added to Aizu's distress. The boy had begun to shake once again, only this time it was due to panic. Tears built up in his eyes as he slowly began to shake his head. "Hey, it's okay. Can you tell me what's wrong?" Hizashi tried to soothe the small boy as he turned to face him. "Why, you guys are so nice and I don't want you to leave yet," Aizu whispered. "Leave? Why would we leave?" Hizashi asked, confused. Aizu just ducked his head down, trying to hide his tears. "Believe me, we aren't going anywhere. Hope you don't mind, but you're stuck with us now," he joked, hoping to lighten the boy's mood. Aizu looked up with hope in his eyes before sadness overtook him. His face fell once again. "But every else left after they found out. My dad didn't even last a week after I was diagnosed." Hizashi hoped he just misheard what Aizu just said. Was Aizu sick? His baby was sick and his own father abandoned him because of it? Hizashi pulled the crying boy into his arms as he comforted him. His panic-filled eyes met Shuzenji's, begging for help. "Child," Shuzenji started calmly to grab Aizu's attention. "Did you know this fool and his husband came to work the other day and scared years off of half the staff's lives because they learned you were injured? That they came running in here this afternoon like they were being chased by the devil himself because you were hurt? That they left their jobs at a second's notice because you were in trouble and went and got you back themselves? They did all this before even knowing your name. This one here hadn't even met you yet. What makes you think that anything they might learn about you could drive them away?" Hizashi had never been so grateful Yue employed this woman than he was right now. First she got Sho out of his depressive thoughts and now she's reassuring Aizu that nothing would make them leave. He was going to have to buy Shuzenji some flowers when this was all over. "Izuku Midoriya," Aizu hesitated, said after a few moments. I know you said you would leave, but I'll understand if you change your mind later." Thank you, for helping me." Aizu bowed his head towards the pair of them as if he already accepted they would want him to leave soon. "Would it be okay if I lie down for a while? My head hurts." "Of course dear, you need to rest anyways. Me and Hizashi will be in my office if you need anything." The heroine dragged Hizashi behind here as she left the room, turning the lights off behind them. When the door finally clicked shut, Hizashi scrambled to get his phone out. They had a name and Sho need to know. He began to worry the call would be ignored when his husband's voice finally answered. "Zashi, what's wrong?" Sho sounded exhausted and high-strung through the connection. Aizu woke up. Hizashi paused. His husband was already stressed out. Should he tell him about what the boy said? If he was really sick, he'd learn soon anyways. "Is he okay?" He didn't want to give us his name at first. When Shuzenji said it was to get his medical history, he was worried we'd leave. "Why would his medical history make us leave?" Sho asked, confused. "Apparently his dad did when he was diagnosed." Hizashi trailed off as he tried to hold it together. "Diagnosed with what?" "Zashi, with what?" Sho repeated, panicked when he failed to answer the first question. "We don't know yet," he didn't say. "Shuzenji is working on getting his file now." Hizashi couldn't hold it in any longer. His hands shook as tears once again fell down his face. "What's his name?" "We'll start looking on our end while you wait," Sho said quietly. "Izuku Midoriya." And with that one name the search for answers could truly begin. The phone call with Zashi left Shoyuta feeling numb inside. The news that his kid could have some medical condition bad enough his own father had left him did not help his emotional state after everything that had already happened in the last 48 hours. Added on top of that was the fact that Izuku felt that whatever they would find in his file would drive them away as well. The kid was so beaten down by what had happened to him in his life that he automatically assumed everyone who learned more about him would inevitably leave him, and boy was that depressing. Shoyuta stared down into what remained of his coffee. One of Tsukachi officers had brought it to him when they first arrived at the start of the night shift. It had long since gone cold and now only served as something to occupy his hands with as they waited for Izuku's file. Getting the file of a minor without parental consent was a slow-going process, and it could take several days to gain access to. They had already run his name through the police's database, and it was no surprise when no past criminal records came up. Eraser, sitting around the station isn't going to cause the file to get here any faster than it would if you went home to get some sleep, Tsukachi commented to him from his desk. What are you still doing here then? Shoyuta fired back. Someone has to make sure you don't overdose on caffeine, Tsukachi responded without missing a beat. He had gotten used to Shoyuta over the years and no longer took offense to his sharp remarks. I don't care if you go home or back to UA to see the kid, but you need to get out of here before you drive yourself insane waiting. You can come back to check for updates in the morning, but just get some rest before you give another newbie a complex. I give one intern a panic attack and suddenly all the new recruits treat me like I'm Satan. Fine, just call me if anything comes up, Shoyuta said as he stood to leave. Zashi was still at UA with Izuku, so there was really no point in going back to the apartment, and they had already contacted a neighbor to watch their cat for a few days. It was 1 a.m. so he could just borrow a bed in the infirmary until classes started in the morning. When Shoyuta got to Recovery Girl's office 20 minutes later, only Shuzenji was still awake. Izuku was once again asleep out in the main room of the infirmary and Zashi was passed out on the heroine's couch. Have you received Izuku's medical history yet? Shoyuta whispered. His husband might have 3 jobs, but he couldn't run on as little sleep as he did and would need some rest for tomorrow. I have called 3 hospitals so far and not a single one has any records for your boy, she sighed as she rubbed her face in exhaustion. It would be easier if I knew where to start. For all we know, he might have moved here recently and has yet to visit a local doctor. I'm tempted to wake him and ask, but he needs all the sleep he can get right now. I was about to call it quits for the night and try again in the morning when he wakes up. That sounds a lot like what Tsukachi just told me at the station, Shoyuta replied as he stifled a yawn. This detective friend of yours sounds much smarter than the two of you. Neither of you will be any help to the boy if you're dead on your feet. Go get some sleep and you can get back to your investigation in the morning. Shoyuta glanced over at his husband and decided to just let him sleep where he was. Waking him up now would do him no good. He headed out to the main room to claim one of the empty beds near Izuku. He drifted to sleep hoping tomorrow would give them a little more good news than today did. It's time to wake up. Shoyuta came to as Zashi shook his arm gently. His husband had gotten ready for the day already and was holding one of his spare jumpsuits he kept at the school for emergencies. Sunlight streamed in the windows of the infirmary, causing him to squint at the brightness of the room. His eyes were never good with bright lights. He jumped up when he noticed the bed Izuku was in last night was now empty. Don't worry, he's just in the bathroom, Zashi said quickly. He got up just before I woke you. He seems like he's doing better. His ankle is still messed up though. Shoyuta sighed as the tension he had just felt released. This kid was going to give him a heart attack one day, he just knew it. While he waited for Izuku to come out of the bathroom, he checked his phone for any news from Tsukachi. No new notifications waited for him, but considering the early time it wasn't shocking. The detective was probably still at home. The bathroom door opened a few minutes later, revealing Izuku leaning against the doorframe. The blood from the day before had been washed off and his clothes had been replaced by one of Zashi's sweatshirts that drowned the small boy in fabric. Izuku's eyes flicked between the two heroes as he played with the long sleeves of the hoodie. Do you need help back to bed, Izuku? Zashi asked, noticing the boy's hesitation. Yeah, if you don't mind, that is, Izuku responded shyly. How are you feeling today, kid? Shoyuta asked as he watched Zashi scoop up the boy. He saw Izuku's face turn bright red before he quickly covered it, hiding behind his hands. I'm fine, the high-pitched response was muffled by fabric as Izuku continued to hide after Zashi set him back down. Now I know that's not true, Shuzenji interjected, making her presence in the room known. You have several tears in the ligaments of your ankle on top of an awful sprain. That doesn't even take into consideration the countless bruises and burns you are sporting, so how about we try again? I'm okay really, maybe just in a bit of pain is all, but it's fine. Izuku hastily replied when he saw the disappointed look the heroine was giving him. Shuzenji let out a sigh as she turned toward Shoyuta. He's almost as bad as you are. Neither of you will admit when you're hurt, she glared at the hero before turning back to Aizu. I can get you some pain medication as soon as I receive your file from you, doctor. If you would be so kind as to give me their name, it would speed up the process drastically. Aizu glanced around the room quickly before he met Shuzenji's eye again. I haven't really gone to a doctor since I was 4, I can give you his name if you want, but I don't know if he would still have a file on me after that long. The 3 adults in the room all took a moment to process that bomb before they collectively lost their sheet. What do you mean you haven't been to see a doctor since you were 4? Zashi cried out, nearly activating his quick in his shock. Well, after that my mom never took me back, and later on when I tried to go by myself, no hospital or doctor would treat me, they all said it was a waste of resources, Aizu whispered as he shrunk down into the bed. What kind of a doctor would turn away a child? Shuzenji looked outraged as she started to pace at the end of Aizu's bed. Kid, why would your mother not take you to get checkups? Shoyuta said as calmly as he could manage. His nails cut into his palm as he clenched his hands at his side. It wasn't worth it, Aizu answered as if he was told that answer often. Shuta's anger only grew the longer this conversation was going on. When he got a hold of that woman? There was no way Aizu was going back to her, they would have to take him over his dead body. It doesn't matter why his mother did that. There is no excuse for withholding medical care from a child. Shuzenji added. Even if I'm quirkless? The room was silent after Aizu's question. That was the reason his mother denied him medical care? That was the reason a little boy's father left him? That was the reason his kid had suffered so much? Izuku, I want you to listen very closely to me. A person's quirk or lack thereof should have no say in how they are treated. You have as much of a right to everything this world has to offer as any quirk person does, and anyone who says any different is wrong. You are worth so much, and don't let anyone make you feel like you aren't, Shoyuta spoke softly as he moved to sit on the edge of Aizu's bed. A lot of old feelings about his treatment due to his quirk were resurfacing. There are horrible people out there in the world. People who will put you down to make themselves feel better. People who will abuse their power and push you around. People who just want to see you in pain. But there are also people who will go out of their way to help others. People who volunteer hours of their time to make the world a better place. People who just want you to be happy and safe. You just need to find them, and we will be here to help you do that regardless of your quirk. We will be here for you no matter what. Aizu stared at Shoyuta in awe before launching himself into his arms. Broken sobs fell from the boy's mouth as he clung to the hero. You aren't leave. You thank you, Aizu repeated into Shuta's chest. Of course not, Shoyuta responded as he gestured for Zashi to join them. Like I told you last night, you're stuck with us, Zashi added as he wrapped his arms around Aizu, sandwiching him between them. There's a lot we have to figure out, but you don't have to be alone anymore. Shoyuta pulled back slightly to look down at Aizu. Zashi and I are here for you, we both know what it's like to be tried poorly because of a quirk, and we won't let anyone get away with hurting you anymore. Thank you guys so much, Aizu sobbed before burying his face back into Shuta's chest, pulling Zashi's arm between them. The 3 of them remained tangled together until the sound of students arriving forced them to part. We have to go teach our classes now, will you be okay here with Shuzenji until lunch? Zashi asked as he struggled to step away from Aizu. I'll be okay, Aizu answered with a shy smile. I can't believe I'm actually at UA. Maybe once your ankle heals these 2 will give you a tour. Until then though you'll be stuck with me, Shuzenji joked as she shooed them out of the room. Stuck with you? I have so many questions to ask you about your quirk. Aizu's voice was cut off as Shuzenji shut the door behind them. After staring at the door for a moment, Zashi turned toward Shoyuta. We're keeping him, Zashi demanded, a look of pure determination on his face. Shoyuta simply nodded as he started walking towards the teacher's lounge, plans already starting to form in his mind. Have you heard what happened in 2C English class yesterday? Apparently Mike-sensei left in a hurry halfway through the class when one of the first-year hero students rushed in to get him. Seiki said excitedly as the group made their way from the train station. Really? I wonder what happened to make him leave like that. Oshima asked. I know someone from 2C, do you want to go find out? Hattori offered as they reached the school's gate. Yes. Come on, if we hurry we can find out before classes start. Seiki cried out as she grabbed Hattori's arm in her excitement. Takuda, someone's here to see you. Hattori? What's up? Takuda asked as he made his way over to the 3 students waiting by his classroom door. Hey, Seiki here heard a rumor about Mike-sensei leaving your class early yesterday, and we were hoping you'd be able to tell us about what happened. Hattori replied. The girl beside him hopped in place, waiting in suspense. Well, I'm not really sure what was going on. All I know is a first year came in about 20 minutes into class telling Mike-sensei that the hero ethics teacher, Aizawa-sensei, needed him. Something about his son being hurt, I think. The first year seemed really panicked though. I think his name was Togata. Takuda answered. Really? The scary-looking teacher has a son? Oshima chimed in. I wouldn't picture him the type to have a family. Why was that so important? Mike-sensei ran out though. Seiki asked. I don't know. You guys could ask the first year, he'd know more about it than I would. Takuda offered. Good idea. Seiki called out as she started towards the hero department, not waiting for her friends to catch up. Hello, can one of you tell us where we could find Togata? He's a first year in the hero course, Oshima asked the students loitering in the hall outside a few of the hero classrooms. Yeah, I think he's in 1B, 3 doors down on the left. Thanks. Excuse me, we were wondering if we could talk to Togata for a moment? Seiki asked cheerfully after knocking on the doorframe of 1B's classroom. Hi, how can I help you? A tall blonde boy asked as he and 2 other students made their way over. Hi. We heard from a friend of ours that you interrupted their English class yesterday to get Mike-sensei, and we were hoping you could explain what was going on, Hattori answered. Oh, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, Togata said as he shared a look with the other 2 students. I'm sure it's fine. If they already know this much, I don't know if it will stay a secret much longer anyways, the blue-haired girl said. Well, I guess. Aizawa-sensei got a call during class yesterday. It was a little boy who sounded really hurt. He called sensei dad. I didn't hear anything else before he told me to go get Mike-sensei. Togata trailed off. His son had gotten kidnapped by some guy because sensei arrested his brother the other day and the man called to brag, I guess. Sensei threatened him before there was the sound of a gunshot and the call ended, the blue-hair girl continued. Mike-sensei came running in soon after that asking, who hurt his baby, Wait, I thought it was Aizawa-sensei's kid? Seiki asked confused. I think they are married, the shy boy with elf ears added quietly before ducking behind Togata when all eyes turned to him. Mike-sensei and the scary teacher are married? Oshima cried out in shock. Well, it makes sense, they were both really worried over the kid and Mike-sensei was calling Aizawa-sensei show, the girl deduced. After Snipe-sensei came in, both the other teachers left in a hurry, Togata finished. Whoa, I hope their kid is okay, Hattori said quietly before looking towards the clock. Thank you for sharing, but we need to get to class so we aren't late. It was nice to meet you. The girl called out as the group left the room. Between classes, the halls of UA were filled with hushed conversations. News of their teacher's drama spread like wildfire between students. Hey, did you guys hear that Mike-sensei and that hero teacher Aizawa-sensei are married? I heard they have a kid together and that he was kidnapped yesterday. Well, I heard that the kid was shot. I wonder if they will be here today. What, really? I just saw Mike-sensei in the hall a few minutes ago. Who would be dumb enough to kidnap the kid of a pro hero? Mike-sensei probably killed the idiots. Yesterday, right before classes ended, my friend was going to the bathroom when she saw them run by holding a little boy covered in blood. There was some police guy with them too. A little boy? I was told they had a baby. I heard the boy is still with recovery girl. No, he was shot. I heard he died. Poor sensei. What is he doing here then? I heard Mike-sensei killed the kidnappers for killing his baby. Apparently the police were here yesterday to talk to sensei about what happened. A third-year hero student told me they saw the boy in recovery girl's office when they went in after getting hurt in training. He said he was really tiny and was wearing a hoodie from Mike-sensei's radio show. Really, that's adorable. I wonder if she'd let us in to see him. Guys, Mike-sensei's baby is in recovery girl's office. I heard he's so tiny, but she won't let anyone in without a reason. You won't believe what I just heard. Apparently Mike-sensei is here hiding from the police for killing the men who kidnapped his son. His husband's helping hide him while recovery girl takes care of their baby. Isn't his husband Aizawa-sensei? Out of the 2 of them, I would put my money on him losing it first. He's really intimidating in class. Yes, Snipe-sensei tried to stop him, but the 2 of them got by him and went to get the kidnappers themselves. You know that scary teacher Aizawa? Apparently he's some super secret underground hero. That's why he teaches the hero students. Wait, so they kidnapped the son of 2 pro heroes? Well, they didn't think that through, did they? 2 pros? No, I heard Mike-sensei's husband is a spy. No wonder the kidnappers ended up dead. A spy could track them down no problem, and then Mike-sensei could just take them out without them knowing he was there. Mike-sensei didn't kill them. I heard it was the other way around. The heroics teacher is a secret assassin and took them all out. By lunch the whole school had heard of what happened the day before. Each group of students knew what occurred, but no 2 groups knew the same story. By lunch Shoyuta was ready to throw the next student he heard gossiping out a window. Not a single one of them had an ounce of spatial awareness. They would talk about him when he was standing feet away. Shoyuta was no stranger to being the subject of schoolyard Gossip, that he could deal with. What he couldn't was hearing about Izu's apparent death every 5 minutes. He did not need any more reminders of how close his kid came to dying yesterday. When he finally arrived at Recovery Girl's office, he was met with a crowd of students whispering between him and the door. Apparently he was now a killer assassin, Zashi was on the run from the law, and Aizu was a toddler. A toddler every one of these students wanted to get a look at. "Don't you have a meal to eat?" Shoyuta said coldly as he stared down the group. More than half of them let out startled shrieks which caused him to hide a smirk in his capture weapon as the crowd hurried off. "Did you have to scare the poor listeners, Sho?" Zashi chided as he rounded the corner with an overpacked bag in his hand. "They were trying to harass the kid," Sho responded, glaring towards the stragglers. "Oh, carry on then," Zashi concluded as he pulled open the door to the infirmary. "Aizu, how are you feeling?" "I'm okay, Recovery Girl was telling me all about how her quirk worked." Aizu called out cheerfully from his bed. A spare notebook and pen sitting in his lap covered in notes. "She uses a person's stamina to heal their injuries when she kisses them, and she can even selectively choose what injuries to heal. Isn't that amazing? Izuku suggested many interesting ways I could more effectively use it as well. You've got yourselves a very intelligent kid here, boys." Shuzenji spoke up from the table she was doing paperwork at. It's nothing special really, I just find quirks fascinating." Aizu blushed and ducked his head as he rubbed the back of his neck. "Kid, when we first met you deduced 5 people's quirks at a glance without even seeing them in use," Shoyuta reasoned. "And you figured out who I was seconds after meeting me." Zashi chimed in as he plopped down on the edge of Aizu's bed. Aizu laughed as he bounced slightly from the mattress's recoil. "Oh, okay if you say so," Aizu relented as his giggles died down. "We do. So I wasn't sure what you'd like for lunch, so I just got a bit of everything from Lunch Rush." "Pick whatever you want." Zashi pulled out to-go containers from his bag. "Whoa, this is a lot of food," Aizu trailed off with wide eyes as he took in all his options. Shoyuta watched as Aizu tried to choose what to eat. The small boy seemed very overwhelmed by how many choices he was given. Eventually he picked up a simple fish and rice dish but only got halfway through it before he started to slow. "Hey kid, how would you like to sit in on the first year's Hero Fundamentals class after lunch? You could help me make suggestions on how the students could improve their quirks," Shoyuta suggested as he ate the bento Zashi forced upon him. Aizu dropped his chopsticks as he gaped at Shoyuta. The kid shouldn't be so surprised, he offered. He was a whiz at analyzing quirks. Pros paid good money for work as good as what Aizu could do. "Really? Oh my god, yes. That would be so cool," Aizu exclaimed as he bounced up and down in his excitement, nearly spilling the remainder of his lunch. He quickly whipped his head towards Shuzenji. "I can go, right?" he practically begged. "I suppose, as long as you keep off your ankle. It's not fully healed yet and I don't want you straining it anymore until it is." Shuzenji sighed out, unable to say no to the child in front of her. Shoyuta doubted if anyone would be able to. "How will I get there if I can't walk?" Aizu asked after a moment of thought. "Do you have any crutches I can use?" "None for someone of your size, I'm afraid. I'll have to look into fixing that." Shuzenji trailed off as she looked upset by her lack of foresight. "I can just carry you for now, you don't weigh much anyways," Shoyuta quickly suggested as Aizu's face fell when he assumed he wouldn't be able to go. "Why, you don't have to," Aizu stuttered out. "I don't, but I would appreciate an assistant for the class. There are too many troublemakers to keep a good eye on all of them," Shoyuta said nonchalantly. It was exactly true, but Aizu didn't need to know that. "Oh okay, I'd be happy to help then," Aizu said as he regained his bright smile. "We should get going now to avoid the crowds coming from the cafeteria," Zashi said as he gathered up the remaining bentos. "My next class is in the heroics department, so I'll get to walk most of the way with you. It would be easier with you on my back," Shoyuta said as he crouched down next to Aizu's bed. "You okay with that, kid?" "Why yeah, that's fine, whatever's easiest for you." Aizu climbed on, making sure to be careful of his wrapped up ankle when he noticed Shuzenji eyeing them. Recovery Girl? Would it be okay if I borrowed this notebook? All mine are at home." "Of course dear, you can keep it. And no, Recovery Girl business, just call me Chio," Shuzenji jokingly scolded. "Okay, thank you Miss Chio." Aizu smiled brightly as he tried to pick up the notebook from Shuta's back until the hero spun around to get it himself. "Oh, me too. You can call me Zashi and just call my grumpy husband Sho." Zashi cheered from the side. "Okay Zashi," Aizu smiled shyly from where he was half hidden in Shuta's capture weapon. "Oh, you're so cute. Sho, look how cute the baby is." Zashi squealed. "Baby?" Aizu questioned as he hid his red face farther behind Shuta's shoulder. "Ignore him, he gave you that nickname when I told him about you after we first met," Shoyuta informed Aizu as they started down the hall. He pointedly ignored his husband who was trying to sneakily take photos of the two of them. It's okay, it's nice, I'm just not used to people giving me nice nicknames, Aizu mumbled as he looked around. Shoyuta felt his anger spike at the reminder of how his kid was treated. Good thing he wouldn't be going back there again. He had already started the process to become Aizu's temporary guardian with Tsukachi between his classes that morning. All he really needed to do now was go to the station to sign some papers and pick up Aizu's stuff. That was going to be one hell of a home visit for sure. Tsukachi had insisted he was going with Shoyuta so no murders occurred. Granted, he would probably attack Aizu's mother after hearing some of what she put the kid through, but Shoyuta thought a little assault was justified, especially if she was the one abusing the boy. Oh, the notebook reminded me, I was going to stop by your house after school today. Was there anything specific you wanted me to get? Shoyuta said calmly as if not planning someone's death in his head. Maybe there was something to the assassin rumors. Why do you need to go to my house? Aizu said defensively as his arms tightened slightly around Shuta's neck. Baby, you've been gone for a day and a half and no one has filed a missing persons report. You were injured before you were taken and you are suffering from malnutrition. We aren't going to send you back to a place where you're clearly not being taken care of, Zashi answered for Shoyuta. Where am I going then? Aizu asked in a quiet, shaky voice. He held on to Shoyuta even tighter without realizing it. With us, Shoyuta responded as he put a reassuring hand on Aizu's arm. We told you before, we're here for you, Aizu. You're not alone anymore. Zashi rushed over to wrap Aizu in a hug when the boy started to silently cry. Thank you, Aizu whispered as he grabbed onto Zashi with one arm. Come on, lunch break will be over soon, Shoyuta reminded Zashi after Aizu had calmed down. Hush Sho, you're taking the baby with you, let me get my hugs in before you steal him, Zashi waved him off causing Aizu to start laughing. It's for one class. I have to meet with Tsukachi after that since I don't have any more lessons for the day. He can come sit in on your classes if he wants after, Sho reminded his husband as he pulled himself and Aizu away from the blonde. I'd like that, what do you teach? Aizu asked Zashi as they approached the right classroom. English. Having a voice-based quirk, I've always been fascinated with languages and learned as many as I could when I was younger. How are you at English in school? Zashi asked as he opened the door for Shoyuta. Oh no. I was supposed to go back to school today. Aizu panicked. Hey, don't worry, I'll call them tomorrow and let them know you'll be out for a while. We'd rather you not go back until we catch the guys who kidnapped you in case they decide to try again, Shoyuta said as he helped Aizu down onto the desk at the front of the classroom. What if you don't find them? Aizu asked as he fidgeted with the notebook Shoyuta just gave him. We'll worry about that when we get there, Zashi jumped in. Now I have to go or I'll be late. After Zashi left, Shoyuta settled in the chair behind the desk and watched Aizu doodle while they waited. Normally he would use this time to get in a quick nap, but with how the students were acting outside Shuzenji's office earlier, he wasn't going to let Aizu too far from him until he knew they would behave. The kid was a surprisingly good artist, Shoyuta noticed as the sketch of Zashi in costume came together. The drawing was almost ruined when Aizu jumped as the bell rang. Several minutes passed before the first few students started to arrive. The first group stood frozen in the doorway when they noticed Aizu on the desk. They were spurred into action when the small boy gave them a shy wave. Shuta's glare stopped them from approaching, however, and sent them rushing to their seats. When the final student arrived, Shoyuta stood to start class. Aizu remained on the desk idly swinging his legs as he watched the first-year students. A few pages of his notebook were already filled with observations. As you all noticed, we have a guest joining us today. This is Izuku, Shoyuta started as Aizu waved to the class as he was introduced. He's going to be watching your practical training today and offering any suggestions he has about the utilization of your quirks at the end of class. Hands shot into the air when Shoyuta finished his explanation. With a sigh, the hero gestured for a boy in the second row to go first. Were you the one from the call yesterday? Aizu looked at Shoyuta questioningly. They called during this class's ethics lesson yesterday, Shoyuta supplied. Oh, yeah, I guess that was me. I don't remember much of what happened though. Sorry for interrupting your class, Aizu answered the boy before bowing his head in apology. Are you okay? A girl in the front called out. Yeah, I'm fine, they just gave me a concussion after I fell when I tore the ligaments in my ankle trying to run away, but Miss Chio healed that with her quirk. Aizu responded cheerfully, not noticing the horrified looks on the students' faces at his casual admittance. Aizu's appearance wasn't helping the class feel any better either. The small boy still had a fresh bruise on the side of his face which made his skin appear almost unnaturally pale. Aizu's leggings and boots had been soaked in blood like his hoodie had been, leaving him barefoot, which left his wrapped-up ankle on full display as he swung his legs casually. The oversized sweatshirt Zashi gave him fell to his knees, causing Aizu to look even younger than he normally did, only adding to the unpleasant scene the students imagined as they pictured what had happened to the boy yesterday. Everyone go get suited up and met me at ground beta for the practical. Shoyuta used the class's shocked silence to continue the lesson. He quickly picked Aizu up and left the room before the students had a chance to process what they just heard. I think you just broke them, Shoyuta told Aizu as he got situated on his back again. Huh? What do you mean? Aizu asked confused. Shoyuta just laughed as they left the building, not bothering to explain what he meant to Aizu. It took the class longer than usual to get ready, but Shoyuta let it pass considering the state he left them in a few minutes ago. Now that you're all here, we can get started, Sho said as the last of the students arrived. The whole class stared wide-eyed at the sight of their strict, no-nonsense teacher with a small child on his back. Soon after the pair arrived to the training ground, they realized there would be nowhere for Izuku to sit comfortably and still observe the class, so for the time being he would stay on Sho's back. Izuku didn't have any complaints about the matter. It was nice being tall for once, and the looks on the hero students' faces were kind of funny. Izuku and I will be helping each of you brainstorm ways you can train or differently utilize your quirks. I will call each of you up one by one to demonstrate your quirks, after which the class will discuss ways to help each other improve, Sho continued as he ignored the shocked faces of the crowd in front of him. The students gave no sign they had even heard what their teacher had said. His appearance must have really put them out of commission. Perhaps it would have been better if he didn't come. They seem a bit overwhelmed. Maybe I should go back to Miss Chiyo's, Izuku commented concerned. What? Don't go. Yes, stay please, we're fine. Numerous students all called out at once when Izuku spoke up, startling him. Sho simply sighed at the outburst before giving Izuku a look that said, see what I have to deal with. Since none of you seem to be able to concentrate today, perhaps quirk training isn't the best idea, Sho delivered deadpan. Such a shame, Aizu was looking forward to seeing all your quirks in action. Izuku had to stifle a laugh in Sho's shoulder at the hero's blatant manipulation of his students. They must have mistaken the shaking of his shoulders for him crying instead, because not even a second later the class frantically apologized and promised to pay attention. I'm going to have to bring you to class more often if this is the result, Sho whispered to him as the students rushed to get in place. Izuku just gave him a bright smile in return, excited to watch the future heroes demonstrate their quirks. Izuku was in heaven. The students of 1B all had amazing quirks. The first few times Izuku had given suggestions to the class, he received strange looks in return, but as the class went on, more and more students tried out his ideas. After a while the hero students were clamoring over one another to ask Izuku his opinion on their moves. A while ago Izuku had gotten down from Sho's back and sat on the ground in order to write all his observations down. The class had practically fought each other as they rushed to join him. Izuku was now surrounded by a semicircle of hero students as they watched someone attempt to utilize one of his suggestions. The bell's about to ring. You should all get changed now so you're not late to your next class, Sho called out after checking his watch. Already? It can't be time yet. But I didn't get a chance to ask Izuku for help yet. Do any of you want to explain to Present Mike why Aizu was late to join him next PRD? Sho threatened as he used his quirk to silence the group. Izuku wasn't sure why everyone seemed so afraid of the suggestion. Zashi wasn't scary. Maybe he was missing an inside joke or something. Either way, the students were now all rushing towards the locker rooms, leaving Izuku and Sho alone. Come on, I don't want to have to be the one to explain either, Sho joked as he helped Izuku up. You never answered before. Is there anything you need me to get from your house? Oh. Here, I wrote it all down. I thought that would be easier, Izuku said as he ripped a page out of the nearly full notebook. He mainly just need clothes, his school stuff and notebooks, and the money he had left. Oh, and my key is back with Miss Chiyo. Will I need it? Sho asked as the pair made their way back into the main building. Yeah, I locked the door when I left the other night, Izuku said absently as he took in his surroundings. After a brief stop by Recovery Girl's office, they made their way towards the Gen Ed wing. Their detour had made them miss the rush of students between classes, leaving the halls empty and quiet. Izuku suspected Sho had lingered in the infirmary for that very reason. By the time they arrived to 3DS classroom, their English lesson had already started. Sho knocked on the door before opening it, revealing a very excited Zashi and 20 confused third years. Yes! Zashi exclaimed as he ran over and stole Izuku from Sho, wrapping him in a hug. I was beginning to think you were going to keep him to yourself all day. I told you I'd bring him after class ended, Sho said tiredly. You and I both know you would have kept him if you did have to leave, Zashi teased before turning his attention to Izuku. Don't worry, I would have saved you from the grumpy man. Izuku laughed as Sho sighed in defeat as he left the room. With Sho's departure, Izuku became the sole recipient of 3DS attention. He sank down in Zashi's arms when he noticed their eyes on him. Much like in 1B's classroom, Zashi helped him get situated at the desk facing the students before returning his attention to them. So as I was saying, Zashi continued the lesson like it had never been interrupted as he ignored all the questioning looks thrown towards Izuku. The hero's attempts at regaining his students' attention failed horribly. Not a single student was taking notes as they all chose to study Izuku, who was purposely doodling in his notebook to avoid the attention. After 30 minutes of lecturing about passive past tense verbs to inattentive listeners, Zashi gave up. "Well, I can see we aren't going to be learning any more English today," Zashi joked, turning to Izuku. "Feel up to a little Q&A to satisfy them? They want to ask me questions?" Izuku asked, surprised. The attention he was getting today was alarming. No one had taken notice of him in a positive way in such a long time. Izuku wasn't sure how to handle it. "I'd say so," Zashi answered before addressing the class again. "But it is still an English class, so you can only ask Aizu here a question if you ask it in English. I'll translate as needed." The class immediately jumped at the opportunity. Within a few seconds the first translated questions were ready. What's your name?" The boy's English was a little hard to understand, but Izuku had spent years when he was little learning the language just in case his father decided to call from America after he left. He never did, but Izuku was now practically fluent because of his dedicated studying. Not that anyone knew, of course, he didn't dare do too well in any of his classes. He learned that the hard way after scoring higher than Kaken on a test when they were 8. "My name is Izuku." The whole class and Zashi were shocked at his quick response. Zashi recovered first, sending Izuku an enthusiastic thumbs up while sporting a bright smile. "What's your favorite color?" "Red." "What's your favorite food?" "Katsudon." "When's your birthday?" "July 15th. The question continued like that for 10 minutes until a girl asked, "How old are you?" Apparently Izuku's answer of 14 was unexpected. Silence filled the room until it was broken by the sound of the bell signaling the end of the school day a few seconds later. No one but Zashi made a move to leave as he scooped Izuku up and made his way out the door, leaving the shell-shocked students behind. "So that was all my classes for the day. What just say we hang out in the teacher's lounge until Sho gets back with your stuff?" Zashi asked as he made his way through the student-packed halls while carrying Izuku on his back like Sho had. "That's okay with me," Izuku whispered back as he hid his face from the crowd of gawking students. They both ignored the gossiping students until they reached their destination. The teacher's lounge was still empty since none of the other teachers had sped out of class as fast as the two of them had. Neither of them had a chance to settle in before the door opened once more. "Why, hello there." The small mammal greeted them from where he stood in the doorway. "You must be Izuku. I'm UA's principal, Nedzu. I've been looking forward to meeting you all day." Izuku stared wide-eyed at the principal before stuttering out a greeting in return. The chimera didn't seem to take offense to the lackluster reply as he made his way over to the couch, gesturing for Zashi to follow. "How about we have some tea while Yamada does what he needs to in order for you two to go home?" Nedzu suggested. The principal must have planned for this because a tea kettle and 2 cups sat on the table waiting for them. Zashi looked slightly panicked as he set Izuku down next to Nedzu before hesitantly retreating to his desk. The hero never really looked away, as if he was afraid the chimera would steal Izuku if he did. "So I heard you helped out 1BS hero training today. How'd it go?" Izuku's nervousness disappeared as he started a tangent on all the quirks he got to observe earlier. He quickly pulled out his notebook to show off the different ways he helped the students improve and ideas he had for the future. Nedzu seamlessly split his attention between studying Izuku's notes, imputing suggestions of his own, and preparing their tea. The tea never did get drunk as it grew cold, forgotten during their discussion. "You have quite the eye for quirks, don't you?" Nedzu asked excitedly when Izuku reached the end of his notes nearly an hour later. "Say, Aizawa and Yamada suggested you not go back to school until your kidnappers were caught earlier, did they not? Since you seem to have a lot of spare time in the near future, how would you like to take some lessons from me?" The principal offered with a large, almost feral grin on his face. "Really? That'd be great. Thank you, Principal Nedzu." Izuku replied, not seeming to notice Zashi's frightened expression as he agreed. "Sho's going to kill me," Zashi muttered as he put his head down at his desk. "Zashi, are you okay?" Izuku asked, worried when he noticed the hero's dejected mood. He only received a muffled groan in reply. "Eraser, we got the file," Tsukachi announced as soon as Shoyuta walked into his office. Shoyuta wasn't expecting the request for Aizu's file to be approved so quickly, but he wasn't going to complain. Aizu had already confided his quirk status to them, so hopeful there wouldn't be any more shocking revelations within, but knowing the kid's luck there probably was. Tsukachi turned his monitor so they could both see the screen as he pulled up the file. "I received this around noon, but I haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet. This morning has been so hectic I almost missed the email entirely," the detective explained as Shoyuta tapped on the desk impatiently. When the file loaded, they were met with a school-issued picture of Izuku that looked a few years old. All the standard information for a government file was filled: name, age, quirk, address, but what really stole Shuta's attention was the names of his parents. Hisashi and Inko Midoriya. The two people who caused his kid so much pain and suffering were listed as the only members of Aizu's family, extended or otherwise, left alive. Other than them, Aizu was truly alone in the world, no grandparents, aunts or uncles. "He's quirkless," Tsukachi said quietly from where he sat staring at the screen with disbelief coloring his face. "Yeah, he told us this morning," Shoyuta responded, studying the detective for any negative reactions. "The kid threw himself into danger to help countless strangers without a quirk to fall back on," Tsukachi whispered as he put together the fact the vigilante who had been helping Shoyuta arrest criminals for months was a quirkless child. "Really makes what he was doing seem so much more amazing, doesn't it?" Shoyuta said, not bothering to hide the pride in his voice. "Your kid's insane. He wasn't even carrying a weapon for self-defense, was he?" Tsukachi asked, fully knowing he didn't. "I should get him some knives," Shoyuta muttered as he remembered his kid was practically defenseless if cornered. "Maybe if he had a weapon he wouldn't have been taken the other day." "You're both insane," Tsukachi sighed out, defeated, pulling Shoyuta out of his spiraling thoughts. "He didn't want to tell us at first, he was so afraid we'd leave like his father did," Shoyuta admitted. "His father's gone?" Tsukachi quickly pulled up a search on Hisashi Midoriya in the police database. His latest offense was a parking ticket from 12 years ago. It was like the man hadn't existed in the last decade. "That's not suspicious or anything," Shoyuta muttered as he jotted down Aizu's address and school name for later. "I'll send out the requests for each of the parents' files after I get back. Hopefully we won't need them, but if your theory on the kid being abused is correct we will," Tsukachi commented as he pulled out a stack of papers and set them in front of Shoyuta. "While you're here you might as well sign these in case. You being a pro hero really worked in our favor. Normally I can never get paperwork completed this quickly." Shoyuta read through the forms which would grant him temporary guardianship over Aizu until his current guardians were deemed adequate to care for him. He knew no sane judge would find Aizu's mother a fit parent with the amount of red flags they have already seen before even meeting the woman. The lack of a missing persons report alone would be enough to remove Aizu from that home. Add on the recorded malnutrition on Aizu's newly formed medical records and Shoyuta was almost guaranteed Aizu's guardianship on a more permanent basis. With the freshly signed paperwork filed away, the pair made their way to the address listed on Aizu's file. The apartment building had seen better days but wasn't in a bad neighborhood. Shoyuta noticed security was pretty lax though as they walked into the lobby without a problem. "Hello, I don't recognize you two. Could I be of assistance?" an older man asked as they passed what must have been the building's manager's office. "I'm Detective Tsukachi from the Mustatafu Police Department and this is Pro Hero Eraserhead," Tsukachi introduced them as Shoyuta looked around the fairly clean lobby. "We are here today regarding a case centered around the Midoriyas. Would you happen to have any information about the family you could share?" "Midoriyas? They've been living here for over a decade now, although I haven't seen any of them other than their young son for quite some time now. The poor boy always seems to come home hurt," the man responded dejectedly. "Did you ever report his injuries to the police?" Shoyuta asked. If this man knew his kid was hurt, why didn't he say anything? Whenever I asked about them he would always said it was from a fight at school or falling during gym class. He was always so cheerful I never thought he could have been lying. The man trailed off as if he was searching his memories for a sign. "You said you have only seen their son recently. Can you remember the last time you saw either of the elder Midoriyas?" Tsukachi asked as he noted down everything the man had said. "The husband traveled abroad some years ago for work, I believe, maybe 10 years give or take. The wife seemed to work odd hours and I'd only ever see her every few weeks or so in passing until a few months ago when I stopped seeing her altogether. I never really interacted with the Midoriyas much after they moved in. They always paid rent electronically so they never had a reason to stop by my office. Thank you for your assistance. If you remember anything else that you think we would find helpful to know, doesn't hesitate to contact us." Tsukachi thanked the man as he handed him a business card. The two men were silent as they made their way to apartment 306, both stuck in their thoughts over what the building manager had told them. Aizu had often come home injured. Was the person abusing him not family then? And where was his family? They already knew his father was out of the picture, but what about his mother? "Aizu gave me his key. He said no one would be here." Shoyuta broke the silence as they stood in front of the kid's apartment after no one answered the door. "Is it irregularly left alone then?" Tsukachi asked as Shoyuta unlocked the door and let them in. "It seems like it," Shoyuta answered absent-minded as he scanned the apartment. The small entryway was empty besides a pair of small red high tops that must have been Aizu's. Shoyuta made a mental note to grab them when they left as he made his way farther into the home. No, home wasn't the right word to describe this place. The apartment was cold and dark, leaving him on edge. No pictures hung on the walls and almost no personal affects were in sight. The only sign of the place being inhabited was the small, yellow backpack resting against the sofa and the school books laying on the coffee table. Here, Aizu gave me a list of what he wanted me to grab for him. Shoyuta handed over the paper before gathering up the kids' school supplies. Clothes, school stuff, notebooks, the money in the cookbook? Why does he have money hidden in a book? Tsukachi asked, confused, looking back to Shoyuta for answers. Just add it to the list of things that aren't adding up here, we can ask him later, Shoyuta called over his shoulder as he made his way down the hall towards Aizu's bedroom, leaving the detective in the living room to find the book in question. Shoyuta stopped in front of a door labeled as Aizu's with an All Might plaque. The kid didn't ask for it, but he thought about taking it anyways, but eventually left it where it was as he pushed open the door. Hero posters lined the walls, including a hand-drawn poster of Shoyuta himself sitting on the edge of a rooftop he recognized as the one he always met Ghost on. After studying the drawing, he carefully took it down and rolled it up to bring with him. If his kid went through the trouble of painstaking drawing one of him, he wasn't going to leave it behind no matter how much he disliked merchandise of himself. Maybe Aizu would draw one of Zashi for him if he asked. Returning his attention to the task at hand, Shoyuta got to work gathering up Aizu's clothing. At the back of the kid's closet he found a stack of identical sweatshirts and a box of the black face masks he wore out on patrol. Shoyuta didn't want to think about how many of the hoodies Aizu has gone though already while doing vigilante work. He packed them all despite his reluctance, knowing the kid would go out with or without his typical gear. With the clothes all packed, he made his way over to the small desk in the room. Most of Aizu's school supplies were already packed in his bag in the living room, leaving only a stack of notebooks behind. Each notebook was labeled Hero Analysis for the Future in Aizu's handwriting. Letting his curiosity get the best of him, Shoyuta opened the latest volume. Shoyuta lost track of time as he flipped through the notebook, amazed at the work inside. Detailed analysis of countless heroes' quirks were laid out next to picture-perfect drawings of the heroes themselves. Veteran heroes sat next to newly debuted rookies, all given the same thorough treatment. Each entry was followed by ideas for new moves and experimental ways they could use their quirks in new ways. These notes made the quickly thrown together ones from 1BS class look like child's play. Nedzu could never see these, the world would burn if he did. Eraser, you need to see this, Tsukachi called from the other room, putting a halt to Shuta's reading. Tsukachi met Shuta's eye as he walked in the room. The detective didn't say a word as he handed a letter over, his hands shaking with anger as he did. Shoyuta joined him in his rage when he finished reading the short note. That beach had left his kid with nothing but a note to explain why. If the letter wouldn't have helped him get permanent custody of Aizu, he would have tore it into pieces. The letter wasn't dated, so who knows how long his kid had spent fending for himself after his poor excuse of parents had abandoned him. After I found the money, I looked through some of the other books in case anything else was hidden. I found that letter and this. Tsukachi held up a dried flower. Shoyuta froze when he recognized the flower. He had attended enough funerals to realize what it was. Tsukachi held a preserved red spider lily between his fingertips. The red flower was used to symbolize bad luck and death. Why did his kid have one saved like that? I also found a badly burned school uniform in the trash. Tsukachi gestured to the pile of ruined fabric on the kitchen counter. The left sleeve is practically destroyed from the shoulder down. Shoyuta was starting to look at Aizu's words from that night in a new light. He had been held up at school and turned up with second-degree burns on his left wrist and shoulder. His school uniform was burned in the same places, meaning he was wearing it at the time he was burnt. Someone at that school was hurting his kid. Looks like he wouldn't be calling the school tomorrow. A surprise visit seems in order. I have a lot of questions to ask your kid, Eraser, Tsukachi stated as he took the uniform for evidence. You and I both, Shoyuta responded, not looking forward to the conversation to come. Chapter text. Nedzu didn't stay long after Izuku agreed to be his personal student while he was out of school. The Chimera mentioned something about lesson plans before he vanished, leaving Izuku confused about what had just happened. It had taken Zashi several minutes to lift his head off his desk after that. Izuku couldn't believe the principal of UA wanted to teach him. Since he was kidnapped, nothing seemed real. He had spent the day at UA with people who genuinely cared about him. People had asked for his help and not once had he been called a name or hurt in any way. He almost expected this to all be a dream and to wake up alone in his bed at any moment, but he never did. Zashi had claimed the spot on the sofa next to Izuku after he recovered from whatever was bothering him when the principal was there. The hero was grading students' papers while Izuku finished up the drawing he started in 1BS classroom as they waited for Sho to return. Every so often he would show Izuku one of the papers when he found a funny response, causing them both to get sidetracked as they laughed together. The pair missed Sho's arrival as they lost it over a particularly hilarious answer to a test question. "What's got you two so amused?" Sho asked from where he stood next to what must have been Tsukachi. "Yamanaka from 2ES answer to my joke question on the last test." Zashi choked out as they struggled to catch their breath. He wrote an essay about how Starbucks was the fastest growing religious cult in America. Izuku added as he panted from where he was leaning against Zashi's side. During the harvest season, followers make sacrifices of the orange squash commonly known as pumpkins to their god while wearing the traditional clothing of their culture as they chant over complicated orders in hopes of receiving boons in the form of caffeine. He and Zashi bursted into another round of laughter at the creatively worded essay. After several more relapses, the pair managed to calm down. During their struggle, Sho and Tsukachi had taken a seat on the sofa across from them to wait them out. Both men were now sipping on coffee Sho had made during the ordeal. "Aizu, this is Detective Tsukachi from the Mustatafu Police Department. He's working on finding the men who kidnapped you and has some questions he needs to ask regarding it," Sho introduced the man. They both looked like they were not too happy about having to ask Izuku about what happened. Izuku understood, he wasn't too keen on talking about what happened either. Hopefully Death's ideas to explain the blood away worked, if not Izuku was not going to be having a fun afternoon. "Hello Izuku," as Eraserhead just said, "I'm Detective Tsukachi. Just so you're aware, I have a truth detection quirk so you don't have to worry about me questioning the validity of any of your statements. You can tell me anything you want and I will believe you," the detective said, seeming to be hinting at something like he though Izuku would want to tell him but was afraid he wouldn't be believed. "They don't know about his quirk, do they? Oh okay, what do you need to ask?" All the amusement Izuku had just been feeling was long gone, leaving him in a state of overwhelming anxiety. Zashi must have noticed because the hero quickly reached out and took Izuku's hand to comfort him. "Can you start by telling me what you remember of that night? I understand if you need to take your time. Just let me know if it's ever too much and we can take a break," Tsukachi explained as he set up a tape recorder. I guess I noticed something was wrong when I started heading home. I was overwhelmed that night and went for a walk to clear my head, and on the way home I felt like someone was watching me. I got the feeling they were going to hurt me in some way, so I started to run but my ankle gave out. When I turned to face whoever it was, they hit me hard in the head and I blacked out." Izuku had started to play with Zashi's hand in hopes of reliving some of his pent-up anxious energy. "The rest is really blurry because of the concussion they gave me when they hit me. I don't really remember a lot, sorry." "It's okay, just tell us whatever you can," Tsukachi said soothingly. The first thing I remember is two people talking, about a hero, I think. They were upset with them? They said they kidnapped me to get revenge. I think they thought I was Sho's kid." Izuku felt his face redden in embarrassment as he remembered what he said. "They kept calling him my D-Dad and B because of the concussion, so did I. They said they wanted to call him so I could talk to him, said it was going to be a surprise. I don't really remember anything after the call." Izuku trailed off, hoping to avoid the whole getting shot thing. "Izuku, I understand if it's too much, but I can tell the last part was a lie. Can you tell us what happened after the call?" "If you can't, that's okay," Tsukachi said calmly. Izuku could tell the detective was trying to be as unconfrontational as possible and he appreciated it. He quickly glanced at Sho and Zashi to gauge their reactions to his lie. Neither hero looked angry at him. Zashi seemed to be near tears and Sho looked like he wanted to join him and Zashi. Izuku could use all the comfort he could get, so he reached a hand out inviting Sho over. The hero didn't hesitate to bracket him in giving up a hand like Zashi had. Izuku returned his attention to the detective who was still waiting for his answer. He could do this. He just had to use Death's idea about the healing quirk user and be very careful with how he worded his responses. "No big deal. One of them had a gun and," Izuku paused as he considered his wording. "They shot me, I blacked out right afterwards." Zashi gasped at his admission, squeezing his hand tightly. Sho's head whipped to the detective who simply tapped his right hand against the sofa's arm. Whatever Sho gathered from that must not have been good as he turned back to Izuku, scanning him for injuries. "They shot you?" Sho asked as he frantically checked Izuku over. "Why yeah, but I'm okay. Someone there had a healing quirk and healed the gunshot wound while I was out." Izuku quickly explained, hoping to calm everyone down. "They must have just done it to worry you." Izuku's attempts at relieving the situation were unsuccessful. Zashi was full on crying now and had pulled him into a tight hug. Sho looked furious as he turned back to the detective who didn't seem to be faring much better. "There was so much blood, you must have been so close to bleeding out," Tsukachi stated quietly. "But I'm okay now," Izuku said in one last weak attempt at diffusing the stress his story had caused. "Kid, you aren't okay. You still can't walk and are covered in bruises and burns," Sho responded as he joined in the hug. But that was from before, well, not the bruise on my face, but everything else wasn't even them, Izuku explained while he held on the two heroes. You were injured before you were taken? Can you tell me how that happened? Tsukachi asked when he recovered from the shock of his previous statement. Oh, just a fight at school is all, Izuku mumbled as he tried to hide between the two men on either side of him. Izuku, Tsukachi trailed off as he caught another lie. Okay, maybe it was more one-sided than an actual fight. Were you attacked at school? Zashi asked with a shaky voice as he tried to comfort him. Izuku thought the hero needed it more than he did. They don't like me very much there, Izuku said quietly. Who burned you, Aizu? Sho asked as he pulled Izuku and Zashi closer to him. Izuku could feel the hero shaking. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, Izuku mumbled into Sho's chest. Izuku, you were assaulted by someone using their quirk, what they did to you was illegal, Tsukachi tried to explain to him, but Izuku just shook his head. He refused to be the reason other kids' dreams were destroyed before they even had a chance to try to achieve them. Baby, if they aren't shown their actions have consequences, this could happen again to someone else, Zashi begged. They won't hurt anyone else, I'm the only target. Everyone knows I'm just a quirkless Deku, I'm the bottom of the food chain, so it's okay to hurt me, Izuku explained how it was. It's okay though, if they are focused on me they won't hurt anyone else. Aizu, Sho was speechless at his admission as he shared another look with the detective. If you won't tell us who did this, I can't send you back to that school. I won't let you get hurt like that again. It was Izuku's turn to be speechless. Sho wasn't going to make him go back? He wouldn't have to face Kaken and his friends again? But, no matter where I go it'll happen again as soon as the other kids learn I'm quirkless, Izuku confessed when he realized what would happen. Online school then, Sho decided. Well, Principal Nedzu just asked me to be his student while I was out of school, so maybe I could keep doing that while taking classes online? Izuku asked, hoping he'd be allowed. He was looking forward to learning from the Chimera. Sho slowly looked over to Zashi with a blank face after Izuku asked his question. He cornered us as soon as we got here. It wasn't my fault, he had it all planned out. Zashi yelled out in his defense. Zashi? Izuku was so confused, what was wrong with him taking lessons from the principal? The world is about to burn, Sho said like it already happened. Kid, no matter what that rat says to you, world domination is not okay. What? World domination? Why would that come up? Izuku asked wide-eyes as he looked between the two heroes before turning to the detective in hopes he'd have some idea as to what was happening. I have no clue either, Tsukachi said after he saw Izuku looking at him. Izuku, I have another thing to ask you about while they figure out whatever that was about. When Eraser and I went to your apartment to get your things I found this, the detective held out the letter his mother had left him and the spider lily he saved. How long have you been on your own? A little over 4 months. I found that letter on the 6th of June, Izuku confessed quietly, hoping Sho and Zashi were too caught up in their silent conversation to hear. The 6th? That was the day Hoshino said he stabbed. Aizu, were you stabbed the day you found out your mother abandoned you? Sho asked haltingly as he pieced together what happened. Maybe? At a pointed look from Tsukachi, Izuku adjusted his answer. Okay, yeah, it wasn't a very good day. Oh baby, Zashi murmured, squeezing him tightly. Can you tell us about that day? Tsukachi asked reluctantly. I got that flower that morning from a classmate who must have saw the news about the quirkless suicide in Hosu City, was cornered by someone when school let out and ended up leaving with a broken rib, only to find that when I got home, I went out later to take a walk and saw someone getting mugged and tried to help. He stabbed me. But the lady managed to get away, so there's that. Izuku told them quickly, purposely avoiding anything related to the 2 times he died that day. Why would you keep the flower knowing what it meant? Sho questioned. Well, it's a reminder. If I ever felt my day was bad, I could look at the flower and remember how much worse it could be and that I still made it through it. If I could make it through that day, I could make it through anything else. Izuku reached out to take the flower, turning it over slowly as he explained. Aizu, I can't promise that you'll never have another bad day again, but Zashi and I will do everything we can to make them as few as possible, Sho promised before sharing a look with Zashi. Tsukachi helped me file all the paperwork we would need in order to become you temporarily guardians in case our assumptions of you being abused were correct earlier today. You can stay with us as long as you want. If you decide you'd rather live somewhere else, we will help you find the perfect place for you, but if you want, you can stay with us permanently, Sho offered. Are you saying you'd adopt me? Izuku hoped he was understanding what Sho was saying correctly. Of course baby. If you want us to, we would in a heartbeat, Zashi confirmed while giving Izuku a kind smile despite the tears still covering his face. Tears fell from Izuku's eyes as he managed to nod his head in response. Izuku opened his mouth to respond but couldn't get the words he wanted to say out. He wanted to yell yes as loudly as he could, to say of course he wanted that, but nothing would come out in his shocked state, so he resorted to latching on to Zashi as he nodded frantically. "You're our kid, Aizu. No matter what you decide, we will help you see it through," Sho comforted as he wrapped them both in a hug. "Yes," Izuku breathed out, finally able to make a sound. "Yes, please. Your concussion has healed fairly well," Shuzenji commented as she shined a light in Aizu's eyes, checking how his pupils dilated. "If you have any headaches or dizziness, tell one of your guardians, okay?" "Okay, Miss Chio," Aizu smiled as he blinked the spots out of his vision. "I'd like to see if we could heal up some of the issues with your ankle if you think you have the energy. I know you've had a trying day and I don't want you to overdo it," Shuzenji suggested as she sent a questioning look toward Shoyuta and Zashi. "I'll be okay. I'd like to be able to walk on my own again," Aizu responded before Shoyuta had a chance to comment on the matter. "I don't like to have to bother everyone when I need something." "It's not a bother to help you, baby. It just gives me an excuse to give you all the hugs," Zashi joked to reassure Aizu, causing him to blush. They were really going to have to work on the kid's self-worth. "I'd still like to get it healed before we leave," Aizu repeated as he looked back towards the heroine. "If that's what you want to do, just make sure you get plenty of rest over the weekend, okay?" Shuzenji stipulated as she leaned over to use her quirk. Aizu didn't even last 30 seconds after he was healed before he fell into a deep sleep on the bed he was previously getting a checkup on. Looks like the kid was more exhausted than he let on. After Shuzenji confirmed they'd bring him back Monday for another checkup, Shoyuta and Zashi made their way out of the infirmary with Aizu once again in Shuta's arms. Zashi quit taking pictures, Shoyuta threw over his shoulder as he headed towards their car. "But he's so cute, Sho. I need pictures to show off if anyone asks. What kind of parent would I be if I did?" Zashi whined as he ran to get the door for him. "We haven't even filed the papers to get the adoption started yet. It'll be months before it goes through," Shoyuta reminded his husband as he settled Aizu in the back seat. "I don't care, I'm getting a head start," Zashi retaliated. Shoyuta just sighed as he joined the two in the car to head home. If he happened to steal Zashi's phone to send himself those pictures later, no one needed to know. Aizu was still fast asleep when they pulled up to their building. He'd most likely sleep straight through the night with everything that happened today. Between the physical effects of healing and the emotion exhaustion the interview with Tsukachi gave him, the kid must have been running on empty. Shoyuta was glad he and Tsukachi had dropped off all of Aizu's stuff early before heading to UA. Trying to carry all those boxes and a child up 2 floors would have ended poorly. Luckily Zashi was able to get all their bags from work himself, so Shoyuta could focus on getting Aizu inside. When they stepped out of the elevator, they were met with their neighbor waiting its arrival. The elderly lady took one look at Shoyuta and Aizu before rushing up to them in excitement. "Oh my, who is this little guy?" Mrs. Tashina exclaimed. If she would have been able, Shoyuta was sure she would have scooped Aizu up herself. "This is Izuku. He's going to be living with us from now on," Zashi answered with the same amount of energy, ready to put his gushing parent skills to the test. "I didn't know you two were looking to adopt?" Mrs. Tashina gasped out. "Is that why you needed me to watch over little Momo last night?" "It wasn't necessarily planned. Something's happened over the past few days that lead Aizu to needing a place to stay permanently. We had always planned on offering to adopt him in the future if the need arose, it just happened sooner than expected," Shoyuta explained. "That's so kind of you boys." Mrs. Tashina sniffed as she patted at her eyes. "I'm so glad that little boy has someone as good as you two to look after him. If you ever need anyone to watch him for any reason, just let me know, I'd be more than happy to have him over." "Thank you, Mrs. Tashina," Zashi beamed. "Our baby's just the sweetest, you'll love him once you get a chance to talk to him." "I'm positive I will. I'll bring over cookies tomorrow to welcome him to the building," the elderly lady exclaimed. "Oh, here, before I head out, let me get Machi for you. He was an angel as always." Zashi followed after Mrs. Tashina, pulling out his phone to show off the photos of Aizu he had taken throughout the day as Shoyuta started towards their apartment. How that woman could insist their cat was an angel was beyond him. That animal was the devil incarnate, he swears. He was adorable though. Evil but adorable. After managing to get the door unlocked, Shoyuta made his way to what once was their guest room. From now on it'd be Aizu's room. They'd have to make time sometime this weekend to go out to get decorations to make it feel like it was truly his, but for now it'll do. When Shoyuta came back out to the living room, Zashi was back. Momo had already wandered off to who knows where, leaving the two heroes alone. His husband was just setting their bags down when he noticed Shuta's arrival. Mrs. Tashina said she'd be over tomorrow afternoon with homemade cookies for Aizu, Zashi mentioned as they sat down on the sofa together. The baby could use the pick-me-up after everything he's gone through these last few days. "I can't believe they shot him," Shoyuta said in disbelief. And everything that was happening to him before that even happened, Zashi, I should have done something sooner. We had no solid proof of what was happening. We could have lost his trust before we even gained it if we acted too soon. All we can do now is make up for it and help him in any way we can, his husband soothed as he grabbed Shuta's hand. We should ask Hound Dog if he'd be willing to take Izuku on for therapy, God knows the kid will need it. Nedzu already managed to get his claws into him, no point in keeping him away from UA now. I'd feel better with him in the building while we're there anyways, Shoyuta suggested, knowing it helped both his and Zashi's anxiety over Izuku to have him nearby. I'm sure he'll agree, Zashi reassured before pulling Shoyuta and himself up. We can figure it all out in the morning, but for now we should get some sleep. I know you haven't had much this week, so don't even try to stay up. Izuku woke up in a strange room for the second time in a row. Sunlight streamed through the window, bathing the blue walls in a warm glow. Several boxes sat stacked in the corner next to a small dresser. Overall the room was nice, if not a little impersonal, which alleviated Izuku's concerns that he had somehow managed to get kidnapped again. Kidnappers wouldn't leave him in such a nice room, would they? A soft meow drew Izuku out of his thoughts. Laying next to him on top of the gray comforter was a small orange cat. Okay, another tally against kidnapping. The cat nudged his hand, requesting to be pet as it climbed onto his lap. After a few minutes of giving in to the cat's demands, Izuku heard the sound of muffled singing coming from outside the room. His curiosity got the best of him as Izuku dislodged the cat and made his way over to the door. At the end of the hall, Izuku was met with the sight of Zashi dancing around the kitchen while making breakfast. Sho was sat at the breakfast bar draped over the countertop, looking to be fast asleep with a half-full cup of coffee cradled in his hands. Both heroes wore lounge pants and t-shirts, appearing like they just got up themselves. Zashi? Izuku called out quietly, not wanting to wake Sho. Baby, how are you feeling? Zashi appeared to have no restraint over doing so himself as he responded loudly. Hey kid, Sho muttered from his spot without lifting his head, apparently awake the whole time. Good morning. I'm okay, my ankle feels a lot better today, Izuku answered shyly as he moved to sit next to Sho. The cat must have followed him from the room and jumped up to claim Izuku's lab once again. Traitor, Sho accused as he stared down at the cat, who just stared back. What's his name? Izuku asked as he resumed petting him. Sho started before being cut off by Zashi. His name is Momo. Don't listen to Sho, he's just grumpy in the morning. Zashi sent a playful glare towards Sho before returning his attention to his cooking. I hope you're hungry, I may have gone a little overboard in my excitement. Excitement? Izuku wondered as he took in how much food was already prepared. Well, it's your first morning with us, I wanted to make it special. Zashi beamed as he finished up the last of the meal and set it on the counter in front of Izuku and Sho. Izuku looked on in awe at the lengths Zashi had gone to make him feel welcome after everything the pair of heroes had done for him already. He couldn't believe the turn his life had taken. He had gone from having no one on his side, being a punching bag for everyone around him, to having two guardians who actually cared about him and wanted to actually adopt him in a matter of days. It's okay kid, Sho soothed from his side. He was unsure how long he had been crying before Sho pulled him into a hug. Is something wrong? And no, I'm sorry. It's just, I'm so happy, and Izuku cried, clutching onto the man's shirt. Thank you guys so much. You have nothing to apologize for, Sho said. We're glad you're happy. It had been so long since Izuku could honestly say he was truly happy, but sitting there next to Sho and Zashi he couldn't say he was anything but. He had finally come home. So how do you want to decorate your room? Hisashi asked Aizu as he finished packing up the leftovers from breakfast. He really did go overboard, they'd be eating leftovers for days. My room? Aizu parroted as he subconsciously tilted his head in his confusion, causing a few curls to fall into his face. The room you woke up in is now yours, you know, Sho chimed in from where he was putting dishes away. All your stuff is in the boxes in the corner, we can help you put everything away after we're done cleaning up. That's my room? But it's so nice, are you sure you want to give it to me? Aizu hesitated, his focus purely on Momo in his lap to hide his anxiety. Kid, we aren't going to make you sleep on the sofa. We never even used that room to begin with, so don't worry about it, Sho reasoned, turning to face Aizu. Yeah, no need to stress, calm vibes only, Hisashi joked, poking Aizu in the forehead, causing the boy to laugh. Now before we get to unpacking, we have important business to attend to. It's time for a tour. Hisashi cheered, pulling Aizu to his feet. Aizu fumbled to grab Momo before he fell to the ground and ended up hugging the small cat in his arms. The normally moody cat remained strangely calm as he was smushed into the boy's chest, causing Sho to eye him weary, waiting for him to lash out. You've already seen the kitchen, so we'll start with the living room. Hisashi continued, ignoring the glares his husband and cat were exchanging. Zashi, our apartment isn't that big. I think a tour is overkill, Sho sighed from where he lagged behind. Nonsense. So this is the living room, feel free to watch whatever you want on TV. Oh, and you can eat whatever you want whenever, no need to ask, Hisashi quickly added, remembering how Shuzenji said Aizu was malnourished. During the interview with Tsukachi, they never asked if Aizu's mother was purposely withholding food as a punishment or if his small size was just a byproduct of the neglect, but either way Hisashi wanted to make it clear food would always be available. There were so many difficult questions they would have to ask the poor baby soon, but Hisashi didn't want to add stress to an already stressful day. Moving in with new guardians into a completely new environment was enough to deal with for one day. Perhaps the questions could wait until Aizu started therapy. We have 3 bedrooms in this place. The one at the end of the hall on the right is mine and Sho's, the one across from it is yours as you know, and this one next to yours is my little home studio. Hisashi announced as he opened the door to show Aizu the room in question. Aizu stepped into room in awe as he took in the equipment within. Hisashi was proud of his little space. Having a radio show meant he had to curate multiple playlists of music to play in between segments and interviews, and much like languages, music has always fascinated him. He used to spend hours at the station putting them together before Sho had surprised him one year by buying him a mixer and a new laptop with multiple music programs pre-installed. Since then he has been accumulating more and more equipment until he had the equivalent to a private studio their home. This is amazing. Aizu exclaimed as he spun around to see every piece of equipment. If you think this is cool, you should come see the setup at the station. We have all the latest stuff there, Hisashi replied. Why don't you take Aizu with you this afternoon? I have a meeting with his school later anyways, that way he doesn't have to stay here alone, Sho suggested from where he stood watching the 2 of them in the doorway. That's a great idea. I could show off my baby to everyone, if you want to of course, Hisashi quickly asked when he noticed Aizu's shocked face. I can come see your show in person? Aizu asked in wonder. That'd be so cool. I've listened for years. Yes. I'm even interviewing Mirko tonight. Hisashi added as he started to plan out everything he had to show Aizu later. The number 6 pro hero? Oh my god. She's the top-ranked female hero in Japan. She's so highly ranked for a purely solo hero too. Aizu gushed as he bounced in place, causing Momo to look slightly ill. Aizu, you're going to make the cat sick if you keep shaking him like that, Sho advised as he tried to hide his amusement. I'm so sorry, Aizu cried out, cuddling Momo to his chest, receiving a meow in return. Come on, we should get started unpacking if we want to get done before Mrs. Tashina gets here, Sho reminded the 2 of them, pulling Hisashi from the room. Who's Mrs. Tashina? Aizu questioned as he trailed along behind them, still cuddling Momo. She's our neighbor. We ran into her when we got back last night and she insisted on bringing over cookies this afternoon to welcome you, Sho answered as he pushed open Aizu's door. That's nice of her, she is nice, right? Aizu worried as he flicked his gaze from one hero to the other. Oh, she's an absolute sweetheart. You'll love her, Hisashi claimed as he looked around the room. Hisashi didn't get a chance to see Aizu's stuff last night, the boy was already in bed when he returned from getting Momo. When he did, he was shocked to see how little Aizu had to call his own. 5 boxes sat stacked in the corner of the room with a small yellow bag placed on top. The first chance he got, he was going to take Aizu shopping. The 4 on the bottom are full of your clothes and the one on top has your notebooks and a few of your drawings I found. All your schoolwork is in your bag and your sneakers are by the door, Sho informed Aizu before sharing a look with Hisashi, already guessing at the blonde's shopping plans. Thank you, Aizu smiled, missing the silent conversation the 2 adults were having behind him as he made his way over to the bed to set Momo down and started putting clothes away. Hisashi made his way over to help once Sho sighed in defeat at stopping his plans. Once all of his clothes were put away, Aizu opened up the last box, revealing a small collection of notebooks and drawings. One appeared much bigger than the rest and was rolled up like a poster. What's this one? Zashi asked when he couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. It's a poster Aizu made, I saw it hanging on his wall and grabbed it, Sho said as he reached over to unroll it. It was now Hisashi's turn to stare in awe as he took in the lifelike drawing of his husband in full hero getup. Every detail of the picture made it look more like a photo than a drawing. He could tell Aizu must have spent hours working on it and was glad Sho decided to grab it, he couldn't imagine leaving it behind. Aizu, did you draw this yourself? Hisashi asked as he took the poster from Sho to get a better look at the details. Huh? Oh yeah, I know it's not that good, but I couldn't find any posters of Eraserhead online, so I figured I'd just make one myself, Aizu stuttered out, caught off guard by the question as he was putting the notebooks and his bag on top of the dresser. Not good? This is great. Can you make me one too? Hisashi begged. Zashi, you don't need a poster of me, Sho chastised before turning to Aizu to whisper, could you draw one of Zashi for me? Hey! If I can't have one you can't either. Hisashi teased accusingly. You guys really want me to draw you pictures? Aizu asked quietly. Aizu looked utterly shocked at the thought someone truly liked his work, causing Hisashi's heart to break. His baby didn't know how amazing he was, he'd have to fix that. 100%. I would have thought this was an actual picture if I didn't know Sho shot down every attempt I make at getting him hero merch, Hisashi assured Aizu as he pulled the small boy into a hug, unable to resist the urge to. I'm an underground hero, no one is supposed to know about me, Sho defended himself while he took the poster back from Hisashi to hang up above the dresser. I knew about you, Aizu commented from where he was still trapped in Hisashi's arms. I still don't know how you managed that, by the way. There's maybe 3 poorly shot videos of me doing hero work online that you could have seen, but you somehow knew who I was on site and how my quirk worked, Sho revealed while sitting down on Aizu's bed to pet Momo. I found 5, Aizu commented as he joined Sho, pulling Hisashi with him. Well, one of them was really only a blurry video of you jumping away on a rooftop after stopping an attempted mugging, but I count it. Can you show me? Hisashi asked excitedly. He rarely got to see his husband doing hero work. Sure. Aizu replied as he pulled out a phone that had definitely seen better days. Hisashi once again shared a look with Sho over Aizu's head as the boy pulled up a file of videos from different hero fights. His husband didn't even try to persuade him to leave it be, clearly agreeing Aizu needed a new phone. Here, this file has all the videos of Eraserhead I could find online, Aizu said as he handed his phone over to Hisashi. The two of them spent the next 30 minutes rewatching the 5 short videos again and again, much to Sho's displeasure. Each time gushing more about how cool he was, causing Sho to fall back with a groan. Sho was finally put out of his misery when the sound of the doorbell rang throughout the apartment. I never thought I'd be so thrilled to have guests, Sho deadpanned as he made his way to the living room to answer the door, leaving Hisashi and Aizu behind. Is that Mrs. Tashina? Aizu wondered while he flipped his phone around in his hands. Yes, sounds like her, Hisashi answered after listening to the voices coming from the living room. You don't have to come met her if you don't want to, he added after noticing how anxious Aizu looked. No, I want to. It's just, what if she doesn't like me? Aizu asked nervously. She'll love you, baby, Hisashi reassured Aizu, pulling the boy into his side. The only person I've ever known Mrs. Tashina to speak ill about was her late mother-in-law, and believe me, I met the woman once, she's was a real piece of work. Aizu giggled at the funny face Hisashi made in an attempt to alleviate Aizu's stress. The small boy stayed curled up against him for several more minutes before he finally pulled away. I'm okay now, Aizu said while giving Hisashi a shy smile as he let himself be pulled to his feet. Aizu stayed partially hidden behind Hisashi as they made their way into the living room to join Sho and Mrs. Tashina. As the pair made their entrance, they seemed to be interrupting the elderly lady's retelling of the time she and her niece traveled to Mount Fuji 20-some years ago. Hisashi knew for a fact Sho had heard that story at least 3 times, but his husband made no attempt to let her know that. And then this handsome young man, oh my. You must be Izuku. Mrs. Tashino cut herself off when she noticed their arrival. Hello ma'am, it's nice to meet you, Aizu stammered out, moving slightly out from behind Hisashi to make eye contact. Well, aren't you a polite young man and so cute too? She exclaimed before gesturing towards the plate of cookies sitting on the coffee table. I hope you like chocolate chip cookies. I wanted to make you a sweet treat to welcome you to our building after I saw you coming home last night. That's very kind of you, ma'am, thank you, Aizu responded before looking up at Hisashi for directions. Aizu had grabbed a hold of the back of Hisashi's shirt when Mrs. Tashina turned towards them, and he had yet to let go, so Hisashi led Aizu over to the sofa to sit next to Sho before sitting down himself. Mrs. Tashina's cookies are the best, you should try one, Hisashi added after they had gotten settled in, already reaching for one himself. Okay, Aizu accepted one of the cookies and began to nibble at it. This is really good, ma'am. No need to call me ma'am dear, makes me feel as old as I am, Mrs. Tashina said with a wink before laughing at her own joke. Now why don't you tell me a little about yourself, Izuku? I'd love to get to know you more. What do you want to know about ma Mrs. Tashina? Aizu asked, unsure of what to say about himself. Well, how about your hobbies and what you're learning about in school? The lady suggested with a kind smile. Oh, well, I'm not actually going to school right now, Aizu trailed off, looking to Sho for help. Aizu was having some issues with bullies at his last school, so we are in the process of looking into alternatives for the future, Sho mediated, giving Aizu's head a reassuring pat. Oh dear, who would bully such a kind young man like yourself? Clearly they must be little delinquents. Mrs. Tashina cried out in disgust at the thought. They didn't like that I was quirkless, Aizu managed to get out in trembling words as he grabbed Hisashi's hand to play with like he did during the interview. His baby was clearly afraid of the woman's reaction to his admission. Well, that's just ridiculous. A person's quirk is no reason to treat someone unfairly. If anyone was to bully me during my childhood for being quirkless, I just showed them how tough us quirkless people could be. Mrs. Tashina announced with determination and righteous fury. You're quirkless too? Aizu said in wonder, all anxiety over his reveal gone in an instant. The majority of my generation was, it's only in recent years that we quirkless have become the minority, you know, Mrs. Tashina informed Aizu before handing the boy another cookie. I know things have changed over the years, but clearly they have gotten worse than I realized. If a sweet young man like yourself has to deal with bigoted JRKS like that. If anyone gives you a hard time, dear, just let me know. I'll make sure to give them a piece of my mind. I don't have to worry about silly little things like laws like your hero parents do. What are they going to do, arrest a little old lady like me? Mrs. Tashina gave Aizu a conspiratorial wink before looking up at Hisashi and Sho. You boys didn't hear a thing. I don't know what you're taking about, Mrs. Tashina. I was just eating this wonderful cookie, Sho responded, not showing any sign he had just heard his neighbor plan to assault his soon-to-be son's bullies. Hisashi just laughed at Aizu's look of amazement towards Mrs. Tashina as he absently ate the cookie that had been placed in his hands. I told you you'd love her, Hisashi whispered to Aizu with a smile, glad his baby had one more person to look out for him. Izuku was still in shock long after Mrs. Tashina left. She was quirkless. He had never met another quirkless person before, but he wasn't quirkless, was he? He had a quirk no matter what everyone else believed, which means he had just lied to a sweet, old lady. He was a horrible person. Aizu? Are you ready? You and Zashi have to leave soon, Sho called out as he knocked on Izuku's door, ignorant to Izuku's inner turmoil. Shortly after their guest left, Izuku had gone to his room in guise of getting ready to go with Zashi to the radio station, but in reality he had been going over the conversation he just had repeatedly. The realization that he had lied about his quirk status not only to a new acquaintance but also to everyone else he had met within the last 2 days without hesitation shook him to his core. The more he thought about it, the more ironic the whole situation became. He had spent nearly 10 years of his life living quirkless and being pushed down by everyone around him because of it, but now that he has finally come to terms with the fact he actually has a quirk, he is finding people who truly care about him regardless of his quirk status. He had finally found good people and he has to lie to all of them about a major part of himself for his safety. Aizu? Are you alright? Sho had entered the room sometime during Izuku's mental struggle and was now crouched in front of where Izuku was sitting on his bed. The hero was trying to hide his worry behind a blank mask, but it showed anyways. Izuku cut himself off abruptly, unsure of what he even wanted to say. Izuku knew deep down Sho and Zashi would do nothing to hurt him, but he couldn't bring himself to tell either of them about his quirk. All it took was one unintentional slip-up for the secret to get out. Death was right when he said there would be people who would stop at nothing to get their hands on Izuku's quirk if they learned of it, and he did not want to put the first 2 people who showed him any kindness in danger. Why you wouldn't make me leave if I keep a few secrets, would you? Izuku asked, unable to take the strain the thought was leaving on his mind any longer. Aizu, everyone has secrets. Zashi and I will never force you to tell us anything that you don't want us to know. I just ask that you tell us if you are ever in danger, please. I don't think I could handle another situation like the other day. We care about you, kid, and we just want you to be safe and happy, Sho explained, slowly grabbing Izuku's hands to provide him comfort. Izuku felt a wave of relief at the man's words. Having someone like Sho was so new and strange to Izuku, but he wouldn't trade it for the world. Over the past 4 months Izuku had come to care about the man more than he ever cared about his biological parents. Perhaps getting so attached so quickly was unwise and probably due to the copious amounts of trauma he has accumulated over the years, but Izuku couldn't bring himself to care. Death may have made fun of him for saying it while concussed, but Izuku really wished he could call Sho dad again, but he was terrified of what the hero would say in return. He knew Sho wouldn't be purposely mean if he didn't want to be called that, but his anxiety ran with the idea regardless, causing the title to get stuck on his lips. Unable to say what he wanted, Izuku lunged forward to wrap the man in a tight hug, which was quickly reciprocated. Come on, you better get dressed before Zashi decides to pick out your outfit himself, Sho joked as he pulled Izuku to his feet. He'd most likely give you more of his merch to wear even if it is enormous on you. Actually, does he have another sweatshirt with his show's name on it? I really like this one, but I've been wearing it for the last day or so, Izuku asked, not wanting to part with the comfort the hoodie gave him. He'd always been a fan of oversized clothes. I'll grab you mine, Sho offered as he headed across the hall to get it. While Sho was gone, Izuku quickly changed into a pair of gray jeans, hoping they would be fine for the afternoon. He wanted to make a good first impression on everyone Zashi worked with. He already had the bruises to deal with, he really couldn't afford to look like a slob as well. While he was rummaging through the dresser looking for a nice shirt to wear under the hoodie, his eyes fell to his notebooks. A few months ago Izuku had made an entry on Mirko. It wasn't as good as his current entries but he wasn't mad at it. Should he bring it with him tonight on the off chance he got the opportunity to talk to the heroine? Before he could talk himself out of it, Izuku shoved the notebook into his bag and headed out to the living room to wait for Sho to return. "And here we are, welcome to the Put Your Hands Up radio station," Zashi announced as he and Izuku entered the building's lobby. "We are a little different from your typical radio station because this building doubles as a hero agency. We specialize in disaster relief and danger awareness. It started as an idea a friend and I had while attending UA to use a media presence as a way to spread vital information during villain attacks or natural disasters to the public, and it just grew from there." "Whoa, does your friend work here too?" Izuku asked curiously as he took in the music-themed entrance. "He actually died during our second year, but I like to think he would approve of what I've grown our idea into," Zashi replied somberly, his tone contrasting with the cheerful way he waved to the receptionist as they passed. "I'm sorry for bringing it up," Izuku apologized, taking Zashi's hand as they walked, mimicking how the heroes often comforted him. "It's okay, baby. The dead shouldn't be forgotten and the best way to honor them is to share their story." Zashi offered Izuku a sad smile while he used his free hand to call the elevator. "What was his name?" Izuku wondered, hoping he wouldn't be stepping over the line. "Oboro Shirakumo. Sho and I went to school with him until he was killed during his work study. He was always full of energy. I think just being around the two of us made Sho exhausted." Zashi chuckled, lost in memory as the elevator brought them up to the 4th floor. "He sounded great," Izuku offered, watching his guardian closely for any signs of discomfort. He would have loved you." Zashi's smile grew brighter as he looked down at Izuku coming out of his head. "And you would have loved to study his quirk. He could create clouds and he could even ride them." Izuku's mind raced at the thought of clouds with enough mass to hold the weight of a person. Does that mean he could control their density at will, or were they always that dense? What would they feel like? Were they truly clouds in the sense they were formed from the moisture in the air, or were they more of a mimicry of a cloud created using an entirely different process? "Baby, we're here, you'll have to save your speculations for later," Zashi said, giving Izuku a fond smile. Izuku felt his face turn red at the realization he had been mumbling out loud again. He thought he had suppressed the habit in elementary school after it was used as fuel for the bullying, but feeling safe again must have brought it back to the surface. Sorry," Izuku, hoping his mumbling didn't creep Zashi out. "Don't worry about it, it's fascinating to hear your thoughts. You are way smarter than I am. I would never consider to ask half the questions you brought up," Zashi informed him with a proud smile on his face as he led Izuku down the hall to the studio the show was broadcasted from. "You'll have to help me interview Mirko tonight so all the listeners can learn more about her quirk." Izuku was pulled along, dumbfounded at the thought of getting to ask another pro hero all about their quirk. First was Recovery Girl and now Mirko? What alternative universe had he fallen into? Oh god, he was now living with Eraserhead and Present Mike and haven't asked them a single quirk-related question since moving in. "Hey Mike. Who's this?" The unfamiliar voice once again brought Izuku back to the present. Sometime during his realization, Zashi had led him into the broadcasting studio and they were now among 3 other people, of which were all sitting in front of complex equipment. "This is my baby, Izuku. Sho had a meeting to attend tonight so he came with me to help out with the show. These are Sana Yamato, Hibiki Watanabe, and Hayami Kimura." Zashi introduced the group, gesturing to each in turn. Sana is the hero Harmony. His quirk can influence the moods of those around him and he uses it to aid in the evacuations of civilians during crises. Hibiki is the sidekick known as Echo. His quirk allows him to mimic and amplify any sound he hears, which aids in finding survivors during disaster cleanups. And last but not least is Hayami, also known as Mirage. Her quirk allows her to create lifelike illusions that can interact with the world for a short period of time, Zashi explained. "It's nice to meet you all." Izuku bowed awkwardly while keeping a hold of Zashi's hand, now more for his own benefit than the hero's. "So you're the baby we have been hearing so much about?" Hayami inquired as she gave Izuku a humorous grin. "Mike hasn't stopped gushing about you for months. The little hero saved Sho from being paralyzed by a thug last night. He took down 3 muggers by himself just this week. Look at this picture Sho sent me of my baby with an alley cat they found the other day," Hibiki mocked, using his quirk to copy Zashi's voice. "Okay, maybe I was a little excited but I wasn't that bad," Zashi defended. "He had no chill whatsoever. I even saw him walk straight into the door when his husband sent him that pic," Hayami added on with a wink. "No matter what the man tells you, he's a huge dork. Don't be fooled by the cool guy aesthetic. Don't listen to the slander," Zashi cried out as he dramatically pulled Izuku into a hug. "They tell naught but lies." Izuku started to laugh as Zashi, Hayami and Hibiki continued to trade teasing remarks. During the exchange, Izuku made eye contact with Sana, who sat back calmly watching the drama unfold. With a small gesture, the hero beckoned him over. "Are they always like this?" Izuku whispered to the man when he joined him in front of what looked like a large soundboard. "All the time. I'd be surprised if the three of them got any work done when I wasn't around," Sana joked. "But they always manage to pull their act together for the show, so I can't really complain. Plus it's free entertainment during my downtime." The pair watched the trio continue their antics as Izuku's thoughts once again started to drift. Zashi talked about him with his coworkers enough they recognized him from stories? The more Izuku learned about the hero, the more he was coming to realize the man truly cared about him. Much like Sho, Zashi was quickly become someone he considered more of a parent than his real ones ever were. They even said they would adopt him. "We only have an hour before Mirko is scheduled to arrive. We should really get started on the pre-show check," Sana spoke up, startling Izuku. The announcement had no effect on the humorous atmosphere the trio had created. The group somehow managed to effortlessly transition from goofing around to professionally preparing for the show without affecting the mood of the room at all. Hibiki had turned on music shortly after Sana had brought them back on task, and it now played softly in the background as they all quietly sang along with various vocal skills. Izuku watched in awe as the four pros danced around each other seamlessly. Every now and then someone would speak, but for the majority of the time only the music broke the comfortable silence. Was this what friendship looked like? Teasing remarks made in good humor, sharing personal stories with each other, and simple companionship? Izuku couldn't help but wonder if he would ever have something like this as he continued to watch the display in front of him, hoping that one day he would. A few months ago he would have never even considered the possibility on having friends, but he would have said the same thing about finding people to consider family, but now he had Sho and Zashi. Izuku was starting to believe his life was truly looking up, and for the first time in a long time he was excited for what the future could hold. Zashi?" Izuku hesitantly tried to catch the hero's attention without disrupting the flow the group had fallen into while preparing for the show. No one reacted to his quiet call, all too focused on the task at hand to even notice. Izuku tried to wait it out, but after about 30 minutes of pushing it off he really needed to use the restroom. Being unheard wasn't a new experience for him, and neither was fending for himself, so he decided he'd just go find one on his own rather than bother the heroes at work. He could find one and get back before anyone even noticed he was gone with how in the zone they all were. He even had 40 minutes until the show was set to go on air, so no rush. Silently Izuku left the room, shutting the door behind him as he went. He really wished he wasn't so out of it on the way to the studio. He had no idea what direction they had even come from. A quick look down the hall in both directions provided no familiarity, so he just turned right and started walking. Much like the lobby, the hallway carried on the musical-themed decor. Posters signed by famous musicians hung next to rewards the radio station had won over the years. Izuku's curiosity made him stop to study a photo taken at one of the reward ceremonies. Front and center stood Zashi holding a reward for the very show he was preparing for now. He was caught mid-laugh looking at someone out of frame surrounded by the show's other producers Izuku had just met. It struck Izuku in that moment that he had never considered how successful Present Mike was. Sure, he knew of his fairly high ranking in the hero charts and of his popular radio show, but seeing all these rewards the hero had gathered over the years really put it into perspective. Zashi had built all of this based on a dream a friend and him had in high school. He managed to juggle being a hero, a radio host, and a teacher, all while seeming to excel at all of them. On top of all that, Zashi, for some reason unknown to him, wanted to be his parent. Izuku couldn't wrap his mind around the fact someone as important and successful as Zashi could want a child like him. He was nothing special, he didn't even have a quirk he could tell people about, but that didn't seem to matter to Zashi or Sho. They both care for him immensely, even he could see that, but for the life of him Izuku couldn't figure out why. Since he was a child, Izuku had carried on under the assumption he was fine on his own, but just being with the pair of heroes for 2 days had showed him what he had been missing all his life, a family. He never considered the idea that someone would want him to be part of theirs until Sho and Zashi offered to adopt him, but now that the though was in his head he didn't know if he could continue on without it. Having someone to eat with, having someone to share his thoughts with, having someone to care about his well-being. All of it was so new but so nice, and Izuku couldn't help but wanted more. Lost in thought, Izuku wandered the halls of the 4th floor. His mind was so preoccupied he didn't realize he had made it back to the elevators until the sound of its doors opening caught his attention. Within stood a casually dressed Mirko scrolling through her phone to pass the time. The heroine looked up from her phone, meeting his eye as she started to step off the elevator. His appearance must have caught her off guard as she stopped mid-step, checking the floor number quickly before turning back to him. "Well, I wasn't expecting to see a kid here," Mirko muttered to herself as she scanned the hallway for anyone else. You're Mirko! Izuku exclaimed in a hushed shout while unintentionally bouncing in excitement as all his previous thoughts faded. I have so many questions about your quirk. It's a mutation quirk that gives you some of the physical aspects of a rabbit, right? Do you have more rabbit-like features other than the physical mutations, like can your arshel you regulate our body's temperature do your teeth continuously grow, how can you jump dash? Whoa, hold it a second. That's a lot of questions at once. Mirko cut off Izuku's rambling with a wave of her hand. Oh, I'm sorry. I tend to ramble when I'm excited. Izuku trailed off, ducking his head in embarrassment. Yeah, okay. It happens. What did you even ask me? Mirko asked as she brushed off his apology like it didn't need to be said. Your quirk, does it have other aspects to it other than just the physical mutations? For example, can you regulate your body temperature by controlling the blood flow to your ears? Izuku asked, careful to keep his speed slow and understandable. His embarrassment was quickly forgotten at the thought of getting his questions answered. That's a new one, the heroine trailed off considering the question. I don't actually know, I'll have to look into that. Okay. Izuku cheered, happy she even considered his question even if she didn't have an answer for him. Where'd you come up with a question like that? Mirko questioned. And while you're at it, what are you doing here? Aren't you a little young to be a sidekick? Oh, when you first debuted I got curious about your quirk, so I spent a while researching the anatomy of rabbits to see how certain features might have been incorporated into your human body. I came across many interesting facts I didn't know about them, like how a rabbit's blood vessels in its ears contract or expand to help regulate their body temperatures, Izuku explained, excited to share his thoughts with someone. Wait, I started on my own 5 years ago. How old were you dash? Mirko was cut off by muffled yelling that was progressively getting louder and clearer by the second. Both Izuku and Mirko turned towards the voice, which sounded like it was rapidly approaching the corner at the end of the hall to their left. Bye, Aizu, baby, Izuku. The final shout of Izuku's name was followed by a panting, frantic Zashi. The hero stumbled around the corner he tried to take at full speed and nearly ended up in the fern decorating the hall. Once Zashi righted himself, he spotted Izuku and sprinted over to scoop him up. Oh, thank God. I turned around and you were gone and I didn't know where you were and dash, Zashi mumbled into Izuku's hair as he squeezed him tight in his arms. Finding Izuku seemed to do nothing to alleviate the blonde's panic over his disappearance as he slowly began to hyperventilate while he continued to mutter. He could feel Zashi's rapid heartbeat from where his ear was pressed against the hero's chest. Izuku was intimately familiar with the signs of a panic attack and knew he had to do something to help his guardian. Zashi? Can you hear me? Izuku whispered, trying to grab Zashi's attention, but the hero just continued to mumble while holding him in his arms. I couldn't find you, and what if you were hurt again dash? Zashi, present Mike. Izuku was beginning to worry the longer Zashi remained unresponsive. The hero had done so much for him and he couldn't even help talk him out of a panic attack. He had to do something. Zashi and Sho were all he had, they were his family now. Thought they took my baby again dash. Papa. Izuku yelled out without meaning to, he just couldn't stand the thought of Zashi tearing himself up over his kidnapping. Izuku's shout seemed to break through Zashi's panicked haze as he went silent and still. The hero's breathing was still irregular, but at least it was a start. He could work with this. If calling Zashi Papa grabbed the hero's attention, he would continue to do so. He could deal with the consequences of his subconscious slip-up later. Papa, I'm okay. See? Izuku pulled away from the hero slightly so he could meet his eye. I just had to go to the bathroom, but I'm fine. I'm right here. Izuku managed to slip one of his arms free when Zashi slowly loosened his grasp at the sound of his voice and brought his hand up to cradle the side of the panicking hero's face. Izuku's hand looked childlike against Zashi's cheek, but the feeling would give the man something grounding to focus on. Papa? Can you take a deep breath for me? Please? Izuku requested, trying to sound as calm as he could. Zashi stared down at Izuku for a few moments before complying. Slowly the blonde lowered himself and Izuku down to the ground against the wall before pulling Izuku onto his lap, cradling him close while taking slow, deep breaths. Izuku rested his head back against his guardian's chest to check on his heart rate while grasping one of his hands in his own. Are you okay? Should I get someone to help? Mirko spoke up. Izuku startled slightly at her voice, forgetting that he and Zashi were not alone. The heroine was clearly uncomfortable with what just happened as she shifted from foot to foot. Her eyes jumped from the pair on the floor back up to the wall above them every few seconds. I am sorry, Mirko, Zashi started. His voice was rough and cracked from the ordeal. You can go on ahead to the studio. Just let Harmony know we'll be along soon. Mirko hesitated before turning to head down the hall. Izuku gave her a wobbly smile when she looked over her shoulder before turning around the corner, disappearing from sight. You called me Papa, Zashi breathed out, breaking the silence the hall fell into after Mirko left. I'm sorry, I was worried and it just slipped out and it seemed to work so. Izuku fiddled with Zashi's hand as he tried to explain. It slipped out? Zashi repeated while bringing his free hand up to comb through Izuku's hair. Why you and Sho said you'd adopt me and the idea got stuck in my head. I won't call you that again if you don't want me to. Izuku ducked his head back down against Zashi's chest, hoping the hero wouldn't push him away. Oh baby, no. You can call me whatever you want. Zashi brought their joined hands up to tilt Izuku's chin so he could look him in the eye. Hearing you call me that made me so happy you don't even understand. Really? You don't mind? Izuku sniffed, trying to keep from crying as he stared up at Zashi. Not at all, Zashi assured him as he pulled Izuku back into a tight hug. Just please, if you need to leave like that again, tell me first. Turning around to find you gone was terrifying, even if logically I knew no one could have gotten to you inside of a hero agency. You guys all looked so busy, I didn't want to interrupt, Izuku explained, quietly feeling guilty about causing Zashi so much stress unintentionally. Baby, you wouldn't be interrupting anything, and even if you were, listening to what you have to say is more important than any task I could be doing. You can ask any questions you have whenever you want, Zashi said with utmost certainty before letting out a heavy sigh. We need to get back to the studio. Are you okay? Izuku asked, concerned for the hero. He has had his fair share of panic attacks over the years and he at least always felt awful afterwards. I'll be fine, I have my little hero here to help me out, so I have nothing to worry about. Zashi smiled down at Izuku before pushing them both to their feet. Zashi began leading them back towards the studio, slowly keeping a tight grip on Izuku's hand as they went. Izuku did nothing to speed them up, hoping the added time would help slow Zashi's heart rate farther. As familiar picture came into view, Izuku realized something. Papa? Izuku hesitantly called out, testing out the new title. Yes? Zashi unconsciously smiled as he looked down at Izuku. I never did find a bathroom. Rumi walked away from the hero and his son, utterly confused about what the F just happened. The last thing she expected to see when stepping off an elevator within a hero agency was a small injured child, but there's a first time for everything apparently. Things only got weirder when the child opened his mouth. What kind of kid researches anatomy because they were curious? The child couldn't have been older than 5 when she debuted, but he had the ability to understand complex topics like that? Present Mick's wife had to have an intelligence quirk she passed on to the boy, because that level of intellect is not normal for a child. Hell, Rumi wasn't even aware Present Mike had a family. How was he able to keep his son a secret for so long? The man was practically synonymous with mass media at this point within the hero community. He must have gone to great lengths to keep his family hidden. She could only imagine the fear the hero must hold regarding his family being discovered if what she just witnessed was simply caused by his son wandering away from his side. What the hell had happened to the child anyway? He was sporting a nasty bruise that covered the majority of the left side of his face. Rumi doubted Present Mike could ever harm his son or would ever let anyone else hurt him for that matter. No parent that gets worried over their child could turn around and cause them pain. The hero clearly loves that boy to death, so how did he get injured? Rumi's contemplation drew to a close. When she arrived at the studio, the room's door was left open, revealing 3 people within. She only recognized the highly sought-after rescue heroes Harmony and Mirage. Mirage was speaking frantically with the other unknown man and looked ready to jump up from her seat and run off. Before she got a chance, Harmony noticed Rumi in the doorway. Mirko, welcome to Put Your Hands Up Radio. I apologize that Mike isn't here to greet you at the moment. Something came up that required his attention that couldn't be put off, the large man offered as an explanation to the host's absence. Rumi had to give Harmony some credit. The man was an excellent bullshitter. If she hadn't just witnessed Present Mick's panicked breakdown mere minutes before, she would have believed the hero was simply attending to a small mishap and not frantically searching for his missing child. If all members of this agency were as articulate as Harmony, she could see how Present Mike kept his family a secret for so long. She would never be able to maintain the composure to manipulate conversations like that. She was too blunt and often just resorted to telling reporters to F off when they got nosy. Actually, I ran into him on the way here. I wasn't aware he had a son, Rumi said, blowing Harmony's attempt at hiding the situation out of the water. He found the baby? Thank God, Mirage cried out in relief. The tension in the heroine's body melted as she sank into her seat. We got so preoccupied preparing for the show we never even noticed he left the room. I might not be a parent, but isn't running around screaming a bit of an overreaction to your child wandering around a secure hero agency? Mirko asked, hoping to get some insight into Present Mick's intense reaction. Not when the boy just got kidnapped a few days ago, Harmony commented. The man's unwaveringly calm demeanor did nothing to lessen the shock that bomb of a statement released. Wait. The baby was kidnapped. Mirage blurted out, clearly as astonished by the news as Rumi was. Yeah, that's why Mike had to miss yesterday's show. He was up with Izuku most of Thursday night in UA's infirmary because of the injuries the kid received during the ordeal. They couldn't take him home till last night, Harmony explained to Mirage. Why weren't we told? The man next to Mirage joined in, looking just as upset at being kept out of the loop. Maybe because you two are as calm as over-caffeinated children and would have rushed over to UA as soon as you got the news, Harmony responded without acknowledging the pair's theatrical denials to the comparison. The kid did not need to deal with you when suffering from a severe concussion and blood loss. Wait, concussion? Blood loss? He seemed fine other than the bruise on his face when I saw him, Rumi chimed in, confused at the extent of the kid's supposed injuries. Miss Chio healed my concussion, a small voice sounded from behind Rumi, causing her to spin in place to see the boy in question standing next to his father. And someone healed the gunshot wound while I was still in the warehouse. Who was Miss Chio? Wait, did the kid just casually admit to being shot? Rumi's brain was having a hard time keeping up with all the twists and turns this conversation was throwing at her. Who the F shoots a kid? They shot you? Why? Mirage said, clearly as alarmed as Rumi herself. Yeah, the guy was upset we arrested his brother the night before, I guess. The boy shrugged as he fidgeted with his dad's hand absent-mindedly. We arrested? You know I was only joking when I asked if you were a sidekick, right? Rumi tried to say jokingly, but she was now starting to worry the kid actually was doing hero work on the side. The kid's eyes went wide before the quickly looked to his dad for help getting out of the hole he just dug himself. Aizu goes out with my husband every so often when he patrols. They ran into a fight between two gangs Wednesday night that resulted in 4 gang members being arrested, Present Mike explained as he unconsciously pulled the boy closer to his side. You're a vigilante? Rumi muttered in shock as she stared down at the small kid. The fact that Present Mike was married to another pro-hero took the back burner to the child vigilante. She might not have much experience around children, but even she could tell that the boy couldn't be older than 10. How the hell was he apprehending criminals 3 times his size, and why were 2 pro-heroes letting him? Well, technically, no. Vigilantism is defined as the act of an unlicensed individual utilizing their quirk to apprehend criminals or to assist in halting criminal behavior in a non-life-threatening situation without prior authorization from a professional hero, the boy recited from memory. Which means legally I can never be a vigilante. A few seconds passed as every person in the room stared at the boy in shock until Present Mike snorted before bursting into laughter. You, ahaha, you can't be, ahaha, oh god, I can't wait to tell show that. Present Mike choked out between fits of laughter as he doubled over at the kid's side. Tsukachi too, ahaha, you have to tell him too. Okay, am I the only one confused here? Mirage asked hesitantly as she watched Present Mike try to regain his composure. Did Aizawa give you blanket permission to use your quirk or something? And why do you have the exact wording of that law memorized? No. I looked up the wording after I decided to keep helping people after I got stabbed while stopping a mugging. What the F was with this kid and casual admittance to groundbreaking revelations? What's next? Is the kid going to tell them he's the heir to the Japanese Empire or something? You got stabbed and thought, hey, this seems fun, let's doing it again? Mirko asked sarcastically as she watched the boy shrug yet again. Well, kinda, not the fun part though. Being stabbed was worse than being shot, I think. But if I hadn't been there, the man would have killed the lady he was trying to mug. If all it took was getting stabbed to save her, then I figured I could do the same for others as well, the kid explained. The boy seemed utterly oblivious to the dark mood his statement put the heroes around him into. Did this kid have no self-preservation? His father looked ready to scoop the boy up and wrap him in bubble wrap, which Rumi almost agreed with. The kid seems like a trouble magnet for sure. She almost felt bad for Present Mike and his husband if this is what they had to deal with every day. She had to admit the kid seemed like a bit of a badass though, a badass who could use some therapy, but a badass nonetheless. As interesting as this conversation is, we will have to continue it later. We are set to go live in 5 minutes, Harmony calmly remarked from where he was typing away on his computer as the others bursted into action, frantically getting last-minute problems fixed. Rumi was left standing with the kid by the door watching the madness unfold before them. This was not at all what she had been expecting when she agreed to make an appearance on the highly rated radio show. She didn't normally give interviews, but if they were all this chaotic she might have to reconsider her stance on them. Hitoshi sat held up in his bathroom hoping to hide from his parent until they left for the charity gala they were attending that night. He knew better than to go to a convenience store so close to his school, but he thought since it was a Saturday he'd be safe. All he wanted were some snacks for the night, but instead he ended up with a bloody nose and a black eye thanks to a few classmates that happened to be walking by. If his parents saw him like this, they'd know he was lying about the bullying stopping and make him switch schools again. Hitoshi realized after the fourth school the problem wasn't the other students, it was his quirk. No one had a problem with him until his quirk was brought up. No one wants to be friends with a villain after all, and that's all they thought he could be with a quirk like his. Hitoshi managed to last 4 months this time before anyone discovered his quirk. That was a new record for him, but all it took was one slip up. He had been out with a group of classmates at an arcade when they ran into several students from his last school. After that, rumors ran rampant around campus and he was back to being ostracized and feared. Fear grew into distrust and hatred soon followed, leaving him right back to where he started, being the school's punching bag. Hito, we're heading out now. We will probably be late, so don't wait up. You know how your mother is with these social functions, she'll be talking the ears off of all the board members until they kick us out, his dad called from downstairs as they got ready to leave. Okay, have fun. Do your best to save all the poor old men from mom, Hitoshi joked back. He couldn't let them notice something was wrong now after he went through so much trouble hiding it already. Hey, I resent that. My own husband and son picking on me. His mom's voice faded as they walked towards the door before it cut off entirely as they left the house. Hitoshi gave it a few minutes in case they came back for anything before he slipped out of the bathroom. His nose had stopped bleeding a while ago and the black eye was easy enough to hide considering how dark the circles under his eyes already were. He had somehow managed to keep the bullying a secret for another day. With a sigh of relief, Hitoshi dropped down onto his bed before switching on his laptop. For the past 3 years he had listened to Put Your Heads Up radio without fail. No matter what anyone said about his quirk, Hitoshi still wanted to become a hero, and the show's host, Present Mike, was the only hero he could find with a voice quirk like his that had a strong media presence. At first Hitoshi only listened to see what was so different about their quirks. What made Present Mix heroic where his was considered villainous? That was before he was old enough to realize it wasn't the fact his quirk was voice-based that was the problem. The problem was what his voice could do. People feared losing control of themselves, and that's just what his quirk did. Now Hitoshi simple listened for the comfort the show brought him. The hero had a way of making you feel like you were the only one listening, that the show was made entirely for you. It made Hitoshi feel less alone in the world. He wouldn't trade his parents for anything, but even they couldn't fill the hole left when his quirk rendered him friendless. The show helped. Welcome once again to Put Your Hands Up Radio. Like always, I'm your host, Present Mike. Apologies for missing our commercial-free music night yesterday. I had something come up that required my attention, but I'm back today to bring you more wonderful content. We have successfully made it though another busy week, which means it's time for our super special Saturday show. Today's show is extra special because I have a wonderful little listener here to help me interview tonight's special guest. Everyone join me in welcoming my co-host for the night, Ghost. PM. Present Mix voice filled Hitoshi's room as the show started. He had noticed the hero was missing from the usual Friday night show, leaving the hero Harmony to host in his absence. The show was more mellow than Present Mix's typical upbeat performance, but Hitoshi couldn't complain. The co-host was throwing him through a bit of a loop though. The Saturday hardly ever had a different host than Present Mike. Was the co-host connected to the hero's absence yesterday? Hello, it's nice to join you all today. G. Ghost here is an excellent quirk analyst who will be helping me interview the number 6 pro hero, Mirko. PM. Thank you for having me today. I have to say the addition of Ghost as an interviewer has me excited. I did not expect the excitable little bunny I ran into on my way to the studio to be a quirk expert, but I'm looking forward to the chaos he will bring to the table if our conversation early is anything to go by. That was a kid who was a quirk analyst? Mirko had to be right about the chaos. How else would a kid get on a popular radio show to interview a pro hero? Oh, I'm not an expert. Analyzing quirks is just a hobby. Present Mike just heard me rambling about quirks earlier and asked me to join. G. Baby, don't sell yourself short, your skills are awesome. PM. Yeah kid, I don't know much about your other work, but that question you asked me earlier was very interesting. I had never been asked something like that about my quirk before. What did you ask? PM. If Mirko's ears function like a rabbit's to regulate her body temperature by controlling the blood flow through the vessels within them. G. Rabbits can do that? PM. Apparently, I had no idea. I'll have to look into it and get back to you, Chaos Bunny. That'd be great. G. Chaos Bunny was right. What the hell was with that question? Out of all the things to ask a pro hero, Ghost asked about her ears. Hitoshi guessed it was a bit refreshing to hear a question that wasn't geared towards how great the hero's quirk was in combat, and that fact about rabbits was interesting. And I'll let all our lovely listeners know as soon as Ghost gets word back. While we're on the topic, do you have any more quirk-related questions to ask Ghost? PM. Loads. Where do I even start? Gee. Why don't you start with what interests you most? I'm sure whatever you find intriguing will interest our listeners as well. PM. Oh, okay then. Well, I read a study performed by a group of quirk specialists based out of America on the social impacts mutation quirks have on individuals a while ago. I was wondering if your quirk had any impact on your childhood relationships and if you had anything to say to others living with mutation quirks like yours? Gee. DMN, an American study had to have been written in English, scientific lingo English on top of that. Social impacts of quirks, even if they were talking about strictly mutation quirks, really hit home. Too bad he wouldn't be able to read it. How smart was this kid? Wow kid, you don't hold back on the heavy stuff, do you? Oh, I'm sorry. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Gee. Nah, it's fine. Interviewers typically stay away from the controversial topics when interviewing me, something about my lack of tact apparently, but you don't strike me as the type to avoid uncomfortable subjects. Well, I know firsthand what it's like to have quirks impact your life. Not talking about it doesn't make the issue go away. The first step in fixing a problem is to bring attention to it and for others to acknowledge it's a problem to begin with. Gee. Ghost understood, and he was trying to fix it. The kid was possibly younger than Hitoshi, but he was going out of his way to try to get the problem fixed. Forget the other two, Ghost was quickly becoming Hitoshi's hero. True, yeah, my quirk affected how I was treated as a child. It's actually the reason I became a hero in the first place. Because I had a rabbit mutation, everyone assumed I was weak and fragile. Everyone tried to baby me and acted like I needed protection. It made me furious. Just because my quirk gave me rabbit-like features didn't mean I was some helpless little bunny that needed saving all the time. Eventually my anger turned into fuel I used to push me farther in my hero career so I could show everyone just how strong a bunny could be. That's what advice I'd give to anyone out there who was told they couldn't do something just because of their quirk. Show them how wrong they were to doubt you. Excellent advice, Mirko. What do you think, Ghost? Do you have anything to add? PM. Someone very special to me recently told me a person's quirk has no effect on their worth or potentially. I've seen enough of the world to know even though that statement is true, it is rarely put into practice by others. A person's quirk doesn't define who they are or what they can do, but others will often use it as an excuse to try to limit you, to hurt you. No matter how much it hurts to continue on when it seems like the whole world is against you, you must, because all it takes is finding one person who cares, one person who sees you for you and not for you quirk to make it all worth it. So my advice is to just hang on. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but someday you will find them, and trust me, it's worth the wait. Gee. That was so heartfelt, and let's take a quick break before moving on with the interview. PM. Music filled his room as Hitoshi laid there in shock at what was just said. After the day he just had hearing Ghost and Mirko say that almost broke him, he nearly joined present Mike in crying. Ghost really did understand. He knew how shitty the world was, how it felt to be pushed down time and time again, how unfair it was. He didn't even seem to hold the same prejudice that everyone other than his family had about quirks. Ghost understood, and he vouched that it would get better, that it only took one person to make it better. Hitoshi's parents told him again and again that things would get easier with time, but they couldn't understand what it was like having a quirk like his. They were both successful people with useful quirks. They never had to feel the hatred he did just for existing. Hitoshi knew Ghost and his parents were saying the same thing, but it felt more real coming from someone like him, someone like Ghost. It felt like a promise, not just empty words. For the first time Hitoshi believed those words. For the first time he felt like his dream wasn't impossible. He was going to be a hero no matter what it took. He was going to be a hero and prove to everyone that called him a villain that they were wrong. He was going to be a hero like Ghost that gave hope to others. Shoyuta stood there staring at the door after Zashi and Aizu left for the station, replaying Aizu's question over and over again in his head. His kid was terrified they'd make him leave. How were he and Zashi going to convince the kid they were here to stay? Aizu had been abandoned time and time again to the point he just expects it to be a given that everyone in his life would eventually leave him. He didn't know whether he should be depressed or furious over that fact. Therapy would be a good starting point, but would Aizu even be okay with going? Shoyuta had known the kid for months before he even got a name out of him, and he knows he only got it when he did because Aizu was left with no other options after he was kidnapped. How long would it take a therapist to get anywhere with the kid? Shoyuta wasn't about to go and break the fragile trust he now has by forcing Aizu to do something he was uncomfortable with. God, this parenting thing was a nightmare. Speaking of parenting, Shoyuta had to go and met with Aizu's principal to discuss pulling him out of school soon. He hated parent-teacher conferences as the teacher. He could only imagine how awful going as a parent was going to be. He should have made Zashi do this, he was the sociable one. He'd be able to small talk without making it awkward, but no, Zashi's too high profile for that. The last thing they needed after the kidnapping was rumors being spread about Present Mike having a kid. That would only invite more kidnapping attempts, and Shoyuta doesn't think he'd make it through another one of those without accumulating some jail time of his own. Even if he was a pro hero himself, no one gave a shit about an underground hero they never heard of. He could openly say he was Izu's guardian without anyone caring enough to spread it around. Sure, he threw the fact he was a licensed hero around to get a last-minute meeting scheduled on a Saturday, but once they figure out he wasn't a limelight hero, interest in him will die so quick he'd be lucky to get an acknowledgement on the way out. Not that he was complaining, he'd leave the spotlight to Zashi and stay in the shadows where he belonged. A quick glance at the clock forced Shoyuta to get moving. Izu's school was on the other side of town. If he was going to make it to the meeting on time, he'd have to leave now. Shoyuta had a bad feeling the whole ordeal was going to turn into a shit show. You must be Shoyuta Aizawa. I'm Shichiro Ito, the principal of Aldera Junior High School. I have to say, when I received an email yesterday from a Hero Commission address about setting up meeting today, I became very intrigued as to why. Ito practically fawned in an attempt to butter Shoyuta up. Ito apparently wasn't holding back any of the stops. The overweight man was dressed in a three-piece suit like he was planning a meeting, a foreign dignitary, which hilariously contrasted with Shuta's bare minimum attempt at business casual. The office was spotless, with what Shoyuta could only guess were the principal's idea of prestige awards lining the shelves behind his desk. Student files were strategically placed among official-looking letters to give the appearance the man was more important than he truly was. Overall, Shoyuta concluded the man was a utter farce and this meeting was going to be hell. I'm here to discuss one of your students, Shoyuta said as deadpan as possible, hoping his lack of emotion would unnerving the man. If he was going to be stuck here for God knows how long, he might as well have a little fun. A student? Why, you must be looking to mentor one of our numerous high-achieving pupils in their pursuit of becoming heroes themselves. Ito decided, looking awfully proud of his conclusion. Which one of our lucky students have caught your eye? Izuku Midoriya, Shoyuta stated, not bothering to correct the principal's ill-conceived notion he was here to scout out potential heroes. Midoriya? Oh, not mentoring then. What did the boy do now to land him in on a hero's bad side? Ito asked. Ito's whole demeanor changed when Shoyuta mentions Izu's name. Gone was the painfully cheerful act. In its place was a look of complete disgust that had no right being on anyone's face when they were talking about his kid. What do you mean, now? Shoyuta asked, careful to keep his anger in check. Well, the boy's an absolute terror. Always starting fights, disrupting classes, lying for attention, cheating on schoolwork. Just this week he was suspended for 2 days for starting a fight in the hall between classes. 3 students were sent to the nurse's office with injuries as a result. The boy didn't even return to class on Friday when his suspension was up, Ito concluded with a morose shake of his head. What were the injuries the other students reported? Shoyuta prompted, not liking where this story was leading. Every one of them were highly ranked students with injuries to their hands. We suspect Midoriya specifically targeted their hands in an attempt to cause their schoolwork to suffer, Ito determined with false certainty. Shoyuta couldn't believe what he was hearing. The day he found Izu with second-degree burns, he was suspended for a fight he was clearly the victim in. 3 against 1, and the only injuries the others had were on their hands, whereas his kid was bruised and burned all over. Did they even treat Izu's injuries, or did they simply deal out an unjust punishment and leave him to suffer? Are you stupid? Shoyuta retorted, done listening to the fool entirely. Excuse me? Ito stuttered out in shock. You come across a 3 against 1 fight where the only injuries the larger group has are to their hands and you assume they are the victims? Did you even ask for Izuku's side of the story, or did you simply take the word of your beloved star students? Shuta's anger was getting harder and harder to keep under control the longer he was forced to listen to the sniveling man in front of him. We've known for years that boy was trouble. Time after time he started fights and then turns around complaining about being the victim of bullying. It's obvious he is jealous of the others' good grades and powerful quirks, Ito defended, unaware he was digging his own grave. If you're so certain that's how the event happened, then you should have no issue handing over the hallway surveillance footage to police, would you? Shoyuta snarked, hoping the video evidence would be enough to prosecute the students who hurt his kid without Izu's assistance. And now I can't do that, it'd be an invasion of my students' privacy. Without a warrant I wouldn't be able to hand over the tapes with a clear conscience. I couldn't live with myself knowing I broke my young students' trust. The poor excuse for an educator lied, dramatically clutching his chest as if just the thought pained him. Sure, without a warrant Ito wasn't obligated to give Shoyuta anything, but the principal's reasoning for withholding was obviously pulled straight out of his butt. Shoyuta was surprised the man managed to get it out with his head in the way. What about Izuku? He's one of your students, is he not worthy of your trust as well? Shoyuta wasn't the best with words, but he was willing to try his hardest to manipulate this BSTRD if it meant helping Aizu. Trust is earned, and Midoriya proved time and time again that he wasn't worthy of any. The boy is nothing but a liar, Ito proclaimed. My son is not a liar. Shoyuta yelled, unable to contain his anger any longer. I found him the night after he supposedly attacked 3 students covered in bruises with second-degree burns all over his arm in the shape of handprints. I'm willing to bet one of those students you're so resolutely defending has a quirk that would let them do just that to someone. So tell me, Ito, how is it Izuku is not the victim here? Why, your son? Ito was showing his true nature now as he shook in his chair like the coward he was. Yes, my son, who as of now is no longer a student at this school, Shoyuta proclaimed as he stood to leave. Wait. Perhaps I was too hasty when deciding where the blame for the fight lay. We would hate to lose Midoriya as a student. Ito groveled, unwilling to part with what he thought would be his school's ticket to get on the map. A pro-hero's child attending would look great on a brochure. Oh really? Not even 30 seconds ago you were ranting about how much of a nuisance my kid was, but now that you know he's the child of a pro-hero you are willing to fight for him? If you can answer this question, I'll keep Izuku enrolled here. Tell me, Ito, who am I? Shoyuta taunted, knowing full well the man had no clue what his hero name was. Who are you? Ito trailed off, unable to attach Shuta's face to any of the well-known heroes in the city. The longer the principal sat there, the more panicked his face became. God, you're pathetic, Shoyuta scoffed. Izuku will never attend this poor excuse of a school again. Shoyuta wasted no time storming out of the office, making sure to slam the door shut behind him. He wanted to watch this place burn to the ground with that BSTRD alongside it, but without Aizu speaking up he had no evidence to use against them. Sure, he could get Nezu to hack into the building's security system to gain access to the cameras, but no judge would allow stolen footage in court, and Shoyuta wasn't about to deal out vigilante justice to a bunch of children. The kid's life must have been FING hell, Shoyuta muttered to himself as he climbed into his car. No parents at home, no trustworthy teachers at school, peers who beat him and got away with it. He need to hug his kid. Shoyuta almost forgot Zashi and Aizu were at the station for Zashi's Saturday show until his husband's voice filled the car when he started it. The car's radio was practically permitted set to put your hands up radio, even if Shoyuta wasn't a fan of the music typically featured. He liked listening to his husband talk. Sue him. Excellent advice, Mirko. What do you think, Ghost? Do you have anything to add? Zashi did not just put Aizu on the air, did he? The whole reason Shoyuta went to the kid's school alone was to keep Aizu's connection to present Mike a secret. He should have known Zashi wouldn't be able to resist having Aizu join him on the show. At least it was only an audio show and they weren't using his real name. Someone very special to me recently told me a person's quirk has no effect on their worth or potentially. I've seen enough of the world to know even though that statement is true, it is rarely put into practice by others. A person's quirk doesn't define who they are or what they can do, but others will often use it as an excuse to try to limit you, to hurt you. No matter how much it hurts to continue on when it seems like the whole world is against you, you must, because all it takes is finding one person who cares, one person who sees you for you and not for you quirk to make it all worth it. So my advice is to just hang on. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but someday you will find them, and trust me, it's worth the wait. Aizu forget waiting at home. Shoyuta was going to Zashi's agency. He needed to hug his kid. Now. He didn't care if Aizu need one or not, because after hearing that Shoyuta did. Shoyuta had been to Zashi's agency so many times with the man that the receptionist in the lobby didn't even blink as he strode past. Few people in the building could pin him as a pro-hero, but nearly everyone here knew Shuta's face thanks to his husband's excessive need to show him off. He dressed up for date night? Look how handsome my show is. He fell asleep with Momo on the couch? Look how cute they are. He smiled in a photo after drinking a little too much one time they went out with Namuri and Tensei? Look at him. At least now Aizu would share in his suffering. The familiar trek to Zashi's studio passed with incident, leaving Shoyuta standing before the soundproof door. He snuck in quietly when he noticed the red light indicating the broadcast was still live lit up. Only Sana took notice to his arrival if the small nod in his direction was anything to go by. Shoyuta simply leaned back against the wall next to the door like he always did when he came to watch Zashi's show live and looked through the glass into the sound booth. Within, Zashi was sat back from his microphone watching Aizu with a look of pure fondness as the kid hijacked his show. The boy was practically bouncing in his seat as he debated the merits of hero groups with the pro-hero Mirko. Mirko seemed just as invested in the debate as she responded to the kid's counter-arguments with equal ferocity. The two shot rebuttals back and forth nearly instantaneously, barely pausing for breath. Yes, solo work does typically provide better advantages to sneak attacks and stealth operations, which is why many underground heroes work alone, but you primarily utilize brute strength to overwhelm your opponents after using your enhanced hearing to scope out the situation. You could still do this by scouting ahead of your partners to gather information before regrouping to mount an attack. That would give you the upper hand of outnumbering your opponents as well as the advantage your reconnaissance provided, Aizu explained while wildly waving his hands around him in his excitement. Outnumbering your enemies is all well and good until the fight suffers because of non-existent teamwork. A personality like mine doesn't mesh well with others, which makes it easier to work alone. Besides, my success rate clearly shows I don't need backup, Mirko shot back with a self-confident smirk on her face. Your villain apprehension rate is quite high, but all it takes is to be overpowered or outsmarted once for the fight to turn sideways. Something as simple as a sneak attack from an accomplice while your focus is on the main perpetrator could be circumnavigated by having someone there to watch your back, whether that be another hero or simply a sidekick to warn you in time, Aizu countered. I'd like to see someone sneak up on me with my hearing. Mirko laughed in response to the thought. Anything's possible with the right quirk. I read about someone from Germany who had the ability to create a mini vacuums trapped in a pocket of space which theoretically could be used to stop any sound from being produced within a certain area. Without air, the sound waves would have no medium to use to travel to your ears. You can't hear them coming if there was nothing to hear to begin with. Aizu grinned at the heroine's look of surprise. DMN kid, you really have quite the brain hidden behind that cute innocent-looking face of yours, don't you? First anatomy and quirk theory, now physics. What else do you have stored up there? Mirko joked while laughing under her breath when the shock wore off. Oh, it's nothing special. I just had a lot of free time as a kid, Aizu adamantly protested as he shook his head in denial, which would have caused the kid's headphones to go flying if it wasn't for Zashi pushing them back on. Oh, thanks Papa. Aizu smiled up at Zashi when the hero finished fixing his headphones. Shuda's brain froze as he tried to process what Aizu just said. Did he just hear that correctly? Did Aizu just, he did, didn't he? And Zashi wasn't freaking out crying tears of joy, so it couldn't be the first time his husband heard the kid call him that either. Maybe Zashi was holding it together while on air, but by the way he very clearly broke down after Aizu's little motivational speech earlier. Shoyuta doubted that was the case. When did that development happen? I hate to break up this wonderful debate, but it is nearing 6 p.m., which means our super special Saturday show is coming to an end, Zashi chimed in with a wide grin on his face. Thanks once again to our special guest, Mirko, for joining us tonight. It was lovely chatting with you. The pleasure was all mine, present Mike. And I'll get back to you as soon as I figure out the answers to your questions, Chaos Bunny, Mirko teased with a wink. Thank you. And thank you for answering all my other questions, Aizu replied with a bright smile. No problem kid, Mirko chuckled. This is present Mike. Ghost. And Mirko. Signing off. Have a wonderful rest of your Saturday, and I'll see you next Friday for our commercial-free music night. Good night, listeners. Zashi cheered out. And we're clear. Music set 4 is now being broadcasted. Good show guys, Sana announced as the hero pushed away from the soundboard. Wow, the baby sure knows his stuff, Hibiki said after letting out a low whistle. No kidding, Hayami laughed as the Zashi, Aizu and Mirko came out of the sound booth. Izuku must take after Aizawa cause he sure as hell didn't get that smart from hanging around Mike. Teasing my husband is my job, Hayami, Shoyuta called out from behind the heroine, causing her to jump in her seat, nearly falling to the floor in the process. Geez, we need to get you a bell or something. When did you even get here? Hayami cried before turning back to Zashi. Mike, your husband is trying to give me a heart attack again. You're back. Aizu cheered as he ran over to Shoyuta, ignoring Zashi and Hayami as they started to fling teasing remarks back and forth. Aizu wasted no time latching on to Shoyuta when he opened his arms as an invitation for a hug. A short burst of laughter left the kid's mouth as Shoyuta pulled him up with him as he stood up straight, leaving Aizu's feet dangling nearly 2 feet off the ground. Hey kiddo. How was the show? Shoyuta asked as he practically buried his face in Aizu's curls. It was great. I got to ask Mirko all kinds of questions about her quirk. Aizu answered enthusiastically as he wrapped his legs around Shuta's waist so he could lean back to meet his eyes. Did you get to write down her answers? I saw you took your notebook with you when you left home. Earlier, Shoyuta commented as he looked around for the book in question. No, I was so excited that I was getting a chance to ask them I forgot to bring it in with me, Aizu pouted. I'll just write it all down tonight. Our shows are all archived on our website if you need to listen to it again, Sana chimed in from where he was watching Zashi and Hayami, drawing Shuta's attention back to them. The two heroes had somehow escalated from joking jabs to dramatic stage fighting while Shoyuta was distracted talking to Aizu. Hayami had used her quirk to create illusions of swords. The pair were now swinging at each other as Hibiki stood to the side, adding sound effects wherever they were needed to sell the performance. Mirko was practically cackling in the background while using her phone to film the act. I will vanquish you, evildoer. None shall speak ill of my husband and live. Zashi cried as he swung his fake sword at Hayami, who danced out of the way before returning the blow. It is you who will perish. Hayami fired back as she dramatically posed before charging Zashi and tackling him to the ground. Ah! Back up! Back up! Shoo! Help! Zashi cried out as Hayami went straight for the kill and began ruffling Zashi's hair. Shoyuta stared down at his husband for a second before turning his attention back to Aizu, who looked to be barely holding in his laughter. So what do you want for dinner? Shoo! The betrayal. The agony. I fight for your honor only to be scorned in my time of need, Zashi wailed from where he was still pinned to the ground. HMH, Katsudon. No, not you too. Sho, you've turned my own baby against me, how will I go on? Zashi cried as he wiped fake tears from his eyes. Aizu could no longer hold in his laughter and buried his face into Shuta's shoulder as he gasped for breath. Shoyuta gave his husband a smirk before he wrapped Hayami up with his capture weapon, flinging her off. Zashi let out an excited gasp as he jumped to his feet. I knew you'd save me, Zashi cried as he nearly tackled Shoyuta and Aizu to the ground. I see where the Chaos Bunny gets it from now, Mirko commented as she finished recording. Entirely from Sho, of course. Zashi concluded, sending the heroine a wink. So how did the meeting with Aizu's school go? Zashi asked as Aizu ran off to his room to write down all his notes from earlier. Zashi, I'm giving that school over to Nedzu, Shoyuta said soberly as he met his husband's eyes. That school will burn even if I have to set it on fire myself. What happened? Zashi asked as his eyes widened at the admission of wanting to involve the Chimera. Aizu was suspended the day I saw those burns. He was attacked by 3 other students in the hallway between classes and they threw the blame onto Aizu. They blamed our kid when his attackers' only injuries were bloody knuckles from hitting him. Shoyuta nearly shouted before he remembered Aizu was only down the hall. Zashi, that egotistical BSTRD of a principal, implied this was a common occurrence. Common? The people who did that to my baby weren't punished? Ever? Zashi whispered in disbelief. Why would they punish their star students when Aizu was the perfect scapegoat for their misbehavior? Shoyuta replied sarcastically as he sank down into the couch, burying his face in his hands. God, Sho, what did they do to him in that place? Zashi's voice cracked as he dropped down next to him. Our poor baby. Shoyuta pulled his husband into his side as they both struggled at containing their warring emotions. It would do them no good to break down now with the risk of Aizu seeing. The kid had enough to deal with without adding their emotions to the mix. Several minutes passed in silence before Shoyuta felt like he got his anger over the situation back under control, but Zashi seemed to still be struggling. Aizu called you Papa earlier, Shoyuta brought up, hoping to get Zashi's mind away from the depressing topic. Oh my god, he did. Sho, he called me Papa. Zashi beamed as he recalled the event. How'd that happen? Shoyuta prompted. Well, we were getting ready for Mirko to arrive, and you know how in the zone we get when preparing for a show, right? I wanted to show Aizu something I was doing, but when I turned around he was gone and I may have panicked a little, Zashi trailed of, rubbing his neck in embarrassment. With a pointed look from Shoyuta he continued. Okay, I panicked a lot. Like running around yelling, a lot. Aizu called me Papa when he was calming me down. He said it had been in his head since we said we'd adopt him. Isn't that the cutest? Adorable, but he called you that while on air, Shoyuta pointed out. Oh, well, the students at UA already know, so how long would it really stay a secret? Zashi joked. Now I can brag about him on the show. Shoyuta just shook his head at his husband's excitement. At least he was no longer depressed.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.